So this dude's name is Logan, the oldest son of a noble family that's totally broke. The housemaids were super scared of him, and honestly, they had every reason to be. I mean, just look at this crazy guy's face. One day, Logan wanted to visit his dad at the castle, but the soldiers wouldn't let him in. They said the prince wasn't worthy. He's just the son of the guy's old wife, you know. People were either scared of him or just straight up hated Logan because up until then, he was just an arrogant, despicable jerk. But things were about to change because Logan ain't the same dude they think he is anymore. The main guy got pissed off at the guard's attitude, so he grabbed a pair of gloves from his outfit and chucked them right in the guard's face. The humiliation the prince put that guard through was going to be paid back in a duel. Logan insulted the guard, saying he's the real loser here, that he's always been a mediocre soldier. Daman got furious and, totally overwhelmed by emotion, accepted the fight against the prince. They headed to the duel arena and were going to use wooden swords. A knight can use aura, you know? And even with a wooden sword, he could kill a weak warrior. Everyone was scared for the prince's life. It was obvious he was a total loser. Daman attacked with all his might and used his aura, but Logan dodged with a super precise move and struck just above Daman's sword. The force disarmed the guard. He just couldn't hold onto his sword. Everyone was completely shocked. How the hell does loser Logan know how to fight? Logan wasn't satisfied and said Daman could have a second chance if he wanted, but the soldier was on the ground staring at his hand. He couldn't deny the hit was insanely strong, even deadly. Logan didn't wait for the guard's answer. He just threw more blows with the wooden sword as payback for earlier. This fight left all the castle soldiers terrified. Prince Logan wasn't the weakling he used to be. None of them could guess why. The truth is, in the future, when Logan was 40, he was just a low-ranking soldier after his family got destroyed. The other soldiers mocked him because when Logan was young, he lost a duel to his younger brother. They just couldn't understand how he became a soldier after his family got wiped out. Back then, the kingdom was betrayed and enemy soldiers invaded. All the soldiers fought bravely, and Logan did too. But still, the kingdom couldn't win and they were all wiped out. That day, Logan died in battle. He regretted a lot of things in his life. He'd always been a terrible person and wanted to ask his dad for forgiveness. Suddenly, Logan woke up in his room, totally freaked out. He'd been hurt after getting hit in the head during the duel with his younger brother. The main guy couldn't believe it. Was it all just a nightmare? Definitely not. He remembered everything. Logan looked out the window and saw his family's castle where he lived when he was young. His younger brother came to visit him in his room, scared of how Logan was going to treat him. He was shaking with fear, because Logan had always been awful to everyone, including him. Logan remembered that last time he treated him like absolute trash, and that was the last time Rome tried to get close to him. Logan's head was pounding with so many memories flooding his mind, and Rome really cared about his brother. The servants knew all about Logan's horrible personality, so Rick told young Master Rome to leave. But for the first time, Logan didn't yell. He spoke softly, telling Rome to come closer. The kid was stunned, and so was Butler Rick. Young Master Logan is acting weird today. Logan wanted to praise Rome's strength, but the words got stuck. He needed to do more than that after treating him like trash all this time. Logan hugged his brother for the first time and apologized for everything he'd done. He admitted he was a terrible brother and that Rome was amazing. Nobody could hold back tears in that scene. After talking for a while, Rome left Logan alone. Our main guy looked out the window and knew for sure it wasn't a dream. He had gone back in time and this time he was going to do things differently and save his family. A maid accidentally walked into the room and apologized. Rick walked in right after her and apologized to the young master on her behalf. Mary didn't mean to do it. This was so annoying. Logan now realized how ridiculous it was that everyone acted this way out of fear of him. How miserable was he back then? Logan said it was nothing and asked them to bring him paper and pens. Rick and Mary started to panic. The young master was actually going to work now. When they brought what he asked for, Logan thanked them. Rick couldn't believe it. Did his master really say thank you for something? Now the servants thought they were dreaming. And once again, Logan realized how trash he used to be. He asked to be left alone to work. But before that, he remembered that the war against the Empire was going to happen in 10 years and that was what would destroy his family because they would be weak and drowning in debt. His goal was to change not just who he was in the past, but also his family's situation. Plus, an internal war in his region within a year was the first thing that started to ruin his territory's reputation. After working hard writing for a while, Logan decided to go see his father. On the way, he noticed the staff turning their faces to avoid him. They knew Logan could end their lives in an instant. A maid was carrying clean clothes and didn't see the master, so she fell to the ground. The girl froze. She was lost. Her life was over, but that's not what happened. With a gentle hand, Logan helped her up. Maybe it was a miracle. The girl then saw the master's face. This wasn't the face of a nice guy, so she begged for her life and then ran away without looking back. Logan then realized that just acting differently wasn't going to change things that fast. After all, he was used to smiling like a damn killer. When he arrived at his father's office and they announced he was there to see the man, Logan turned cold again. It had been more than 20 years since he last saw his father. When he entered, the cold treatment was expected. Patrick McLain of the McLain house, Patrick McLain, had no reason to respect his eldest son. Logan was there to ask permission to go for isolated training on the family's mountain property. The protagonist had memories of his past life and knew the training to become a knight, but his current body was that of a useless and lazy piece of trash. Also, he needed to get money to change things, and getting stronger would help with that too. He had to be ready because in 3 months that girl would come to them. Patrick McLain asked if Logan was trying to run away after his defeat against Rome. Logan denied it. He just realized he was weak and had wasted his time until now. He decided to improve, but Patrick McLain had heard those excuses before. He wouldn't allow it because his son's problem wasn't just lack of effort. Logan should have expected that. He admitted to his father that his behavior was his biggest problem and that he was going to change it. His father was no longer willing to believe his lies and ordered him to leave. The request was denied. This was the consequence of everything, but Logan told his father that he had been stupid and immature until now, and that through this training he would take the first step to change. Not even the bitterest father can abandon his children, so Patrick McLain said this would be Logan's last chance to change. However, before leaving, he asked if Logan thought 3 months were enough to catch up to Rome. Logan then said firmly that the training wasn't to defeat Rome, but to defeat himself. When he left the room, it had been a long time since Patrick McLain felt any respect for his son, and our guy noticed it. Even though his father didn't say anything out loud, Logan felt it was worth changing. Logan went to the mountains and was going to stay in this place for 3 months. His goal was to train his body and, more importantly, achieve something bigger. True warriors can even defeat a dragon using the life force in their cores. 3 months passed with the protagonist training every day to his absolute limit until he finally managed to form his core, something he only achieved at 40 years old in his other life. With this, he could push his body's limits beyond the breaking point. On the last day of training, he stood in front of a huge tree to use his strongest move. By focusing all his aura, he transfers his energy to his sword and muscles. The strike can cut through space itself to reach the target and then slice it in half. This is the power he gained at the end of his life, and now he can do it even at this age. Though he achieved it, the cost to his weak body is huge. This should only be used as a last resort. Now he can go back home and start making changes, and the first thing he needs to change is his clothes. It smells like a sewer. When he got home and went to visit his dad to show his progress, the guard Daman blocks the entrance because only those with direct McLain blood can pass without permission. It was that day Logan realized his authority in the family was at risk. That's when Logan challenged Daman to a duel and shocked all the castle guards by easily beating a trained soldier. This was the result of his training and combat knowledge and would stop other guards from trying the same. Later, in his father's office, Logan and Patrick McLain start talking. His dad says what he saw was impressive, recognizing his awakening, and asks what happened during his training. The young man thinks about the fact that his dad witnessed something he never expected and says he simply got rid of his greed and let it all go. While training with that mindset, there came a point when he could feel the strength filling him from within. Logan reflected that, as crazy as it sounds, it was a perception he gained in his past life, that only after giving up on avenging his family was he able to become a force user, and how he only awakened after turning 40. His dad seemed impressed that this simple realization had done this to him and said he really had changed. However, he was furious, because after this breakthrough, the first thing the kid did was attack a knight. Logan insisted the guy deserved what he got and asked if his dad had heard the whole story about the other soldiers. His dad said yes, but still thought those measures weren't necessary. They were, he replied, surprising his dad. After all, the man was trying to trick his lord's blood and make him look like a fool. If they let him pass, he'd become poison to the family's discipline. The young man then thought about how hierarchy is the foundation that lets an organization function, and when hierarchy wobbles, the organization itself weakens. After 10 years as a mercenary, one thing he learned is that when dealing with a group of armed men, you gotta set the order once and for all. What happened today would serve as a lesson for the other knights. His dad went on saying Daman was largely to blame, since he failed his duty and tried to trick Logan. But what he did was too risky, and it was better to hold back for now. Logan was surprised at how easily his dad forgave him, a stark contrast to his past life. Seeing his face, his dad even joked, asking if he wanted a punishment. "I'm good," Logan replied. His dad continued, saying he didn't think what he did was right and he should never do something like that again without permission, since he hadn't even officially received his rank yet. Logan respectfully said he'd remember that. Shortly after, his dad announced that his fiancée Rania Wolf would be visiting soon. At first, the young man looked surprised by the news, but it wasn't surprise, it was pure excitement, because the day to get the money was finally coming, and just in time Rania Wolf showed up. All the ladies present were speechless, and all the guards envied Logan. When she approached, she greeted Lord McLain gracefully, saying it had been a long time, and asked how he was doing. Patrick McLain, amazed by Rania Wolf's beauty, commented she had become a beautiful woman since the last time he saw her. Rick also watched from a distance, impressed to see her grown up. However, he looked at Master Logan, who didn't seem even a bit impressed by her presence. Raina Wolf said she had a letter entrusted to her by the Count, her father, and then began reading it. The letter was addressed to the male Patrick McLain and was so boring that for the next 30 minutes even the guards almost fell asleep. However, the letter's conclusion snapped everyone back to reality, since the final request was that, due to some unavoidable circumstances, the arranged marriage between Queen Wolf and Logan be called off. After hearing all this, the young man figured the message was pretty straightforward. They thought Patrick McLain and Clay would become a stronger aura user, but instead, he got stuck as a high-ranking knight for over 20 years. And honestly, Logan's a loser, so it makes no sense for the Wolf clan to team up with the McLains. So, they'd rather just go their separate ways. Patrick McLain was pissed, since they were breaking off the marriage for no good reason. He got that the Wolves were trying to humiliate the McLains. Queen Wolf fired back that wasn't true, saying she even asked to be the messenger because she feared Patrick McLain would jump to that conclusion, so she wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. Then she went on about her vivid memories of her year at the McLain estate as a kid, the good times she had with Logan in that beautiful, peaceful place, and how she didn't want to let go of those precious moments. But there's nothing she can do, since she's tied to her family and has no choice but to follow her superior's decisions. So the best she can do is come and apologize to Logan and Patrick McLain in person. Everyone was stunned by her words, saying her heart is as beautiful as her face. Everyone, except Logan, his stepmom, Mary, and Kairos. Then Logan straight up asked Queen Wolf what exactly was the reason for this breakup. He said he wanted to know what these so-called unavoidable circumstances were. Meanwhile, Logan was thinking about his stepmom, Ranian's birth mother, and how she always saw him as the enemy because of the succession issue. He thought she wouldn't get involved, but it seems family honor is a whole different story for her. Queen Wolf apologized again and dodged the question, saying she didn't know the reason for the split, arguing that she was just someone who was going to marry into another family, so her dad didn't discuss important family matters with her. Mary was furious and concluded that, considering everything, she understood why Queen Wolf came to announce the breakup with no apparent reason. Queen Wolf, terrified, her white dress stained brown, looked at the McLains and announced that, for the trouble caused, the Wolves were willing to pay 3 million gold pieces as compensation for ending the engagement. Seeing this, financial manager Dwayne nearly had a heart attack, and Logan was hyped hearing it, thinking he was about to score the cash, but no way. Hearing that, Patrick McLain nearly had a rage attack, asking how they dared propose such a thing. A knight from the Wolf House jumped in front of Princess Queen Wolf to protect her and begged Patrick McLain to calm down. Patrick McLain asked if he was a high-ranking knight like himself, admitting it was impressive that someone so young had come that far. He went on saying maybe hurting the Wolf family's rising star would be a fair trade for the McLain family's dishonor. The knight replied that his master Chiron considered Mr. McLain an honorable man and would never go after the young princess or anyone younger. Queen Wolf then stepped in, saying she didn't want to buy honor with money either, asking them to accept the gold as a sincere gesture to keep the friendship between the two families. Patrick McLain gritted his teeth, thinking if he pushed this further, he'd become a dishonorable man. He realized that's why Chiron sent these young ones. Patrick McLain continued, saying a visitor is a visitor, even if they bring bad luck, and stated the McLains don't chase after their guests. However, he wouldn't accept the Wolves' one-sided offer. The McLain house asked for only one thing, that the messenger, Queen Wolf, apologize sincerely to his son. Patrick McLain also made it clear he would reject any other kind of compensation. After all this, Logan stepped in, saying that as the person directly involved, he had a request to make. Logan thought they needed to accept the money, thinking letting them off with just words was crazy, especially since 3 million gold is the entire annual budget of the McLain house. Also, half of their current funds come from his stepmother's family, the Chirons. He thinks they'll go bankrupt as soon as that support cuts off. And for what? Honor? He thinks everyone's lost their damn minds and they have to take those 3 million no matter what. Then Logan starts talking to his dad and says he'd like to accept Wolf's apology conditions. Patrick McLain gets pissed off again, asking if Logan is going to backtrack on his word. Logan thinks about the pressure his dad's under, remembering that even without an aura, he's still a high-ranking knight. But sadly, that's nothing compared to others in the kingdom, and he thinks if he can't handle this, he'll never move forward. Patrick McLain tells the young man that the McLain house isn't so broke that they need to sell their honor for cash. Logan lets out a deep sigh and replies that they're actually exactly that poor. He keeps arguing that the McLain house owes the bank 3 million gold coins right now. A year's interest is about 150,000 gold, and without Chiron's money, they'd have been ruined ages ago. They're the biggest beggar family in the kingdom. In fact, they owe over 2 million gold coins to the kingdom they serve as lords. So, settling this with a simple apology makes him fear rumors will spread that they bowed down to the Wolves. Then Queen Wolf steps in, saying the Wolf House isn't some irrational family and they have the utmost respect for the honor of their claims. At this, Logan asks if she doesn't find it ridiculous to talk about rationality, since she was the one who unilaterally broke off the engagement. A flashback from the young man's past life pops up, remembering how back then he thought Queen Wolf was genuinely sad about the inevitable breakup, but that was before a certain incident. Queen Wolf and Logan are alone in a bedroom, and she thanks him for coming. Queen Wolf says they might be ending things today, but she still wants to make one last memory with him. Logan, thinking his life as a master was over, asks Queen Wolf to run away with him that night. That's when she throws a knife at his face, forcing him to draw his sword to defend himself. Queen Wolf tears her own clothes and, trying to shame him, asks if he really thinks someone like him deserves someone like her. Then she tells him to learn his place and get lost. She asks why he's carrying a sword if he lost to a kid, and says he just made things easier for her. Logan doesn't get what's going on, and Queen Wolf starts yelling as a thunderstorm rages outside. Queen Wolf accuses Logan of getting aggressive and trying to take advantage of her, and since his sword was already drawn, it was an easy lie to believe. The young man remembers they'd already blamed him for so many mistakes that even his own family didn't believe him, and as a result, the McLains were forced to apologize to the Wolves and pay a huge compensation. He thinks to himself that because of her, he'd never trust women again, calling Queen Wolf a street bitch, but swearing this time she wouldn't get away with it. After these events, Logan thinks about his plan and how he was going to change his rep in the family, realizing that by gradually showing he changed and convincing them, they changed too. But it seems the fight with Dominic made him realize something. The soldiers looked the other way, even when someone disrespected him, and rumors that he lost to his brother spread while he was away. So, you can't change the family by winning recognition from people like them. With only 9 months left until the regional war starts, his reputation didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was saving his family. Logan put his pride aside and told Queen Wolf he'd accept the Wolf family's compensation, ignoring his own family's will. Queen Wolf was speechless. Patrick McLain was furious and asked how he dared defy his will. Logan replied he wouldn't settle for empty apologies, leaving his dad stunned. He went on to say that his honor couldn't be bought with words that the wind just blows away. The value of that would be as light as those words. Hearing all this, Queen Wolf tries to make the best of the situation and says the Wolf family wishes to obey the will of the McLain house's male head. Then he asks Patrick McLain what he chooses. Logan watches his move and thinks that everything she says is just to save her dad's reputation and that she's probably freaking terrified of having to pay 3 million gold coins. Patrick McLain, staring at Rania Wolf, says that as the McLain family representative, he's satisfied with just a sincere apology. However, he'll let Logan decide if the apology is genuine or not. Hearing this, his stepmom, Marion, flies off the handle. Patrick McLain turns back to the young man and tells him to think carefully because if he accepts money for his dishonor, he's basically opening the door for his honor to be traded off in the future too. Without a second thought, Logan decides he can't back down to his dad on this and says that, as the person involved in the broken engagement, he accepts the compensation offered by the Wolf household. This shocks Marion and visibly pisses off Rania Wolf. After Logan made his choice, his disappointed dad said he thought Logan had improved a bit, but actually, he's gotten worse. He even adds it's his fault for not teaching him the real value of honor. Logan, though he doesn't say it to his dad, thinks everything he does is for the family's sake. In his room, after receiving the generous compensation from Rania Wolf, the young man is interrupted by a knock on the door. Thinking it's Rick, he invites him in. But instead, Dwayne, the family's financial advisor, walks in. Seeing him there, Logan wonders what he's doing. An internal monologue from Dwayne unfolds, recalling how, as the financial advisor, he had to manage the McLain estate with an ever-shrinking budget. He had to deal with soldiers demanding new weapons and servants running out of supplies for the winter. To make up for the lack of funds, he was constantly begging the patriarchs. He wondered if he was a financial advisor or a king of beggars and thought if this wasn't his hometown, he would have quit ages ago. But now, he had a chance to rest easy for at least a few years. He thought the only person standing in his way was the idiot, thinking to himself that Logan would have to split the 3 million with him. Dwayne told the young man he just stopped by to say hi since he made a huge impression the day before. Given how he defended himself and didn't give an inch under unfair external pressure, he was a seriously amazing apprentice, worthy of being the McLain family heir. While saying all this, Dwayne imagined his compliments deeply moved Logan. After all, he'd never gotten praise before, since he usually just screwed things up. He thought it'd be easy to take his money, but Logan wasn't impressed one bit. Dwayne kept going, saying that in tough times like these, 3 million gold coins were like rain in the desert, and Logan's cleverness had let the family breathe easy once again. The young man stayed stone-faced, saying he didn't see why the family should be relieved since that was his money. Hearing this, Dwayne lost all hope. He believed Logan was really going to use all the money for himself but tried to stay calm. After all, in 20 years as the McLain financial advisor, submission had become a normal habit in his life and this situation was no different. So he started crying, leaving Logan a bit surprised, who asked if the family situation was really that bad. Dwayne went on saying he didn't know if the other guy was aware, but the family owed 3 million gold coins to Cooper Bank. He wanted to explain that just the interest was 150,000 gold coins, but Logan cut him off, finishing the sentence for him. Dwayne, surprised, asked if he already knew about it, and the young man replied that the interest shouldn't be a problem. After all, it was harvest season, and he should be able to pay it with the harvest money. Dwayne tried to convince him that just running the barony cost a fortune, and they were always on a tight budget. He tried to say that if he could help a little, things would change, but Logan interrupted again. He didn't want to hear it. Dwayne asked why he wouldn't help, since he thought he was against the Baron for the family's sake. Logan agreed. He said he'd use the money for the family's good, but not to cover the Baron's immediate expenses. Instead, he needs to get ready for the future. Dwayne, pissed off, thinks Logan has no clue what he's talking about and that he should just hand over the money right then and there. Logan then asks Dwayne if even paying off the family debts wouldn't change much of the situation. Dwayne argues that having a bigger budget would at least make managing the estate easier for a couple of years. The kid then asks what happens after that, saying that even if that were true, they just end up in debt again since they don't have any special products to sell. He concludes it's a vicious cycle and he's trying to break it with his own plan, for which he also needs the money. Den is stunned, wondering if this is really the same delinquent he knew. Thinking to himself he thought Logan was just some kid who didn't give a damn about family business. The kid says he has a favor to ask Den, and if he helps, he might even share some of the money to help cover some family expenses. Dwayne asks what he needs, and the kid says he needs to gather some mercenaries. Later, he talks to Rick. Looks like he's getting ready to take off again, and Rick asks where the hell he's going, saying it hasn't even been that long since he got back from his isolated training. Logan replies that he's going to make some money. Rick points out he already has a decent amount, but Logan insists he needs more. He goes on to say that Patrick McLain definitely won't let him go now because the atmosphere in the castle is insanely tense, but Logan says he's not going to ask his dad for anything. He's going to sneak out quietly. Rick's shocked, but Logan doesn't care. He thinks if he can't change his rep now, it'll never happen. So he needs to gather outside forces. Luckily, he's aware of what's going on in the outside world, just like when he was kicked out of the family in his past life, and concludes his first step is to find a certain guy. Rick tries to talk some sense into him, telling him he's not thinking straight and becoming a fugitive right now won't do him any favors. Logan gets annoyed with Rick's persistence, who asks what he plans to do if he just runs away. Rick even says if he really leaves, he might as well just run him over, which, by the way, he's close to doing, since he doesn't give a damn at all. The kid replies that everything will be fine for his friend, since he'll write a letter to his dad, so no one blames him. Rick asks what he's gonna write, but Logan just smiles. Rick lets out a relieved sigh. After Logan disappeared, Rick took the letter to Patrick McLain, who looked like he was about to make D-Day look like a walk in the park. The letter started with a formal greeting and went on to say that with a broken heart over the engagement, he decided to go get some fresh air but would be back soon. Signed, Logan McLain. After that, poor Rick just cried, wishing the kid would come back. Then a story about the McLain family is introduced, revealing that just 200 years ago, the family didn't hold the position they have today. Their vast lands stretched into neighboring counties and they were revered as rulers of the southwestern region of the Grandia Kingdom. But up until the current Lord Patrick McLain, the useless work of the last 3 generations of ancestors caused their title to be downgraded and their territory to shrink significantly. The vast grain depot, once called the McLain Plains, was handed over to a powerful vassal and the fertile lands were divided among others. The place they ended up going to, like they were kicked out, was the dry, barren land near the southern mountains, so the McLains were doomed to financial hardship. There were no suitable regional products and the common copper mines found in mountainous territories didn't exist there. Logan thinks that even if they win the regional war, they'd still need to keep asking Kairos for help. To end this vicious cycle, he needs a ton of money, way more than the 3 million he already has. He says there's someone here who can help him when he enters Cairo, the biggest trading city in the Grandia Kingdom. Various voices call out to customers offering rings, shields, and even fresh fruits and veggies. The kid thinks coming here reminds him how remote the McLain barony really is. He keeps saying that according to his memory, the person he's looking for spent his youth in Cairo and was told the guy lives nearby. The dude he's after, Philip Cloud, is a big shot in the Ares Empire, the strongest nation on the continent. It's a centralized power based on merit, meaning if you've got talent, no matter your gender or age, you've got a shot at making it. It's a place where even foreigners can enjoy power and wealth. Philip Cloud from the Kingdom of Grandia is a perfect example of that. He's one of the richest traders who moved to the Empire and the biggest arms dealer on the continent, known as the Grandia Kingdom's merchant. But actually, despite being called the Golden Beetle, He backed the people from his homeland and used his cash to create the miracle of Grandia's sovereignty. Walking down the street, Logan spots someone and wonders, is that him? The guy in the middle of the street just got scammed and was wondering how he'd survive from now on with no money. Logan watched him, thinking he'd heard the guy's business fail because of a scam, but seeing it with his own eyes was way worse than he imagined. While the guy was thinking about giving up on everything, Logan stepped up, trying to start a convo, and asked if he was Philip Cloud. Philip confirmed a bit suspiciously and asked who Logan was, thinking with his look, red eyes, and intense stare, he might be dangerous. Logan said he wanted to talk for a minute, but Philip stayed skeptical, wondering how this kid knew him. At that moment, Philip felt a strong emotion in his eyes. It was something businessman Philip had seen countless times: greed. He started guessing that, given the timing and old armor, this guy was a mercenary gangster. Logan tried to explain his reasons, but Philip got pissed and started yelling that the payment date hadn't come yet and that his business property sale would close in 3 days, so he should come back then. Logan assured him he wasn't there to collect any debt, but Philip barked like a rabid dog and repeated that his sales hadn't processed yet, telling the kid to get lost again. Logan tried to calm Philip down, saying he wasn't there to collect anything but to invest money, which left Philip shocked. When asked if it was true he was investing in him, Logan confirmed. Philip started thinking if he wasn't here to collect money, then this guy must be crazy, nuts for wanting to invest in someone like him who had totally failed. But at the same time, he wondered if Logan was telling the truth and asked how much he wanted to invest. Logan replied by asking how much he needed and said he'd help enough to pay off his debts and get back on his feet. Philip, still suspicious, studied Logan's face and the dirt on his armor, concluding he must have come from far away. That's when he realized. Logan tried again to ask how much he needed, but Philip cut him off, calling him a disgusting scoundrel. He said if the plan was to trick him, he should have prepared better, like the other guys who already made a fool out of him. He went on saying he wasn't an investor and that, from the shield on his armor, he must belong to the manhood in the southwest. To Philip, they were just a family of beggars living off their rich relatives. How could they want to invest if they can't even pay their own debts? Plus, he told Logan that if he got caught pretending to be a noble, he'd be executed and complained that he picked the wrong person because he's totally broke. Logan looked at the situation from another angle, thinking even deep down Philip showed good judgment, like a future tycoon should. He wondered how he could calm the guy down while Philip complained in the middle of the street that he didn't have money to eat, let alone to die. At that moment, Logan got an idea, asked Philip to pay attention for a sec, and showed him his aura, leaving him stunned. Philip thought someone as bright as him, who awakened his strength so early, would be dumb to ruin everything over a scam. He apologizes, saying a lot has happened and he's a bit sensitive, then asks what Logan's interest in him is. Logan says he wants to hire him forever and, as a bonus, pay off his debt. Philip turns skeptical again, asking if the McLain family even has the money for something like that. Logan asks about the young man's debt amount, guessing around $250,000, and says he'll pay it off and give him another $300,000, revealing the cash he had been carrying all along. Philip looks at Logan and thinks he's an angel, so he signs the contract. The terms are, if subordinate Philip tries to harm the boss on purpose, he will feel unbearable pain, like his soul is being torn apart, an unreal formality. The witch who sealed the contract tells Philip that if he doesn't like it, he should work hard to awaken and at least become a high-ranking knight, or pay a fourth circle mage, or hire someone worth several hundred times the contract value to break the curse, leaving Philip speechless again. She dismisses them, saying to say hi again, and Philip wonders if he just got scammed. He thought he was hallucinating when he imagined Logan as an angel, especially now that he realized he just paid a fortune for a magical contract only to make him his savior, when a single page of the contract is worth 30 slaves. Logan adds that they can't trust each other yet since they barely know each other. So if they're going to invest a fortune, he needs reasonable guarantees and assures Philip that once they build some trust, things will be different. He'll get rid of the contract and extends his hand in a gesture of camaraderie. Philip thinks this contract is a disaster, with no details about deadlines or conditions, but he has no choice but to trust Logan for now. So, he shakes his hand. Philip asks, what does Logan need him to do? He replies that first they need to buy monster meat. Hearing this, the young man calls Logan a psycho. Logan thinks Philip's reaction is normal, since monster blood and meat contain poison, so burning it would be the safest bet. However, in a few years, the situation will change drastically. As soon as news spread that a monster blood neutralizer could be made with common ingredients, some food-scarce areas started consuming the monsters. That winter, they began treating deficiency cases after eating the Kellogg monster. Even those with injuries in intimate areas causing infertility started seeing results. A year later, the Royal Magic Tower confirmed everything. The Kellogg disappeared from the entire continent's map because the species simply vanished after research showed it was good for virility. With this in mind, Logan believes he can easily make 3 million or even more, depending on what he can get. Walking with a lunatic like this, Philip looks at Logan with disappointment and wonders if it wouldn't be better to just run away. At a tavern, Philip and the young man start arguing about what to do next. Logan tells Philip he wants to buy monster meat for 1 million gold coins, and Philip thinks he's completely lost it. The warrior tells him to calm down, assuring him he'll make money, even if he spends more on it. Philip says he's against the idea and asks if he's sure about what he's doing. He says yes, so Philip asks, what's the price range per unit to buy Kelloc meat? And he answers that Kelloc meat is worthless now, people are burning it because there are no buyers. So if he sends someone at level 0 to bring the bodies, it would cost around 200 gold coins because of the kingdom's transport fees. And this fee is charged per unit, meaning if you brought a bunch of Kelloc at once, transport would be way cheaper. Philip is impressed that Logan even thinks about transport fees and agrees he's right about the costs. He asks if with this price per unit and a budget of 1 million in mind, he's going to hire a mercenary guild for a kingdom-wide hunt and buy everything from them. Logan confirms he's right and asks if he sees any problem with that. Philip explains that the plan is completely wrong. Since all the monster meat is just lying around now, he should hire a merchant guild at the price of beef and everything would be solved. He goes on saying there are merchants out there who will bring and sell anything for money. Even if it's trash to throw away, they'll offer to get it for him. The young guy is so confident he even says they'll probably bring all the Kelloc meat in the kingdom as soon as he asks. All cut up and ready. Logan is impressed by Philip's idea, thinking his investment is already paying off. A bit suspiciously, he calls him an adorable rebel for some reason. Philip tells him not to worry about money from now on and to leave everything to him. After all, his faith depends on Logan's future. Then the young guy hands Philip a list of various things: ironwood cartridges, springs, and glue. He tells him to stay in K and buy all this in bulk, but Philip is skeptical again and asks if he's trying to open a toy factory, to which the young guy replies he has something even better in mind. Actually, Logan made Philip buy raw materials for war weapons and recalled how weapons made from these materials were used in the invasion of the Grandia Kingdom in his past life. Depending on battle conditions, a single soldier could even hold off a knight with these weapons. He also remembered ordering D&E to hire mercenaries before arriving there, so putting these weapons in their hands would be enough to gain an edge in the regional war. But first he had to find a craftsman capable of making these weapons and an instructor to train the mercenaries. 2 days later, in Harran, the mercenary city, Logan was talking to Kai Salin, an A-rank mercenary, trying to hire him as an instructor, but Kai Salin had never productively trained anyone before. Logan insisted the job wouldn't be that hard since he'd only be training the C-rank mercenaries he'd hire. Reluctantly, Kai Salin explained to Logan that he didn't know what he'd heard, but all he'd managed was guiding some young guys and that he should trust this mission to professional educators. Logan thought Kai Salin couldn't fool him since he knew everything about this because he worked with him in his past life. He recognized that Kai Salin could handle all existing weapons and also had great skill with horses, but where Kai Salin really excelled was as an instructor. After all, the mercenary squad he trained after retiring due to a serious injury was more skilled than anyone, but now he didn't seem very interested in that. Logan offered 4,000 gold coins for the service. Kai Salin played hard to get and didn't accept the offer. Logan raised it to 6,000, but the guy still refused, so he bumped it up again to 7,000 and once more, the stubborn man wouldn't budge, trying to explain to Logan that money can't buy everything, but the young guy raised the offer again to 8,000. That's when Kai Salin gave in and accepted the proposal, even thanking him in advance. They talked and Logan revealed he was the eldest son of the Baron McLain family, asking if he wasn't curious why he was hiring mercenaries from the countryside. Kai Salin replied he didn't care as long as he got paid. As they walked through the streets, they saw a man whipping a group of people, shouting that if he was late, he'd kill them all. Kai Salin went on saying that as Logan might already know, Harran is known as the city of mercenaries and slaves, and they'd see a lot more of this ahead. From there, the city turns into a slave market. Logan responded that he was familiar with the situation, thinking about buying a slave in this market too. A merchant watches him thinking he must be a naive peasant and calls him over to show his goods, saying he offers slaves at unbeatable prices, but seeing Kai Salin, he gets terrified. Seeing this, the young guy relaxes, thinking it was totally worth hiring him. They arrive at a shop with more guards than the others, and soon he realizes this is the right place. An old man greets Logan, saying he imagines he knows what he's getting into. The young guy replies he's there to buy a dwarf. The old trader confirms he's in the right place and explains that races from other worlds are rare, so they take good care of them, inviting him to come closer. Then he shows a pair of elves, saying it was super hard to get them and asks if he's ever seen elves before. The old trader tries to talk about the two elves, but Logan couldn't care less. He just tells the trader to hand over the chained dwarf in the back. The trader bluntly says he can clearly see it's a dwarf by how he looks and that he'll find plenty of uses for him. After all, even among dwarves, who are famous for being great craftsmen, This one is one of the few at an expert level. Hearing this, the young guy is a bit surprised. He always thought dwarves were born with insane manual skills, a race that creates, fixes stuff, and finds meaning in objects from youth to old age. An expert dwarf was more than he was looking for. He wouldn't even have to stress about the work he'd give the dude. Logan asks about the price and the trader says since he's an expert, the starting value would be at least 200,000 gold coins. The young guy looks the man up and down and asks if he thinks he's stupid. The old man almost soils himself and drops the price by 50,000 coins. Kai-Selen wonders how he got the old dude to drop the price so fast. The dwarf looks at Logan and says what he did was ruthless, but the young guy thinks it's basic stuff. The dwarf then asks where he's headed now. Logan says he'll take him to the McLain estate in the southwest and do the things he asked. The dwarf just nods. It was exactly as he thought. Dwarves are famous for their manual skills, but not slave dwarves, because even though they're the artisan race without passion, they don't create true masterpieces. Logan wanted to awaken that passion in the dwarf and told him if he gave his best for the next 20 years, he'd send him back to the mountains, since 20 years was nothing for their kind. The dwarf was happy with the promise and tried to thank him when suddenly another slave broke free and started running from his master. The young man watched it all go down, but the slave didn't get far. A soldier caught him. It turns out Logan recognized that slave, a slave with blue hair and mismatched blue eyes. Suddenly, he remembered and started thinking out loud, making Kai-Selen curious about what he was saying. Logan wondered how it was possible to find the noble killer here. This reminded him of his past life, when there was an insanely famous aura user in the kingdom. A slave escaped after killing his masters, going on a killing spree targeting nobles and knights. He hid for the next 10 years. When he reappeared, he used aura, proof he had transcended humanity, making his life mission to kill every noble he found, earning him the title of noble killer. Logan explains that the slave escape incident happened about a year after he became a mercenary. So, by the timeline, that guy would still be a slave now. If he rescued that kid right now, he'd have a future aura user on his side. But the problem is that guy is an unstoppable homicidal maniac. The young guy thinks if he turns into a lethal weapon attacking his own allies, he can just lock him up. When the master tries to hit the kid again, Logan draws his sword and blocks the strike to the leg, shocking the master. That's when he notices the family crest, tells the guy he must be a client, and gets all cocky. The slave trader keeps saying how embarrassed he is and says the merchandise wouldn't obey, so he had to find a way to train them. He asks Logan how he can help. Logan says he wants to buy some slaves, referring to the two kids. But the trader warns that since both are rare, one redhead and the other blue-eyed, the price is super high and asks if he's sure about this. Logan insists on the price and the trader tells him it's at least 10,000 for each. The young guy thinks a young, strong slave costs about 300 gold coins and this dude still has the nerve to charge 100 times more for two kids barely having any meat on their bones. Logan keeps saying that, considering the value of the Nobel exit, 10,000 gold coins is cheap, but there's no way this dude knows that. Plus, he's not about to let this jerk make money off his back. So the young guy says that 30 times the price asked for a strong slave for two kids about to collapse, with one of them nearly dead, is kinda pricey. The master argues that they're the only ones there, and Logan fires back saying he'll pay 500 gold coins for each, a price higher than that of a healthy slave, which should be more than enough. The master tries to haggle, saying he won't even recover his investment at that price. Logan gets pissed and asks the master if he thinks he's dumb enough not to know a slave's price, and the master pisses himself. He thinks Victor always causes him trouble, so he's sure it'll keep happening and ends up accepting Logan's offer. Kai carries the injured boy on his back, saying it's crazy how he's already standing, since the wound shouldn't have allowed such a quick recovery. Logan keeps saying he healed fast, easy, but the truth is he was slowly releasing power to heal the kid, which is even better than the magic most low-level priests have. But he gets annoyed when he realizes the other boy might have detected his aura when not even Kai-Selen could feel anything, but he brushes it off thinking it's just a coincidence. Victor jumps off Kai-Selen's back and tries to attack Logan, but he doesn't even get close to landing a hit. The young guy grabs him by the neck and says he doesn't know if Victor's brave or just dumb, but he's leveling up and asks if he understands the mess he's gotten into and if he looks as weak as that worthless slave trader. He says it's cool that Victor's got fighting spirit, but he needs to learn to pick his battles better and hopes this is the last warning he'll need. Logan goes on saying that if he obeys, his safety and his little sisters are guaranteed, but if something like this happens again, he'll get rid of both of them. He lets the kid go thinking that's enough and reveals he plans to raise him as a knight. Victor asks if he's serious and Logan confirms, adding that he needs to know knights are honorary nobles and that he should naturally be able to escape his slave status. And not just him, but his sister too. Hearing this, Victor looks at his sister and says he'll do whatever it takes. Logan watches the two and realizes his guess was right. The sister is the key to controlling the violent nature of the noble assassin. He goes on saying he'll start their training as soon as they get home and then asks Hamar, the dwarf, to come over for a moment. The young guy says he'll start drafting the contract, a magical contract that will state the following. If Hammer works for him for the next 20 years, he'll send him back to the mountains. Hammer was shocked, not believing Logan would actually send him back to his people. The young guy kept going, saying it's hard to trust a promise that's just words in the wind, and asked if there was a problem if he didn't want to go through with it. Hammer never replied, grateful, saying he wanted him with all his heart and would do whatever he asked. He kept thanking him, saying he couldn't believe Logan was doing this. Seeing the reaction, Logan thought if a contract was all it took to motivate him, then he was the one benefiting here, and admitted he got everything he could want from this adventure and more, since he managed to snag the noble assassin. He says preparations for the clan war are going great. At that moment, however, Logan had no idea that rumors about his weird behavior had already spread all over the McLain estate while he was away, that his reputation was tanking and falling apart, and that Rick was stuck in confusion, trying to fix things and thinking, what the hell is Logan doing? Soon after, it seems he came back home, and no one in the world is happier to see him than Rick. The young guy looks at Rick and asks how he's been. Rick responds by asking if Logan's serious asking a question like that, almost having a meltdown. He keeps asking what Logan's been up to while he was gone and if he's heard the rumors going around about him. He's a twisted monster who drops 150,000 on monster meat. Turns out, a few days earlier, Philip had gathered every merchant he could find and said he wanted to buy monster meat on behalf of young master Logan McLain. Apparently, even before all this, people had already heard about Logan, about how he broke off his engagement and basically stole his fiancée. Philip himself started some weird rumors about monster meat trying to get more sellers. He had no clue that his master Logan had such a past and thought he was just some old crazy dude. Still, Philip saw an opportunity in the rumors and dropped the price of monster meat as low as he could while making sure merchants chased it like hotcakes at 1 gold piece per kilogram. He figured no merchant would refuse to sell junk to someone willing to pay for it. He added that if they wanted money, they should bring all the monster meat they could get. Philip's aggressive sales tactics seemed to work, with merchants gathering monster meat and rumors about Logan spreading through almost the entire Thieves district. Hearing all this, Logan comments that Philip did his job perfectly, and Rick is amazed, not understanding how he can be laughing at a time like this. Logan goes on saying he should look at the faces of those who came with him and think about how many rumors they must have heard to look like that. To all this, the young man simply replies that he shouldn't worry because soon it'll all be over. But Rick warns him not to be so calm, because the next stop is facing Patrick McLain, and he's furious. In his father's office, Patrick McLain asks Logan if he enjoyed leaving home. It was a trip worth taking. That's right, Logan replied. Patrick McLain continued saying he heard some rumors, that he'd done some crazy stuff, but at least it was worth it. The young man defended himself saying rumors are just that, meaningless lies, and he doesn't regret anything he's done. His stepmother jumped in telling Patrick McLain he was exactly right before. Logan had no sense of his position and how his actions could dishonor the family name, but the young man didn't let her finish and interrupted, saying she was exaggerating a bit. After all, he just spent the money from the broken engagement, as he saw fit. Marion re-enters the conversation asking Patrick McLain if he heard what she said and if he's still on her side after everything. But Patrick McLain yells that it's enough and calmly asks her to leave since he wants to talk to Logan alone for a moment. Patrick McLain warns Logan this is the last chance he's giving him. Logan looks scared, standing before his furious father. He asks his son what's going through his head and says they need to have an honest talk about what's going on. Logan thinks to himself, knowing his dad won't let this slide this time. Then he tells Patrick McLain that he wouldn't understand even if he explained it. Patrick McLain responds, asking Logan if maybe he's the one who doesn't want to be understood, and if Logan realizes what people around him say, that he's violent, cruel, obsessed with money, even crazy. He goes on asking Patrick McLain how much longer he has to cover for him, and if that moment comes in the future, he begs him to let him know. That way, at least he can use the excuse that he did his best for the young man's late mother. The young man thinks he can't believe Patrick McLain mentioned his mother, since he never brought her up in his past life, not even when he got kicked out. And maybe Patrick McLain hasn't completely given up on him yet. So, Logan asks his father for 1 year. He requests that in 1 year he'll prove to Patrick McLain the reasons behind his actions and once again pleads for this last favor. Then we see Patrick McLain alone in his room reflecting on what just happened, admitting how weird a favor between father and son sounds and thinking that if Logan doesn't prove his words after 1 year, then he'll have to make a decision because he's Patrick McLain of the McLain family before he's a father. A photo of Logan's mother, Queen Wolf, appears, and Patrick McLain apologizes, saying he doesn't understand what's going on with his son. Patrick McLain starts a monologue saying he promised to protect him at all costs and raise him right. In the end, everything fell apart because of his own negligence. Walking through the castle halls, Logan runs into his younger brother and what he sees leaves him speechless. Ronian had awakened his power. How did you guess? You caught up pretty fast, Ronian comments. The kid is happy to see the boy awaken his power so early, at just 14 years old, and he thinks that in his past life, Ranian's power only showed up during the clan wars, but this time it happened way faster. It's all thanks to you, Ronian says, leaving him confused. Then he explains that the knights tried to stop him from finding Logan when he came back. That's when he awakened. Apparently, he beat the knights while trying to find Logan. Logan started laughing and told Ronian he did a great job. He thinks if he teaches him the secrets of the divine sword, as soon as his power stabilizes, he could become way stronger than he was in his past life. In a cabin south of the McLain estate, Logan meets with Dwayne, who tells him that the 35 C-rank mercenaries he asked to recruit are all there. Looks like the mercs are pissed at the kid, wondering if this whole thing is some kind of scam. It had been 10 days since they were called there and none of them had met Logan yet. One of them said a minor son's family wouldn't dare face a mercenary guild unless they were crazy. Another replied, maybe they'd never find out, since rumors about him had reached them too, and they were pretty serious. Then they started talking about the kid's appearance, how he wore a sword and armor trying to pass off as a soldier. Hearing all this, he thought he needed to control those scoundrels who fought to make a living or he'd never get along with them. So Logan walked up to one of the mercenaries and asked if he thought it was funny to wear armor and carry a sword. The guy replied he didn't get what he meant and wondered how Logan heard his comment from where he was. The kid then started mocking the dude, saying he could think that way only if he had the talent to back it up. Then he said he was nothing but a worthless C-rank mercenary and asked what non-existent skills he thought he had to look down on others. Then he sarcastically asked if he'd offended the guy, acknowledging even a low-level dude like him had pride and told him to come closer to settle this. The warrior made a proposal. If the guy could land a single hit on him, he'd let him go immediately and even pay him a full year's salary, sealing the promise with the honor of a noble at stake and making sure everyone there was a witness. The mercenary stepped forward and said this was great for him, since he couldn't back down now, and gave Logan a look trying to intimidate him. But how do you scare someone with that gorilla face? The crowd started commenting on the merc's size, wondering if he wasn't B rank. Another guy said he wasn't yet, but might get there after this job. Hearing this, Logan mocked him, realizing that must be the reason for the merc's confidence. The mercenary tells Logan to attack first and he replies that the other will regret that decision, but the merc ignores the danger, saying he's been using a sword way longer, so he doesn't need to worry. He even asks Logan if he needs any advantage at this point. The kid focuses his power and punches the guy in the face. Everyone is speechless at the strength of the blow. And it looks like Logan ended the duel right there, with the man lying on the ground and his teeth flying through the air. The other mercenary watches in disbelief while Logan just stretches his shoulder, mocks, and asks if anyone else wants to talk. The mercenaries can't believe he already masters strength at his age. They think it's ridiculous. Kian watches and thinks he always found him different but never imagined he was this good. The kid goes on saying no one else will make comments from now on. After that, he formally introduces himself as Logan McLain, the one responsible for summoning them. And he keeps saying that a lot of them are probably wondering why he's wasting money hiring mercenaries. Then he explains that he wants to train them to be crossbow knights. Dwayne and Kai look surprised, and the mercenaries didn't know what to make of that idea. One of them even said they'd just spend all their time reloading. Kai whispered to Logan that crossbows aren't efficient weapons for knights to use, but he replied that he already knew that. Kai asked why the hell the kid would want them to use crossbows if he already knew. Logan explained that crossbows were way more destructive than bows, but for an inexperienced shooter, it would take over a minute just to reload while on horseback. He'd run out of firepower in a minute, even carrying 3 or 4 loaded crossbows. No wonder they're confused. Logan tells Kaiselen that although he thinks it's a waste of money playing soldier, he has to train them well first, because he'll find out why later. And as a final comment, he says that the crossbow cavalry will be a huge force for McLain, even beyond the upcoming war between the fiefdoms. Kaiselen isn't quite sure what to think but agrees to his master's request. A few days later, the kid looks at a paper in his room and thinks that out of the 350 mercenaries they hired, only 312 passed the simple qualification test. He says, that's enough. And suddenly someone interrupts him. It was Hamar wanting to know what was on that piece of paper he got. Logan explains it's a blueprint for the crossbow he's going to make, and continues saying it's probably a bit rough to a pro's eyes. The kid thinks this was a weapon he used for decades in his past life, so he drew pretty much all the structures he could remember. And since Hamar is a master craftsman, he should be able to build it. Hamar agrees that they'll have to put a cartridge that stores the bolts on the back of the crossbow and make it reload automatically, needing to shoot 3 times in a row. He asks who the hell had such a stupid idea. Logan replies that it was him, and Hammer looks annoyed. Then Hammer comments that it's a brilliant idea, but with the string twisted like that, the cords won't hold and will break. Also, if you put a wooden box like that on the back, it'll be uncomfortable for the shooter, and he asks Logan what he's going to do about it. The kid answers that it's not his problem and that Hamar should figure it out himself. Hearing this, the dwarf looks furious. Logan explains it was just a joke and goes on to say he needs to reduce the bolt size to shrink the cartridge itself. Agreeing with Hammer that it'd be single shot, he suggests they make pre-made cartridges instead and reload them with each shot, calling the loaders chargers for convenience. Hearing this, Hammer is stunned. He says even for an expert shooter, a crossbow can't fire 2 shots in a minute, and this would be like a weapon out of its time. Logan thinks that's because it actually is a weapon created in the future. Hammer then tells Logan that people think all you need to make something like this is a spring cartridge, some wood, glue, and a bowstring. This is a motivating challenge for him, and he says he'll give it a shot. Hearing this, Logan asks Hammer when it'll be ready, to which Hammer replies by asking if Logan is making him build something he's never heard of or seen with a deadline. Logan then says it's still a weapon made by humans. Hearing this, Hammer is puzzled, asking where and who made it. Logan ignores it, telling Hammer he doesn't need to know that, and challenges him by saying if he thinks he can't do it, he better give up. Hammer says he only needs a month, and in that time, he'll build something way better. Seeing the situation, Logan is pleased to see what happens when you mess with a dwarf's ego. Later, at the castle's training field, Victor is seen running. Logan warns him he's slowing down again and that he can do better, so Victor tries to speed up again. Logan thinks about how he's only been feeding and putting the kid to sleep for days since he arrived, but he can't believe the difference that little bit of food made. He tells Victor to take a break. At that moment, his little sister runs up to him. Logan thought once again about the huge investment he made when he bought Victor. A 14-year-old kid, way smaller than the others his age, ran 20 kilometers non-stop, showing mad talent. But what he admired most was the young guy's determination and grit, like he didn't give a damn about anything. It was clear to him that Victor wasn't a noble-born killer by nature. This huge change in his life probably happened because of his sister. Quick as that, Logan snaps out of his thoughts and tells Victor the break is over and it's time for the next training. He throws a sword into the kid's hands and says from now on they're going to learn the sword technique from the Grandia kingdom that every knight hopeful in the country trains in. Soon after, the instructor called Victor's attention to do a demonstration. The kid gripped the sword tight and sliced through the air hard. But Victor didn't look impressed, thinking all he wanted was to pass out and crash. Still, he bit his lip and thought if the price for good food and a decent night's sleep was this exhaustion, he'd do whatever it took. Then he grabbed his sword, like Logan did, and cut through the air perfectly. Watching this, Logan thought what he'd done before was flawless, just like Victor's strike. Not just the move, but every breath, and he only showed it once. That's why he's blown away seeing how easily the kid keeps up with him. He comments that not even Rania was this good, and they're the same age. Seeing this, Logan tells Victor that if he boosts his stamina and nails the sword technique perfectly over 1,000 times straight, he can call himself a knight. Hearing this, Victor's eyes light up, picturing himself in that spot. Then Logan asks if he can do it, and the kid happily says, yeah. Logan goes on telling Victor if he needs anything else for training, he can ask Rick. Rick would probably handle most stuff, but Victor says he doesn't need anything. Logan presses, asking if he's sure, and Victor says his only request is that he takes care of his sister. That's enough. Logan thinks that's perfect. While training, Victor figures maybe the kid isn't ready to jump into war right away, but he'll be a huge help to McLain down the road. He also concludes that both the mercenary corps and the weapon Hammer will make will be a serious force. Still, he shouldn't get too hyped. After all, Hammer might not be able to make a good crossbow. A crossbow, and even if he did, the mercenaries might not know how to use it right. Since he left everything in someone else's hands, he needed to come up with another plan. Then, Logan went to his dad's office and said he wanted to join the night training, and it looks like his dad accepted the request. At the night training grounds, Captain Hinckley introduced Logan to the others, warning that he'd be joining the training from now on. Apparently, the knights didn't take the news well and started whispering among themselves, thinking Logan might see the night order as a joke since he beat Daman. A memory of the captain popped up. He saw himself in Patrick McLain's chamber, where they were discussing the young guy's entry into the order. The captain didn't look happy at all. In fact, Hinckley told Patrick McLain that if he joined, the knights wouldn't be pleased. But Patrick McLain replied he wasn't asking for special treatment. He actually asked them to be tough on him, like they would with any rookie. Now, Hinckley thinks that even with Patrick McLain's request, he's still the Lord's son and it would have been easier if Patrick McLain had asked him to treat Logan more gently. Logan notices the captain's worry and calms him down, saying not to stress. He claims if he fails any of the night order's exercises in the next week, he'll just pretend nothing happened and step out of Hinckley's way. Hinckley is surprised by the kid's attitude but ends up agreeing. Hearing this, he decides that the night order's training will be 3 times harder for the next week. Soon after, a knight is seen running with a buddy on his back, wondering what kind of training this is. The warrior yells at his students not to die and reminds them they're cavalry knights who can't ignore what it's like to be a horse. He tells them to feel what it's like to be the horse carrying them through the battlefield while fully armored. The knights realize this is why they've been training in full armor and also complain that all this is happening because of that damn troublemaker. They speculate on how long Logan will last with this training. 1 day, 2, maybe 3. But everyone could be wrong because Logan is sprinting full speed, cutting through the crowd and leaving everyone speechless, even the captain. And to top it off, the kid's smiling while doing it. Hinckley was furious, thinking at this rate the knights would fall behind, not Logan. That said, he ordered everyone to stop and take a 10-minute break. Then he went to ask how the kid was doing, if he was tired after that run. Actually, what was on his mind was that it was obviously exhausting and all he had to do was give an honest answer to get out of that crazy training. But he didn't even finish his thought before Logan interrupted, saying it was a piece of cake. Hinckley was stunned, asking what he meant by that, and the kid replied it was great training. If the knights go through this every day, there's no way they won't be strong. Then he tells Hinckley he's looking forward to the next training session, while 2 guys on the ground look like they're about to give up any second. Hinckley thinks that's not exactly what he wanted, and Logan once again seems not to care. Later that night, the kid looks around and realizes he's alone on the training field. All the knights must have gone home already. So he starts reflecting, thinking training with the knights is his insurance policy in case all his plans fail. If that happens, he'll join the knights and fight on the front lines, so it's better to start spending time with them now and try to build bonds. Another reason he's doing this is his strength, since he can develop it through meditation, but just as important is training his body. That's where the cavalry order comes in handy. And just as he imagined, as his core strength grows and he doesn't feel fatigue, the kid grabs his sword and with a quick strike unleashes a powerful cut showing off his strength. He thinks about how he has all this power and it all comes from a core with just 1 star. He imagines that when he reaches 2 stars, he'll have the power to rival a high-ranking knight like his dad. The next morning, he tries crossbows, considering them all failures, and asks Hummer if that's all they can do. Then the kid asks about the cord he requested, saying this thing only shoots once and he's not even seen the magazine. He also tells Hammer it needs to be integrated. Hammer is furious and Logan keeps apologizing, saying he was too harsh, to which Hammer replies he's right and that even though he's his master, he should never insult a craftsman's pride. But what Logan really means is if this is Hammer's best, then there's nothing they can do about it, which almost makes the dwarf explode with rage. The kid goes on saying maybe he expected too much from him, since it's been weeks of work and he hasn't managed to do anything right. That's where Logan made a huge mistake. He started provoking Hammer, saying he underestimated him, that he was wrong and wasted money on him. That was the trigger for Hammer, who asked for another month, guaranteeing he'd come back with something worth the investment. Furious, he broke the crossbow he was holding. Logan watched Hammer leave, thinking about the anger consuming him and how it would make him start from scratch. A cruel smile appeared on his face, wondering if Hammer could create something incredible if pushed even harder. A month later, at one of the training fields, Hammer shows off the power of his new and improved crossbow that shoots 2 arrows at once. The invention leaves Logan speechless. Hammer comments that although it has 1 less shot than what Logan originally requested, this one's easier to hold with 1 hand and lets you swap out magazines. But Logan's blown away by how fast it loaded and fired, taking only 2 seconds. The kid thinks it's got less range than the gun from his past life, plus it's smaller. But for a mounted soldier, this is way better, totally exceeding expectations. He can't believe they've come this far and the feud war is still months away. Hammer asks if Logan's paying attention, and Logan lifts him up, saying he did a great job, bragging about the dwarves and wishing long life to Hammer and his people. But Hammer is not as happy as Logan, thinking someone might see them, telling him he's not a kid and wants down. Logan calmly looks Hammer in the eyes, ready to ask a question. When Hammer asks what it is, the kid snaps back into his psycho mode and says he needs 400 of these in 2 months. Then, Logan hands the crossbows to Keeson and the other mercs, and everyone's amazed by the projectile's range and the fact it fires consecutive shots. Keon looks at the invention and wonders, how is this even possible? How could a crossbow do that? A front-loading crossbow with this range, power, and speed. With this, an army of 300 or more cavalry could do things that scare him just thinking about it. So Kalian tells Logan it's seriously incredible and realizes this was the kid's plan all along. Logan confirms he's right and thinks Hammer went through a lot. Even with extra help from the craftsmen, Logan didn't expect them to finish the order 2 months early and make 100 extra crossbows on top of that. As expected from a master dwarf, it was undeniable. The guy was seriously good. He even thought about sharing this with the knights and soldiers, but money was tight and there was still the risk of the tech leaking. Better to wait for now. So Logan asked Kion to equip the mercs with the crossbows and clear the monsters outside the territory. Kellyan thought the idea was impossible, but the kid was sure they could handle it. In the end, he admitted maybe it was possible, but Logan wasn't satisfied with that and told Kion to make it happen, because if he can't, nothing else matters. Quilian thinks the kid wouldn't have made a weapon like this just to take down monsters and realizes he's gearing up for war. During one of the nighttime training sessions, one of the guys comments on Logan's insane physical endurance. Another asks if this ridiculous physical ability is genetic, and a third replies that if he's anything like Patrick McLain, he must be good with a sword. Then they talk about Logan's fight against Daman, and one warrior tells the other not to even dare compare the kid to the old man. Even before awakening his powers, Logan had already lost to his younger brother. But still, it's impressive how he's held up in training for over a month. That training, which at first was meant to make him quit, has now become the new symbol of the Night Order. It's tiring, but way more rewarding than just running around. Seems like the right level of training for an Order member. It turned out to be an unexpected boost for the low-ranking knights who were slacking on their training. Plus, the knights started to really understand and bond with their horses, and their connections grew stronger too. Hankley thought he'd only push the training because the young master wouldn't quit, but he couldn't believe all those results. His lucky charm had come close. At night in his room, Logan thought that after pushing his body to the limit with training, he'd stimulate his inner awareness with meditation. That way, the repetitions worked in synergy, and he'd been making real progress lately. He'd been noticing signs of a change in his strength. If he could improve his martial powers like he hoped, he could surpass all the monsters he'd seen in his past life. That's when something unexpected happened. Logan's core grew, started babbling nonsense, and suddenly his core turned into a 2-star core. He said he now had the basics to learn the next secret sword technique, Iron Cut, Killer Iron Cut. Just thinking about the power the first technique gave him, he was sure the second would be way stronger than he imagined. And if he could master this technique before the war, not even a high-ranking knight would scare him. Then Keon and the other mercenaries were hunting a goblin gang. Their soldiers shot at the goblins, killing them instantly. Noticing there was almost no recoil from these crossbows, one of the guys commented that his arrow went through one guy's head and still got stuck in another guy's head behind him. Logan thought the cloud of over 100 monsters had been wiped out in less than 10 seconds and that the mercenaries' old habit of using basic crossbows was long gone. They were way faster at swapping magazines. The young guy thought to himself it was totally worth the effort to hunt so far into enemy territory. Jillian asked if he was satisfied. More or less, he replied, remembering how they were a total mess during their first monster hunt, but they'd gotten way better. After that, Elian asked Logan why so many preparations, saying he'd never heard of a mercenary army with that much firepower, and asked if he planned to kill monsters all over the continent. But Logan didn't have time to answer Keon, because a mounted knight came galloping in to deliver a message from Rick. Apparently, the day before, the Viscount of Tesserone had declared war on the McLain house. In the McLain war room, Patrick McLain and the other family heads were staring into a crystal ball, while Viscount Tesserone declared that due to an old grudge over his ancestors' unjust murder, he blamed the McLain house, leaving Patrick McLain stunned. Some nobles looked at each other, wondering if what he was saying justified a war. Hankel and Marion asked Patrick McLain what his next move was. Hankel went on explaining that Tesserone's Night Order alone had way more soldiers than them, and even with Patrick McLain on the battlefield, their chances of winning were slim. That's when one of the other nobles suggested defending the city and calling for reinforcements, but that was a bad idea. If that happened, the knights who used brute force would take advantage, and the city would fall into total chaos. Meanwhile, another guy proposed sending an envoy to try for peace, but Patrick McLain was already furious. He told everyone to shut up and started explaining that although the royal family's authority wasn't as strong as it used to be, these people just declared war without even asking for permission, so it was crystal clear they planned everything. Therefore, peace was completely off the table. He ordered everyone to prepare for war and told his generals to come up with a winning plan, saying he wouldn't tolerate any objections. After all this, in that tense atmosphere, some random noble asked Patrick McLain if young Master Logan would also go to war, and Patrick McLain confirmed it. Marion added that Ryan's forces had awakened and that he was old enough to do his part too. Hearing this, Rick realized Logan wasn't at the castle and hurried to send a messenger to inform him. Being informed of the situation, he thought that according to memories from his past life, the war shouldn't start for another 2 months and wondered what could have sped things up. The messenger rushed Logan, warning that the Viscount was breaking all customs and had attacked right after declaring war, so he needed to hurry to at least get to the middle of the conflict. Kaisalan and the others shouted that Logan's mercenary troops were ready anytime. Seeing this, he told Kaisalan he didn't look surprised at all by the situation. Kaisalan replied that for a mercenary, if there's no war, they want to start one, and went on saying they got a great weapon, so it was natural they wanted to use it. The young guy looked at his army and thought these guys were way too confident, but he didn't worry too much and said what they felt was valid, since they trained hard over the past few months and had overwhelmingly slaughtered hordes of monsters. He keeps saying it doesn't matter when the war starts, because all they gotta do is win. He thinks they've got enough firepower now, so he orders his troops to march to the Mekali Plains. Sure, this war's gonna end in victory. Back at the barony, the war kicked off earlier than the Mechalans expected. The day after the war declaration, Tesserone and his troops showed up at the McLain estate, and their numbers blew the vassals' expectations. Captain Hank tells Patrick McLain that the Viscount's army has 100 knights, over 1,000 regular soldiers, and almost 10,000 recruits, explaining to Patrick McLain that this was a full-scale war. Hearing this, Patrick McLain thinks Tesserone's totally lost it. Not only was he facing a main force of knights who are basically superhuman to regular folks, but he was also throwing recruits into a war that wasn't even between nations, just some petty domestic feud. This made Patrick McLain wonder why the Viscount of Rimmond was going so far, and it looked like things were only getting worse. The captain tells Patrick McLain that House Kara's warned they won't send troops, leaving him and Mary speechless. Mary tries to argue the situation's impossible, that it must be a mistake. She remembers how both Lord Dwayne and herself had checked everything, and everything was set so this wouldn't happen. With no other choice, Patrick McLain orders Hank to gather every man capable of wielding a weapon, saying they'll fight back with everything they've got. Patrick McLain thought about how Kerr, whom they trusted so much, had turned their backs on them, putting them in a tight spot. McLain rounded up as many men as he could to fight Tesserone, gathering 53 knights, 552 regular soldiers, and 4,418 recruits, totaling 6,023 fighters. But this force wasn't even half the size of Tesserone's army. On the battlefield, 2 soldiers were chatting, and one asked where young Master Logan was. The other replied he'd been gone for a long time and still hadn't come back. Some soldiers said he probably wouldn't return and must have run off when he heard the news. Hearing this, Rania Wolf turned around and asked what they were talking about, saying there was no way Logan would do something like that. She believed Logan had already expected this war to happen, and that's why he taught her that secret move. There was no way he'd run away. Other soldiers overheard Rania Wolf and started thinking the rumors were true, that the Lord's son had deserted. Shortly after, Patrick McLain appeared next to Ryan and told his younger son he had to take his brother's place and not hesitate at all. He kept thinking he didn't want to believe those rumors, but it didn't matter now, since the only thing that mattered was winning the war. So he ordered all his troops to advance and crush that scum attacking their home. Then, Tesserone showed up with a grin on his face, thinking Patrick McLain had finally drawn his sword. He shouted that his knights were his sword and told Patrick McLain to face them. The young man charged his attack with aura and tried to break through the vanguard, but failed, as a knight with a shield blocked his strike, leaving Patrick McLain speechless. Rick was also on the battlefield and didn't look happy at all. He was watching people get killed and torn apart right in front of him. The young man thought about how they were losing the fight, how they were forced to send people like him because of the huge disadvantage, and that they'd lose anyway if they got surrounded where they were. While thinking this, he got hit on the head by a soldier from Tesserone's army, who was about to finish him off. But the warrior managed to dodge the blow and an ally saved him, killing the enemy and telling him to get up fast and ready his spear. Rick reached out and grabbed his hand, trying to show his gratitude for saving him. But before he could, an enemy knight killed his comrade and splattered blood all over Rick's face. He realized his only chance to survive was to run as far away from the enemy lines as possible. Suddenly, mounted soldiers charged at him as he passed through the bodies of his allies and foes. Rick realized they'd been surrounded from behind too and feared this was where they'd all die. After fighting off the knights who interrupted his attack, Patrick McLain's opponent assured him he truly lived up to his name. They made all sorts of preparations, but Patrick McLain still found it hard to trust his own condition. Watching the man, he wondered how this dude had taken his deadly blows, which packed some serious explosive power. Plus, he was shocked to see Tesserone also had a high-ranking knight. As he kept thinking, Patrick figured the other knights had to be at least mid-level. Was that why they weren't scared of him? He asked if they were the ones ready to face him. The other knight shot back with a question, wanting to know what he thought about the preparations. Surrounded by 4 knights, the young guy knew if he got stuck there, things would get way messier and the knight order would keep going. So he grabbed his sword and charged the enemy, swearing this would never happen. The young warrior clashed swords with the high-ranking knight, but another dude attacked him from behind with a spear. Luckily, he dodged. Seeing them all attacking from every angle, Patrick McLain asked if they even had any honor as knights and called them bastards for fighting dirty. But they didn't seem to know the word, let alone care about it. One even said this was their last battle before dying, so they should just leave him alone. Once again, the warrior pushed forward with all his strength, clashing swords with one of his foes. This time, he wasn't so lucky and got speared in the back of the stomach, badly wounded. He thought while the high-ranking knight blocked his attacks, the others jumped in and attacked a clear trap with no way out. And since the enemy flanked him, he figured Logan made the right call running away. Facing defeat, the warrior hoped at least Logan could carry on the family legacy. From a distance, the tyrant watched the fight between Patrick McLain and the knights. He thought he played a slick move, keeping his high-ranking knight a secret. Now, all he had to do was finish off Patrick McLain and take over McLain Castle. He was about to move on his plan when he heard a weird noise behind him. The sound of cavalry troops. A servant rushed over to report a cavalry unit was coming from behind, about 300 strong, maybe even more. Tesseron paused and asked if the McLains had other hidden troops they didn't know about. The soldiers said it was strange. The approaching knights didn't even carry spears. Their only weapons were small crossbows. Hearing this, Tesseron laughed out loud. He mockingly asked if crossbows were those little things hunters use and ordered the soldier to gather the rear guard and archers to take them out, calling them a bunch of fifth-rate soldiers. While he was talking, an arrow pierced his soldier's head, freezing Tesseron in his armor. Looks like Logan had joined the fight and was pissed seeing what was going down. He ordered his mercenaries to open fire. A storm of arrows rained down on Tesseron's army. The mercenaries' projectiles tore through the knights, wiping out seats in seconds and shredding shields and flesh. One soldier thought about how anyone who didn't raise their shield was already dead, and how he'd be one of them if he'd been a second late. Tesseron's archers got ready to shoot back, but their arrows fell short, their bows too weak to reach Logan's troops. The mercenaries fired again, killing more of the Viscount's soldiers. Watching the chaos unfold, Tesseron wondered how this could be happening. His rear guard was shredded in seconds and Logan's mercenaries weren't even using magic, just those damn bows. He wondered what kind of weapon Patrick McLain had created. Then he yelled at his knights, ordering everyone to head to the rear to take down those bastards. The cavalry charged full speed at Logan's troops, which made Logan smile. He was stoked to see them coming straight at him. Meanwhile, a fight was about to break out between Ryan and another knight. Queen Wolf dodged an attack, and her enemy taunted her, saying she did a good job. When the soldiers started clashing, one told his comrade to stop messing around with the kid, since the fight was getting serious. But the other replied he was doing his best and that Rania, even though he was just a kid, couldn't be underestimated. Hearing their exchange, Queen Wolf got it. After facing a real battle, not just training, she realized she wasn't a genius, just a regular kid who had awakened his powers. Still, she couldn't lose. Too much was at stake. She thought about her dad and how she was counting on him to play Logan's part in this war. She also told herself she couldn't afford to falter here. Lost in her thoughts, an opening appeared and Rania noticed it right away. He saw one of the soldiers with his back turned and wondered what the hell he was doing. Whatever the reason, he thought, this was an opportunity I couldn't miss. He swung his sword in a decisive strike, cutting through the soldier's body. It was so easy he was even surprised. He noticed the bolt stuck in the enemy's chest and looking up, he was glad to see his brother shouting his name loud and clear. But the joy lasted only a moment. Other knights were charging furiously from behind Ragnar toward Logan's position, following the Viscount's orders. Logan watched the comet shield formation the cavalry had taken, noting it was a solid defense, but it wouldn't stop him. His evil plan was about to be revealed. The young man told his soldiers to aim their crossbows diagonally at the ground, which made them question his judgment again. Then he flashed his psychotic grin and ordered the mercenaries to shoot the horses. This warrior was seriously pulling out all the dirty tricks to win. Hearing the order, the mercenaries got hyped, flashing the same killer smile as Logan. A rain of arrows fell on the cavalry's horses, causing all the soldiers to crash to the ground. Logan thought he had arrived just in time to help Rania, but there was still the matter of his father. He reflected on his vow to save his family in this life and that winning the battle meant nothing if he lost them. He gave an order to Kaiselan and rushed toward his father. Kaiselan told Logan that wasn't the plan and started freaking out about what might happen. He felt victory was already in their hands and wondered why Logan would risk it like that, even if Logan was stronger. Facing a mid-ranked knight could complicate things. Kaiselan finally took control and ordered Gerald to cover Logan as he advanced through enemy troops. Patrick McLain was still dueling the high-ranking knight, and things looked bad for him. The knight mocked him, saying he couldn't believe Patrick McLain was pushing forward knowing he'd be impaled. At the last second, Patrick McLain managed to dodge the attack and jump back to catch his breath. He noticed something strange about how the enemies were fighting. They were all going all out, practically throwing themselves at him. Patrick McLain wondered why they were so desperate when they had the advantage. Once again, he managed to deflect 2 spears that came at him a second later. Suddenly, Logan jumped in front of his father, taking down 2 mid-level soldiers in the blink of an eye, leaving Patrick McLain speechless. He remembered seeing Logan arrive with a mercenary squad behind the enemy, but he was sure that was far from where they were now. Turning his head, he wondered how Logan had gotten there, cutting through so many enemies. What he saw left him in shock. Behind him was a sea of corpses. Did his son really take them all down? Patrick McLain wanted to ask his son how he'd gotten so strong, but he knew it wasn't the right time and couldn't make sense of anything. Instead, he asked if Logan's presence meant they were winning. His son nodded. Hearing this, Patrick McLain put a hand on the young man's shoulder and said, "You did a good job." The high-ranking knight looked at Logan, trying to process what he'd just seen. How could a simple 20-year-old farm boy defeat 2 mid-level knights at the same time? He remembered that at that age he was working himself to the bone just to become a knight, but none of that mattered now. He would kill the kid right here. Then he ordered his fallen comrades to return to their positions. After witnessing what had just happened, Patrick McLain thought Logan was strong enough to handle most mid-level knights, even if he wasn't high-ranking. If the young guy decided to take on everyone while he focused on the high-ranking knight, maybe they had a shot at winning, but that's not what happened. Logan stretched his arm out in front of his dad and said he faced the knight alone. Patrick McLain tried to talk him out of it, saying it was too much for him. He acknowledged his son's progress but reminded him this was a high-ranking knight. Patrick McLain didn't even finish his sentence before Logan punched him in the gut, knocking him to the ground. The kid said that in his current state, even he could be his dad. He asked his father to trust him and leave this to him. Patrick McLain, though reluctant, agreed, told Logan to be careful, and the boy replied they needed to be fast and finish this. The high-ranking knight was shocked to see Logan advancing toward him instead of Patrick McLain. He got furious, thinking how dare some brat like him do such a thing. The warrior charged across the battlefield, channeling his strength and clashed swords with his opponent, pushing him several meters back with a single strike and leaving him stunned. The knight wondered how this was even possible. Even with his wounds, he didn't sense any remarkable power or high level from Logan, but the fact they were overpowering him could only mean one thing. Logan was pushing himself way too hard. As he prepared to attack again, he thought none of this made sense. He lunged with intent to kill, and they jumped side to side, dodging each other's blows. With their swords locked again, the knight thought if he wasn't hurt, he'd have the advantage and kill him. But while thinking this, the young guy saw an opening and managed to wound his opponent, slicing him in an instant. He jumped back to avoid a counterattack. Watching the scene, he thought there wasn't a single opening. He needed to exploit any gap to strike. It seemed he noticed something Logan also realized. Logan's sword's strength was being absorbed by his opponent, who thought this was his chance and said Logan had fallen right into his trap. He prepared to hit the young guy, and it looked like the blow was going to land this time, since Logan had lost his balance. But that wasn't the case. Soon, Logan was standing again, leaving the knight wondering if he was getting too slow. Logan started charging his aura again, getting ready to use his sacred technique. Seeing this, the knight knew he had to get out of there fast. Logan unleashed a wave of cutting energy, instantly wiping out his enemy and leaving everyone around speechless at what had just happened. Then he roared that he, Logan McLain, had killed the enemy general of the Tesseran army. Hearing this, the Tesseran soldiers were terrified, wondering how such a high-ranking knight could have fallen. Since they could no longer see the Viscount's banner, they started dropping their swords and begging to be taken prisoner. Rick began shouting Logan's name, wishing good health to his master, and everyone followed suit. Meanwhile, the Viscount was fleeing the battlefield, wondering where everything had gone wrong. He couldn't understand how his years of preparation had been for nothing. He had asked other nobles for help, gathered 100 knights, and that damn redhead with his men and weapons had ruined everything. Thinking fast, he concluded he needed to get back to his territory first. That way, at least he'd get out of this alive. Upon reaching his castle, he ordered the guards to open the gates, who were stunned to see him there. While this was happening, another guard spotted something in the distance and warned that knights were approaching with Logan leading them. Tesseran was petrified seeing them. Logan dismounted and told the Viscount he was pretty quick to run away. Then, standing in front of the Viscount's territory gates, he shouted for all to hear that Tesseran had lost the war. The young man then ordered the garrison to open the gates and welcome the true winner of the conflict. From the walls above, the soldiers wondered if it was true and thought maybe that's why the Viscount had rushed back so fast. But suddenly, a general shouted at them, asking if they were going to chicken out just because they heard the enemy's words. They snapped out of it. The general went on, saying there were just over 300 enemies, and, as Logan recharged his aura once more, he declared they couldn't be beaten in a siege with such a small force. The soldiers guarding the gates wondered what the hell he was doing, and then Logan jumped onto the wall that was tens of meters high and told the general to open the gates, unless everyone there wanted to die. Otherwise, he'd kill them all himself and open the gates. Inside the palace, Tesseran was gathering his most valuable belongings and money, thinking he should at least take some gold coins with him. Suddenly, Logan shouted at Tesseran from behind, saying he finally caught him. Falling backward, Tesseran asked Logan how he got in. Logan replied that his own servants had betrayed him before he even had to use his sword. According to him, that said a lot about Tesseran's reputation as lord of that fief. Seeing the situation, Tesseran was furious, wondering how his own servants could betray him. Then, turning cowardly again, he told Logan he surrendered and would compensate him with reparations and his share of life. Following the conventions of feudal wars, he begged for mercy for himself and his family. Hearing this, Logan mockingly asked about conventions. Then he looked down on the other man, basically saying, "You don't get to talk about rules," since he declared war suddenly and invaded everything in one day. Logan was furious, a vein throbbing on his forehead, and asked Tesseran if he had any conscience. Tesseran still tried to appeal to the warrior, saying he should uphold the honor of the nobility and that conventions guaranteed the lives of all prisoners captured in feudal wars. Logan accepted the terms and said he would respect the honor and customs of his own house, the House of McLain. Therefore, he would spare the man's life and give him time and permission to take a certain amount of wealth and leave. Hearing this, Tesseron wanted to thank him, but Logan cut him off, saying if he were his father, he'd definitely do all that. He declared that Patrick McLain is an honorable man, so much so that he would accept an unconditional surrender. Suddenly, Logan noticed a diamond-studded dagger in a chest behind Tesseron. Picking it up, he commented on its beauty. Tesseron insisted the young man keep the dagger, saying it was made by the best craftsman in the kingdom. Hearing this, Logan rejected the gift and told him to take the dagger with him. With a quick move, he plunged the dagger into Tesseron's chest, who took his last breath. Tesseron accused Logan of being a liar since he had promised to spare his life. Logan replied he never said that, only commented on what his father would have done. But tough luck for you, I'm nothing like him, he added. Tesseron tried to mumble something about noble honor, but the young man interrupted him, asking if he had any idea how many people died because of his greed and told him to end his filthy life right there. Tesseron fell lifeless to the ground. Looking at the body, he thought the man should thank God for such a simple death. Clenching his fist, now stained with Tesseron's blood, he snorted and said the crisis was finally over, and he needed to add the finishing touches. He loudly announced that Viscount Ray Monneron had taken his own life, thinking that would be enough. As soon as he finished, Kieselhan entered the room and told Logan he should take a look at the castle's underground prison. A few days later, outside the walls of Tesseron's Viscount Castle, Logan and Patrick McLain were talking. Patrick said he came straight to Tesseron's castle as soon as he recovered. He asked about Raymond's suicide. The young man confirmed it and said Lord Tesseron must have been in deep despair to do such a thing. But Patrick McLain didn't buy the story and asked straight up if Logan had killed Tesseron. He got real close, with a tense look. The two looked like they were about to throw down. Logan came clean and admitted he did take out Tesseron on purpose, saying they needed to take back control. He also told his dad he didn't want Tesseron's bloodline alive to avoid future problems. Hearing that, Patrick McLain looked at his son and praised him, saying he was a grown man and surely had his reasons. Then he went on to tell Logan that no matter what anyone said, he was the key player in this battle and thanked him. Hearing that, Logan felt happy and looked at his dad with a wide, genuine smile. "Good job, kid," said Patrick McLain, blushing and stammering. Then he tried to share even more good news. He told his son he would be named the official heir of the McLain house. Hearing that, the young man felt happy, then nodded with a smile and told his dad he was sorry, but he'd have to turn it down. Patrick McLain was puzzled and asked why he'd do such a thing. He was worried about his reputation. If that was the case, Patrick McLain assured him his achievements in this battle were enough to change the game, but for Logan, that wasn't the reason at all, which left his dad deep in thought. He went on explaining that Ronan was way more qualified to take the spot, since the McLains came from a family of knights. Then he mentioned Ronan had become a Force user at just 14, 4 years earlier than himself. It was impossible to predict what the kid would be capable of when he grew up, and Patrick McLain was simply speechless. Still, he argued that even if all that was true, combat skill wasn't the only factor to become the lord of a family. Logan then thought that maybe, according to current beliefs, that was the case, but if Ronan got the title of youngest Force user on the continent, like in his past life, there wouldn't be any problem. Most importantly, there was no upside for Logan in becoming the successor. He wasn't interested in wasting time being the next male heir. Logan told Patrick McLain that as the older brother, he wanted to give the younger one a chance. So, he hoped his dad would wait until Ronan was of age to finally choose the successor. Patrick McLain replied he never imagined Logan cared so much about his brother and said he'd grant his wish and postpone the heir selection. The decision would be made in about 5 years when Ronan was an adult. Hearing that, Logan thanked his dad. However, Patrick McLain still had another reward for him. They would return to the McLain mansion to tally the war spoils, probably amounting to several 100,000 gold pieces. But it seemed Logan already had something in mind for his reward. Suddenly, a guard shouted to open the gates, as the McLain knights had returned. The townsfolk started chatting about how they came back in just a week after the war and heard everything ended in a single day. Two guys started talking, and one kept wondering how that was even possible. He wondered if their knights had always been that strong. The other replied, asking if he'd heard the rumors that it was all thanks to young Master Logan McLain. He went on saying that according to the soldiers who came back first, Logan's mercenaries flipped the battle's tide. They appeared behind the enemies like they knew exactly what was going down. Another guy said they wiped out the enemies with some mysterious weapon and that Logan even took down a high-ranking knight all by himself. Then a girl asked if the master had always been this amazing. Another guy answered he always thought Logan was just messing around. The citizens started thinking maybe he bought all that monster meat in the past for a good reason, like he had some bigger plan in mind. The crowd began speculating that maybe the kid had been faking it the whole time, and it gave everyone chills just thinking about it. They even praised him, saying prodigies are just on another level. All thanks to the fact that he was now a Force user. Logan heard everything and found it super embarrassing to hear people talk about him like that. Then Ronan asked how it felt to get so many compliments, and Logan replied that it just made him blush, telling his brother not to exaggerate. But Ronan insisted it was impossible, since everything they said was true and that he should smile for the people because they were super happy to see him. Logan thought for a moment and, seeing all those excited faces, decided to give it a shot. He showed a killer smile, or more like he looked like he was holding in a bathroom emergency until he got to the castle. Honestly, he looked like a spoiled rich kid, Rich McGee or maybe Medusa. As soon as everyone turned around and saw Logan smiling, they froze. Sure, he wanted to rip their heads off with his thumb. But the guy had no clue what he did wrong, and Ronan just felt sorry for him. Patrick McLain turned his head to look at Logan, genuinely proud. Then he shouted that the next cheers would be for the champion of that war and that the big reception was about to start. Long live McLain, long live young Master Logan. Soon after, they showed the castle gardens, and Logan was strolling through the courtyard, finding it crazy that a welcome ceremony could last until morning, especially for those who just came back from war. But the peace didn't last long because his mom Marian yelled from behind asking what he was doing. Ronan grabbed his arm trying to make her stop, but Marian kept going, saying she heard everything. She asked Logan if it was true he refused to be the heir and what the hell he was planning, because he might have fooled everyone, but she wasn't an idiot. Ronan tried to calm things down and told Logan that the Shirashi story had hit Marian hard, but he said it was fine. He turned to Marian thinking that, despite the grudge she still held at that moment, she lost all real power because Cairo betrayed her and she was no longer a threat to him. The young man kept thinking that if he handled this right now, she might accept his apology. He honestly admitted to Marian that his actions in recent months had been unreliable and that he even regretted what he'd done, driven by jealousy and insecurity. Hearing this, Marian yelled at Ronan that she was right, since Logan was admitting it was all his plan. Ronan interrupted her, begging once again for her to stop. He apologized to Logan again and explained that she wasn't herself at that moment. However, Logan didn't seem to care much. Marian then turned to Ronan and asked him to pay attention because the one who really deserved an apology was him. Ronan was shocked by that and asked what she meant. Logan went on saying he'd been apologizing since he got back but never could say exactly why. It seemed the guilt and cowardice built up over the years weren't so easy to shake off. Ronan then questioned his brother about what the hell he was talking about. Logan hinted that Ronan already knew what was up, that over the past years he had actually hated Ronan. He continued, saying he tried to hide his own incompetence by hating his brother and now truly regretted those pathetic years of his life. He asked Ronan to accept a formal and sincere apology. The young man bowed his head and asked his brother for forgiveness. After all this, Ronan stared at his brother without saying a word, and Logan, still with his head down, thought that in the end, the bad things we do don't get wiped out by the good ones and considered himself as naive as ever. Ronan finally broke the silence and told Logan it was okay. Logan was surprised to hear that. He went on saying he believed that as long as he was kind to Logan, even when he was distant, one day, the brother he knew would come back and smiled at the young man. It was enough to make a grown man cry. Logan was happy and wondered if maybe he'd doubted so long about doing something so simple. Then he talked to his mom. The warrior told Marian he really cared about Ronan and sincerely hoped he would become the heir. He went on saying he knew asking Marian to trust him right away was a big favor, so he asked her to keep an eye on him, since everything he did from now on would be for the family's sake. And as Marian walked away, Logan thought this apology should be enough for now. Then, somewhere in a forest, Logan and Hamar were walking together. Hamar asked where the hell they were going right after coming back from the war, but Logan said he had rested enough and it was time to get back to work. He never answered that he was just eager for the task, muttering that he was going to enjoy everything he got this time. But Logan assured Hamar that he would definitely enjoy this task. Hamar doubted it, thinking Logan had no idea what he was talking about. They stopped in a clearing, both staring into the distance, and Hamar looked shocked. Apparently, the young man wanted to open a mine. The discussion about Tesseron's lordship ended and Patrick McLain went on to say what Logan wanted as a reward. It seemed the warrior desired the chance to explore the hill near Tesseron's border. Patrick McLain commented they could call it a hill, but it was really a wasteland because there was nothing there. Then he asked the fighter why it had to be that specific place, but Logan just smiled and said there might be gold buried under that land. Apparently, the real reason Tesseron started a war by force came to light a year after the conflict ended. It turns out Tesseron had started exporting gold from a hill in McLain territory they had taken. Just the gold from that mine made Tesseron way more influential than your average Count family. That is, until Rania McLain massacred his family in revenge. In the underground prison of Tesseron's lordship, Casson said there were some peculiar people, and for that reason thought Logan should take a look. One of the prisoners claimed he did nothing wrong to be locked up, that he just fulfilled a request from the Count to bring gold from the mine as they had been hired to do. But the Viscount locked them up anyway. Logan put his hand to his face, incredulous, thinking how stupid Tesseron was, and not believing he had imprisoned 5 of those precious mining experts. Seeing this, one of the prisoners asked if he was getting mad for their sake, but what was really happening was the young man's business side kicking in, and Logan thought he found a way to make an unexpected profit. The old man looked at him and wondered what this guy's deal was. He kept thinking they had won the war against Tesserone, but that was like barely getting past a small wave. If the Empire's invasion led to the nation's collapse, the event that would be the final blow in a year was King Samuel von Randia's death. The king's sudden death would cause a fierce dispute among the three princes, leading to a 3-year civil war that would drastically weaken the kingdom's forces. And before the kingdom could recover, the Empire's invasion would seriously begin. This was the first cause that led to the kingdom's ruin. Since the McLains weren't part of any faction, staying neutral like that could end up leaving them just as spectators. But Logan saw an opportunity there and wasn't going to let it slip away. He said he would use this instability to reclaim the country's old territories and become Lord of the Southwest again and, if possible, end the Civil War and something more. But just as he was about to say what that something more was, someone interrupted him. Hamar asked Logan what he was daydreaming about since he had called the young man, and he wasn't even responding. Logan realized he hadn't noticed and needed to focus because they had barely survived a crisis. Thinking about the future, he had to gather strength as fast as possible, but for now that would sound like madness. So, no matter what, he had to do it with his own money. That hill was going to become the golden goose to fund his plans. Logan informed his servants that there was gold in the center of the hill and that he wanted to dig to make a mine and asked for the estimated cost. The servants were a bit hypnotized and Hammer thought it was another one of those crazy ideas. The old man thought Tesseron paid them well, so he agreed on the spot. But a gold mine might be too much. He asked Logan if he was sure there was gold there. Logan confirmed, saying he had seen it with his own eyes. The old man asked how that was even possible. Logan explained it was a secret operation, so only the 6 people present would handle the drilling. Hearing this, the old man thought Logan might be trying to get rid of them. The old man wondered how just 6 people could manage all the drilling, saying Logan was exaggerating. He meant that even with Doherty, it was too much, but he didn't finish the sentence and prayed that Hamar would do the job. Hamar looked the young man in the eyes and told him to better prepare to die, sleep less, and give up living like a normal person. Seeing that look, the old man thought Logan believed, as expected from Hamar. He had the mindset of a worker. The young man said that now Hamar and the old man were ready to work, and once again asked to hear the budget. The old man informed him they needed to drill to estimate the gold deposits inside the hill, but the initial investment alone would have to be 5 million gold coins. Hamar also commented that the safe development of the mine would take a long time, just the preparation would take about 6 months and full extraction would take another 6. Logan said that was just as he imagined, indicating he'd need a lot of money and time, but the mine had made the Viscount richer than other Count families, and he needed to exploit it no matter what. He argued that if he could sell the monster meat now, he'd already have enough money, but its effects would only be known in 6 months. However, Logan realized he might not have to wait. If he tackled the toxic nature of the meat, he could use it as medicine right away. He thought that since he had neutralized countless toxic agents as a mercenary, he could do it again. If he believed, he'd be rich. A week later, in the Southwest McLain village, Rick brought Logan the fake medicine made from crushed night herb, spiderweb herbs, and drip grass. Logan told Rick not to call the product fake, since it was just a neutralizing agent. Then he asked where the monster meat was, and Rick answered it was in the village warehouse, just as he had requested. Logan commented that was great and they'd put the medicine on the meat. Hearing this, Rick freaked out and asked Logan if he really had to go with him. Logan confirmed of course he would, but Rick didn't seem excited at all and warned he'd never been there, so he had no idea what they were up against. Logan got annoyed and wondered why this dude was suddenly so dramatic, but then he got it. The smell was so strong it'd make a sewer smell like roses. Logan said he knew it'd stink, but this was making him want to puke, and it looked like the guy was already throwing up. But Logan found a fix. He used his aura to block the monster meat smell. After that, he got ready to go in and told Rick they needed to start. Rick, however, was shocked to see Logan fine while he was still on the verge of puking. When he asked how he managed it, Logan said he paralyzed his sense of smell using his power. Rick called him selfish, and Logan replied that if it bothered him so much, he should wake up his power himself and do whatever he wanted. Logan handed Rick a white powder, the neutralizer, and instructed him to sprinkle it over the meat. He explained he needed to use enough so the outer layer turned white and that the remaining black part was poison, so he had to be careful. After that, he needed to finally chop it and turn it all into small balls. Once he prepared a sample, he asked Rick if it looked like medicine, and Rick confirmed it did. Logan went on to say they'd sell it as medicine and that Rick would prepare everything, so he needed to pay attention and not forget. Rick protested, saying he wouldn't do it for free. Logan said he'd pay 100 gold coins for every pill produced, which quickly changed Rick's mind. However, Logan got annoyed because he thought he could get everything for free. Then he told Rick he was going to test the product's effectiveness. Rick asked what it was for, and Logan explained it was medicine good for men. But Rick didn't get what Logan meant by that. Logan said it was super annoying and that he'd only explain it once, so he better pay attention. A picture popped up of two rabbits, a male and a female. The male looked kinda sad because he was weak and couldn't move his tiny paw inside the pot. Then, the female rabbit gave him a motivational pep talk, along with some tea. The tea turned the rabbit into a super rabbit and made his little paw 4 times bigger than before, so he could stir the pot way better. After hearing all this, Logan asked Rick if he got it, and Rick confirmed he understood the idea and had the perfect person to try it out. Logan got curious and asked who it would be, and Rick said it was Mr. Dwayne. In the next scene, Dwayne is banging on Logan's office door and hears, "Come in." He apologizes for bothering him and says he heard Logan call for him. When he walks in, Dwayne can't find Logan anywhere. Suddenly, Logan jumps out like Dracula behind the guy and scares the crap out of him. Logan says he was waiting for him, and Dwayne jumps back like a pro basketball player almost having a heart attack. He tells Logan he can't just sneak up on people like that. Logan walks up to Dwayne saying he just wants to rub his shoulders since he's been super tired lately handling stuff after the war. But Dwayne insists he's fine and that Lord McLain is having a way harder time. Logan mentions that his dad even passed out from exhaustion, but Dwayne says that only happened because Logan scared him. Logan tells Dwayne he knows he's been having a rough time. Suddenly, Dwayne starts yelling that they're broke. They spent every last penny on the war, and the servants and knights don't even know, but they keep bugging him for money, giving the administration a massive headache. He says he must have misunderstood Logan all this time, not expecting him to be so considerate with the managers, but they don't finish their sentence. Logan cuts in and asks if that's the reason for his bedroom problems. Hearing that, the poor dude freezes like a statue. He bolts for the door trying to escape, but Logan asks him to at least listen and hands him the medicine. Logan tells Dwayne it's a patented product from Philip Kale Merchantry with guaranteed results from just one pill. Of course, he immediately thinks to himself that he's never tried it before. Dwayne swallows the pill reluctantly, staring at it while Logan keeps asking what he thinks of the deal since he's giving it as a gift before offering it to anyone else. A little later, Dwayne is seen running through the castle halls toward Logan and Rick. They both turn when Rick hears Dwayne yelling at them, and Logan already knows his plan is working. Dwayne is back for more. Rick starts scolding him for running in the halls, but the guy doesn't care one bit and immediately asks Logan how much he wants for the pills. The poor dude looks like he'd kill for them. Seeing this, Logan flashes a predator's grin and says the medicine was a success. Rick, annoyed by the scene, growls that no one's paying attention to him while Logan tells Rick to give him his hand. Dwayne is panting, sweating, and kneels before Logan. It looks like he's about to propose, and Logan looks like he might accept while Rick just watches, confused. Logan hands over a wooden box full of pills to Dwayne, who takes it like it's the biggest honor in the world. Turns out, after the first successful test, the guys bowed down to him, and the experiments continued a few more times. Sometime later, in the office, Logan talks to Haeckel saying he heard rumors that he and his wife fight every night. Haeckel denies it and asks who dares spread such lies, but doesn't say anything else. The young guy tells him to shut up and shoves a pill down his throat. He was Logan's second test subject. Haeckel swallows the pill and feels the effects immediately. He turns toward the door and tries to say something, but Logan interrupts, telling him to go see his wife and that he'll handle things with his dad. Hearing this, Haeckel thanks him with a smile and, like the force of nature he is, bolts out of the room for what we can only imagine will be one hell of a night. Later, we see Patrick McLain in his office. He was the third person the young guy experimented on, and Patrick McLain also seems pretty satisfied with the results. Looking toward his dad's room, Logan thinks to himself that he feels bad for Raina Wolf. Looks like she's about to have another little brother, and he won't be the youngest anymore. Seeing all the chaos, Rick got pissed and asked Logan why he never asked him to try the pill. After all, he was the one who worked the hardest. Logan gave him a blank stare, looked down at his junk, turned his back, and walked away while Rick yelled, wondering what that weird look meant. Logan stopped still with his back turned and said he wouldn't get a chance to use the pill anyway, so it'd just be a waste. He even told him not to follow him because he stunk. At this point, you could swear Logan was enjoying torturing the poor dude. Then we see him talking to Philip through a magic orb. Philip admits that if the drug is as good as Logan says, there's going to be huge demand. He asks how much the kid plans to charge, and Logan says it'll be 100 gold coins per pill and 10,000 for a set of 10. Philip looks doubtful about the price and asks if he thinks the nobles in the capital are idiots, warning he's going to get into trouble at this rate. Logan confidently replies they're not. He explains that in his past life, the medicine was such a hit that the price skyrocketed. He insists that if Philip only supplies a small, limited amount, the product will sell for even higher prices. Philip listens carefully and agrees it makes sense. Then he pays for another 10 minutes of communication. Logan continues. Sure, they'll get amazing results if some famous person tries the product and gives a testimonial. Someone famous who actually needs the medicine. Philip doesn't know what to say. arguing no noble would admit their impotence got cured after taking a pill. Logan then comments they don't need to announce anything. So many people are watching the nobles that even if a secret rumor spreads, they'll swarm like bees to honey. Hearing this, Philip gets an idea and tells Logan to go to the party in the capital. Logan is furious and asks if Philip is serious. He points out the only party he's ever been to was with mercenaries after a war, and his family didn't even have money for parties. Philip keeps saying parties are great for networking. Even if it's for business, it'd take time, and it's not like Logan could sell the medicine just at the party. But this gives the kid an idea. Philip quickly asks if he's really thinking about doing something like that, saying his family would be shunned by high society. Logan replies that, of course, that won't happen if he doesn't sell anything. Then he tells Philip about a big informant in the capital and asks him to find the guy and get all the info he needs. Philip hesitates, asking which informant he's talking about and what he's planning this time. Logan just says he'll head to the capital soon and tell him everything when he arrives. Hearing this, Philip gets a bad feeling. A week later, Logan arrives at the capital city of the Grandia Kingdom, Gran. Philip looks at him in disbelief for actually showing up and asks how he got his family's permission. You don't see a noble's son coming to the capital to sell aphrodisiacs every day. The kid assures him he didn't tell his family the truth, though bringing around 3,000 boxes without a servant was a bit of a hassle. He thought to himself that his dad let him go easier than expected, probably because of his achievements during the war. Philip comments that, thinking about it, Logan didn't have a servant when they met either, and asks if he's sure it's okay for a noble to be like that. The kid replies that having a servant actually slows you down, not to mention the servant has their own work to do. He thinks about Rick and the big job he gave him. He goes on to say that even though he sometimes treats him harshly, both in his past life and now, Rick did everything for him and he's grateful. And there's a picture of Rick with his monologue. That's how Rick stole a bunch of pills from Logan. Annoyed, Logan warned him that if he shook him and any pills fell, Rick would get a hit for each one. That's what I call tough love. Then, Logan declared he had made a decision because he had an idea. In a flashback, Logan announced that to celebrate all their hard work, he would name the drug Impulric. The best way to honor a man's legacy is by naming a pill for impotence after him. Confirming what Logan just said, Philip had no doubts. Logan had to be crazy. Inside the bedroom, Philip told Logan he must be tired from the long trip, and it would be great if he could recover at a bar. Logan replied that he should watch his mouth when talking about someone who can't perform in a place with so many ears listening. Philip agreed, saying the atmosphere was way better for discussing those kinds of things. Then he told him he had met with the informant and asked if he was sure about paying 900 gold for the document. Logan admitted the guy was expensive, but also very skilled. He explained that as long as the request was right, they would get perfect info. Philip assured him he had made the request exactly as instructed, a document with the names of nobles married in the last 10 years who still don't have kids. Secondly, names of nobles without lovers or second wives. And third, names of nobles who often sought food for energy. Hearing this, Logan agreed everything Philip said was spot on and they'd be fine. He praised him for his excellent work, not just on this task, but on all the ones he'd asked Philip to complete in the capital. Philip said it wasn't that hard and the real crisis was the day he heard the news about the war. He told Logan he couldn't even imagine how worried he was. When he found out the war ended that night, Logan, who was staring at a piece of paper, was glad to see Philip cared about his clients. The joy, however, was short-lived because Philip soon commented that just thinking about the mountain of monster meat he'd have to deal with killed his appetite. After all, who would buy that crap? The young man threw a paper at Philip with force, telling him to shut up and read it. When the paper hit him, Philip wondered why it hurt so much. He started reading while Logan asked which name on the list looked like a good first client. A tear rolled down Philip's right eye and he seemed to notice something. Seeing this, Logan watched him, waiting for him to say something. The young man pointed with his finger at a name on the sheet and asked Logan what he thought about a certain person. Logan looked at the name he was pointing to and suddenly his expression changed to one of surprise. He recognized that name. Later, inside a ballroom with a huge chandelier, people were drinking champagne. The figure of a very large man stood out among them. Wearing a red jacket and black dress pants, he was chatting with some beautiful women. That man was Count Davis, and his name had just been shouted by Logan to get his attention. The Count looked back in disbelief, with a look of disgust or fear on his face. Logan approached to introduce himself, saying his name, Logan McLain, and his title, the eldest son of the McLain house. Count Davis tried to keep his composure and hold back laughter, greeting his new guest and welcoming him to the party. Looking at Logan's clothes, he found them tacky and wondered what farm he came from, thinking it must be the fashion in the Southwest. Logan thought he was wearing the clothes Philip had recommended, and, as expected, nobody liked them. He concluded the clothes were a good choice after all. He didn't have time for useless friends at a pointless party like this, and his only goal was Count Davis. Davis the Fallen. Despite being an important figure in the Grandia Kingdom's treasury and marrying at 20, he was a man who still had no children to this day. Logan was surprised when Philip pointed him out on the list, since in his past life he had become quite famous. Not for a good reason, but for being the Count who killed himself because of his wife. An old fight was shown between Count Davis and his wife, with her yelling and calling him an impotent bastard in the middle of a party. Because of that incident, the bomb his wife dropped at that party led him to take his own life. Logan commented that reputation and how others see you are super important, and, anyway, he met all three conditions he gave the informant. He was perfect to be Impulic's first customer. The young man approached the Count saying he came to the capital on a business trip and had heard of his prestige, so he came to pay his respects. The Count asked Logan what kind of business he could be running in the capital since the city already had everything. Then he commented that since he was from the outskirts, there must be fascinating products not available in the capital. Logan replied that he was sure the product he was selling wasn't available in the capital, and that's why he was there. He went on to say it was a specialized medicine for men. He leaned close to the Count's ear and revealed it was a stimulant. Hearing this, the Count looked surprised. He bit his lip for a moment and then shouted for everyone to hear how the son of a noble could be selling stimulants. Two girls watched the scene, finding it all super embarrassing. The Count thought a peasant like Logan had a lot of nerve acting all high and mighty in the capital and thought he had put him in his place, judging by his expression. However, the young man let out a deep sigh and prepared to say something else to the noble Logan. Then he told Davis that as a sign of courtesy, he had brought a gift for the influential people of the capital and kindly asked him to accept it. He handed the man a small box and said it was Impulic and each would sell for 100 gold coins. He continued explaining that he had brought these three, especially for the Count, as a gift and guaranteed it was a great medicine with no side effects, backing this up with his honor as a noble on the line. Davis listened to all this and started sweating. A few days later, Logan's doorbell rang. It was a servant of Count Davis sent to buy more of the medicine from Impulic. Logan and Philip greeted him, confirming he was the Count's servant. Later, he could be seen leaving with a leather briefcase, with Philip right behind, thanking him for his purchase and inviting him to come again. Philip returned to the room and counted the money for Logan. They had made 10,000 gold coins from 10 boxes, saying it wasn't bad for the first sale. Logan, however, wasn't so pleased, saying they needed to make more than that, since just the rent for that small shop cost 10,000 gold coins. Philip, on the other hand, commented that this was to be expected, since they were in the heart of the capital and Logan had no idea the struggles he went through to rent the place. He then went on to say that strategically, they needed a store because seeing people gather with your own eyes has a way bigger impact. Logan agreed with Philip and announced he was heading to a party now. Philip wasn't thrilled, complaining that he'd been to parties almost every day since arriving in Gran and sometimes even 2 parties a day. The young man explained that having Count Davis as the first client wasn't enough and he had to promote the shop to as many people on that list as possible. A week later, Count Davis's servant was walking down the street, unable to believe the Count had asked him to buy that medicine again, especially after seeing that no healthy food had worked for him in the past. When he arrived at the shop, he was surprised. A huge line of men wanting to buy the medicine stretched down the block. Watching the people in line, the servant wondered about the big crowd until he figured it out. He recognized every single one of them. One of the men was the Chamberlain of Talon's Viscount, and the guy in front of him was the butler of Count Hamel. Adjusting his hat to cover as much of his face as possible, he thought this would stir up unnecessary gossip and it'd be better to just buy the medicine and leave. As soon as he did, Philip came out of the shop to address the people in line. He told them he was sorry, but unfortunately the stock prepared for today was sold out. Hearing this, the servants waiting to buy medicine for their masters were shocked. One of the guys went to talk to Philip about it and asked what he meant by sold out, since no one had said anything before. Philip apologized again and began explaining that Impulic was super popular, but production couldn't keep up, so sales were capped at 50 boxes a day. 2 guys got super tense hearing this, begging Philip to sell them something, because if they went back empty-handed, their masters might not be so chill. While this was happening, another noble, with his servant, walked by and saw the commotion. The noble sent his own servant to find out what was going on, and Logan watched the whole thing, grinning from behind a corner of the building. He figured that by limiting supply, customers would be more hyped to buy, and the crowd would spark curiosity in other nobles. Everything was going exactly as planned. Philip shouted so everyone could hear that today's stock was sold out and insisted they come back tomorrow. The next day, he sold out again, and the same thing happened on the 3rd day, leaving the nobles wondering how many days in a row this would keep happening. The young guy kept saying it was insane, since daily sales had been booming for over a month, and today they sold out as soon as they opened. He said at this rate, 4.5 million gold in a month might not be impossible. Hearing this, Logan sarcastically asked, who knew the capital had so many powerless nobles? He said they'd tripled the price since mid-year, but people were still willing to pay more, which made him worried about the kingdom's future. After saying this, he looked at Philip with a serious face. Suddenly, a crazy smile spread across his face like someone who just found their next victim, and he burst out laughing. His voice echoed outside the shop, making people on the street turn their heads. In the end, he was just really happy. Logan grabbed Philip by the collar and started messing up his hair, saying he was an impressive brat and had done a great job. Meanwhile, Philip was starting to turn purple from lack of air. He bent down and thanked Logan for all his effort. Logan looked down at Philip and said it was cool he recognized his work, and starting next week, he'd get 1% of total sales for himself. Suddenly, Philip started yelling he'd do his best and tried to kiss Logan. All this happened while a mysterious figure watched from the street. His wrinkled face was covered by a hood and a blonde beard. Then, in a magic shop, Logan used the communication orb and shouted from the back of a room that it would be at least 10 tons of gold a year, making everyone look his way. He quickly went silent, staring at the door. He asked the person he was talking to if they were serious, and that person was Ammar, who confirmed the info. Ammar explained that according to the miners, there was a high chance the gold nuggets were in a deeper layer. The young guy stared at the communication orb like a maniac, grinding his teeth and clenching his fists. He thought that even with a rough estimate, 10 tons of gold meant 100,000 ounces of gold coins. This was his jackpot, the biggest lottery he could imagine. Ammar said mining costs weren't a joke and asked Logan if he could afford it, since starting would cost around 5 million gold. Logan assured Ammar he had everything he needed. He told Ammar to wait, saying he'd get all the money and workers fast. Ammar didn't seem too worried and just asked Logan to take it easy with the guys. Later that night in the city center, Logan walked the streets thinking the initial investment for the mine was about 5 million gold. That is, if he kept selling like he was, which would bring in about 4.5 million gold a month. Now that he thought about it, even if he sold for just 2 months, he'd still have money left over, since he had about 700 boxes of medicine left. He wanted to keep thinking about going home to get more goods and start mental development, but something caught his attention and snapped him out of his trance. The young guy looked at the shop and felt like someone was inside. In an instant, he ran to the place, thinking it might be thieves. The warrior kicked the door open violently, slamming it against the wall, and started searching everywhere. But apparently, the room was empty. Logan drew his sword, wondering if the culprits had disappeared, but he reminded himself there was only one door. They had to still be inside. Just as he thought that, a shadow zipped past him. The young man realized too late and swung his sword at the hooded figure, but missed. He shouted, demanding to know who was there. When he turned around, no one was in sight. He stood still, his sword pointing at nothing. No way, he thought. He was sure he felt someone there, and that feeling was back again. He looked up, thinking the thief might be on the roof. Without hesitation, he jumped up. Pointing at the hooded figure, he swung his sword, ready to pierce the culprit, who moved at the last second. Logan faced the figure on the roof, sword in hand, ready to strike again. Once more, the young man demanded to know the man's identity, but got no answer. Instead, the figure simply vanished without a trace. Logan was stunned by what had just happened. He kept thinking there were no signs of a presence, even though the guy had been right in front of him just moments ago. He looked at his own hand, realizing he had a piece of the man's cloak and wondered what the hell just went down. The next morning, it seems Logan told Philip what happened, and they concluded that a thief using aura had broken into their shop. Logan said he was just guessing, but that, at least, it was an advanced aura user. It was a term used to describe those even more powerful than high-ranking knights. The young man added that he not only felt the guy was a high-ranking knight, but the dude was on another level. Philip was surprised to hear someone Laura knew was committing petty theft. They said Laura was enough to turn even a slave into a noble, and he wondered why someone like that would be stealing. He asked what the men stole, and Logan replied it was exactly what Philip was thinking. They only took 2 pills of the impulse medicine. Just that. Hearing that, the young man concluded that if he only stole 2 pills, it wasn't for money. Actually, he stole the pills to use them himself. Then, Philip asked if there were powerless people among aura users. And that's when Logan got it and agreed with him. Then Logan asked if there were any aura users' names on the informant's list, but Philip said there weren't any, since the informant asked for an extra fee for that info, because it was an absolute secret and Philip declined the offer. But thinking about it, maybe there was one person who came to mind, an aura user in the capital who had no descendants. A muscular, well-dressed noble with blonde hair and a beard, walking the streets with his wife, watching some kids play. His face was kind and his clear blue eyes seemed full of longing for a child. He was surprised when his wife asked what he was looking at. He turned and told her he was just admiring the view outside, sweating. She didn't seem to buy his lame excuse. The woman asked if he was looking at the kids again. He tried to convince her he was just enjoying the scenery and not thinking about such dumb stuff. Then he hugged his wife and said they should go home. However, she ignored him a bit and replied she was very happy to have met him, asking if he knew that. The man looked at his wife with happiness in his eyes and a slight smile at the corner of his mustache. He hugged her even tighter and said he felt the same. This man was Felix, the kingdom's best swordsman. It turns out the deep sadness and regret in his heart started with an injustice he suffered when he was young. Fighting for the country, he was wounded right between his legs. It was just an honorable wound for a knight who fell in battle, and since he was young, he didn't think much of it. However, Felix reflected on what was the point of having the title of Duke and being known as the strongest in the nation, without a son to succeed him. To him, it all seemed pointless. A scene from the past shows Felix explaining the situation to his wife, who was much more understanding than he expected. So much so that he was surprised. His wife acknowledged he must have suffered a lot and asked with tears in her eyes if he was okay with it, saying she wanted to serve by his side. Seeing this, Felix wondered if there was any way to repay the immense love he had received. There was Felix walking with one of his servants along a path in the castle gardens. The servant warned that the family meeting was about to start and asked if he was sure he didn't need to hurry. Felix replied that arriving early made no sense because the only thing that would happen was they'd pressure him to have an heir. The servant, a bit hesitant, looked at the young man and carefully mentioned that a very effective medicine had recently started circulating in the capital. Hearing this, Felix sarcastically asked if that was really true. The servant went on to say that apparently it even healed physical injuries, but once again, Felix didn't pay much attention. The servant insisted, saying he knew Felix didn't believe in such things, but there were many reports of people who had great results. Hearing this, the young man lowered his head, embarrassed to admit to himself that he had already tried the medicine, and on top of that, he had stolen it. Even though his wife's tears bothered him, he couldn't believe he had stooped to theft, a disgrace to the discipline he had always maintained. Not to mention that after taking the medicine, absolutely nothing had happened. Then he told Louise, his servant, not to believe everything he heard. He started thinking that what he said was completely right, that the story about the medicine working was just a false rumor, and there was no way it could fix something that not even Aura could, and he thought he should have given up already. At the gates of the estate, Logan was talking to a guard who told him he couldn't see Felix without an appointment. The young man just asked the guard to tell Felix his name, since he was sure Felix would want to meet him as soon as he found out who was looking for him. Before this, it seemed that Logan and Philip had talked, and Philip was impressed, asking if he was really going to visit the Duke personally. Logan nodded, and Philip started mocking him, asking if he was going to chase down the strongest man in the kingdom to ask if he had stolen something or if he was powerless. Philip got upset and asked if that was Logan's plan, but he calmly just asked if the other guy was copying him. Philip said he should act like nothing happened, otherwise he'd get into trouble for no reason, saying if things went wrong, they'd be ruined. Sitting in a chair in a hallway, the young man thought Philip wasn't wrong, but if the guy from yesterday really was Felix, he couldn't let this chance slip away. A butler came out of a room, opened the beautiful wooden door, and told Logan to come in. Inside, Felix was waiting by the window. Approaching Felix, Logan thought this was his chance to build a positive connection with one of the strongest people in the kingdom. The young man greeted the Duke elegantly, saying his name and that he was the eldest son of the McLain house. He looked at Felix and noticed something. Although he was around 70 years old, he looked much younger. Logan thought he must be suppressing his aging using his powerful aura. The Duke confirmed that the McLain house was in the southwest region and asked why Logan had come from so far away. The young man thought he didn't need to reveal the reason right away and said he had recently opened a business in the capital, so he brought some products as a gift. Logan slid a small box across the table toward the Duke, explaining it was an excellent medicine for men with proven effectiveness among countless nobles. The Duke examined the box, asking if it was true without giving any hint that he already knew something. Logan kept his head down, finding it all very confusing, unsure if Felix really was the thief from yesterday. He decided to take it to the next level. He continued, saying a superhuman like Felix wouldn't need such things, so he brought something more special, which made Felix show a slight reaction. Logan was happy since the reason for his initial lack of interest was that he hadn't noticed any effect after using Impulric. It turns out that in the current Impulric, the poison in monster meat is neutralized for consumption as an aphrodisiac, but that trivial poison has no effect on the body of a superhuman like Felix, so he concentrated that poison again and again, creating a potent concentrate. Logan told Felix it was a limited edition of Impulric, and that seemed to spark the guy's interest. He figured that, despite calling it a limited edition, it was really just 50 concentrated Impulric pills packed into one. Guaranteed effect, since the unbearable pain alone could kill a normal human. But if an aura user took it, that was a whole different story. Logan told Felix that if the pill satisfied him, he'd be happy to hear from him and would prepare another batch of pills in whatever quantity Felix wanted, promising, of course, total discretion. The next day, Felix was glowing, a clear sign the pill worked. Then he told Logan he'd owe him any favor within his power. Logan nearly exploded with happiness inside but managed to keep a straight face and said he didn't understand what the Duke meant. Then he explained that an aura user is a master who controls body and life energy, so Felix could be sure the treatment was legit. The medicine worked perfectly, not just the first time, but after about 30 uses. The effects stacked until he fully recovered. That ache and pain in his chest were finally fading away. Felix looked at Logan and said he couldn't believe he was thoughtful enough to bring a gift without even mentioning his mistake. He also commented that his sword skills that day were insane for someone his age. So, he was exactly the kind of guy you'd expect to have such a miracle medicine. Poor Felix. He'd been on such a bad streak for so long he lost his mind. He told Logan maybe he'd spoken too soon and revealed he saw a chance to cure a chronic illness thanks to Logan's gift, so he wanted to return the favor. Then he asked again what he wanted. Logan looked down with a cold expression and said in that case, he wanted a useless book on sword handling. Felix searched the library and got a book for the kid, warning that training alone by following what was in it would damage his body, but it was worth reading. After that, Logan thanked Felix and asked one more favor, to write a letter as proof he'd taken the book. Felix said that wouldn't be a problem. Logan thought he now had what he needed and commented it was a shame he was only carrying a swordsmanship book just when the Duke was willing to give him anything, but his real goal was something else. As soon as Logan finished that thought, Felix said he'd been thinking and the situation didn't seem right. The kid asked what he meant by that, and Felix said he'd personally teach him a sword technique, leaving the kid speechless. The best swordsman in the kingdom offered to teach him. Felix went on to say he understood Logan's wish to be humble, but just giving him a basic swordsmanship book wouldn't calm him down. Logan thought that, even though he had the secrets of the divine sword, he didn't need to refuse when the strongest man in the kingdom offered him something like that, so he thanked Felix for the chance, thinking he hit the jackpot again. At the training ground, Felix and the kid faced off. Felix said evaluating the talent of outstanding youths was one of the pleasures of an older man, so he told Logan to focus because it wouldn't be easy with him. Logan got ready, stabilizing his stance. Felix told the kid to draw his sword, but he was frozen, overwhelmed by the master's aura. A massive force crushed him, stopping him from even touching his weapon. This was the power of a true aura user. The kid wondered if everyone could do this, imagining if this ability to paralyze the body was common among them. If so, all battles would come down to aura duels. He concluded this wasn't just brute strength, but a special technique. He finally managed to slightly draw his sword. Logan thought he needed to use his strength to sharpen his senses. Not his body, and then analyze that energy. Every time he tried to move, the Duke's force spread from the starting point. The kid thought he didn't get how this was possible, but he knew how to handle it. He realized that when Felix was about to disperse his force, he had to move half a step faster. That's what Logan thought as he took a fighting stance with his sword fully drawn. Felix looked at him and said he had talent. Logan was sweating, barely able to stand, while Felix told him to pay attention. Felix seemed to be focusing his aura at the tip of his blade, preparing an attack. As the young guy tried to resist the overwhelming presence, fear paralyzed him. Looking up, he realized what he was up against. Felix's sword of power. He stared ahead, knowing the attack was coming. But he seemed to have a serious problem. Felix's aura was way too strong for him. He thought the Duke's strength was invading his body, messing with his senses, and the energy from that red sword was getting even more intense. He looked around desperately, wondering if there was anything he could do. Suddenly, he realized something. His own strength was neutralizing the Duke's. Looking inward, he felt he couldn't dodge the attack, but maybe there was another way. The warrior summoned the power inside his body, shaping it into a protective circle around him. Seeing this, Felix was stunned, wondering if he was really going to use force against his attack. Right after, the fighter took an aggressive stance, his sword behind his back, charged with energy, ready to take down Logan. He stepped forward and leapt at the young guy with a killer glare. Logan, in a defensive stance, with his sword in front of him wrapped in his protective aura, felt a chill of fear. Just like expected, Felix's strike hit him full on and sent him flying backward. Logan crashed into the wall, and even his sword looked like it took some damage. Felix, on the other hand, didn't even seem ruffled. He was calm, staring at the fighter with cold eyes. Using his sword for support, Logan tried to get up, but he was still shaking. His sword was in pieces, and all he could think about was what had just happened. Felix turned to him and asked if he really thought he'd teach him something he couldn't figure out on his own. Then he revealed he had seen everything and pointed out that, without even realizing it, the young guy got serious in the end. With a proud look, Felix praised Logan, amazed at how he faced the attack head-on, thinking some people are just born to stand out. When the young guy passed out, Felix said it'd be fun to see him get even stronger. A little later, Felix's butler asked Logan if he was leaving already. He went on to say the Duke had invited him to stay until he fully recovered. Logan replied it was fine and that, thanks to the potion the Duke gave him, he was completely fine. Hearing that, the butler told Logan he'd escort him to the door. Outside, the butler wished him a safe trip, and Logan thanked him. After that, the young guy quickly walked away, disappearing from the butler's sight, who wondered where Logan had vanished to so fast. Logan turned a corner, still limping from the pain of Felix's attack. It hurt like hell, but he wasn't about to waste a potion like that on a dumb wound. He couldn't believe the Duke had given him a top-tier potion, practically impossible to find, like it was nothing. The young guy went on saying his power had evolved precisely to heal his internal wounds on its own, but the ones caused by the Duke would be tough to handle. In the end, he looked at the potion and said that, either way, he gained more than he lost. Then, the warrior pulled out a note from Felix with the mansion's communication channel coordinates. It said if Logan had any problems, he just had to get in touch. Logan was happy thinking who knew Felix would look at him so favorably. To him, Felix practically treated him like a disciple, and this relationship would definitely come in handy down the road. As soon as he had that thought, Philip appeared from behind, totally catching Logan off guard. He turned his head, asking what Philip was doing there, and Philip said he'd been waiting at a distance for him to show up. As soon as he appeared, Philip asked why he looked so pale, worried. He practically shouted at Logan, wanting to know if by any chance he'd done or said something rude to piss off the Duke. The young guy answered it was the exact opposite. He had only had a quick fencing lesson with a noble. Suddenly, he coughed and blood came out of his mouth, scaring Philip a lot. Seeing that, he said he would prepare everything for them to escape, and that he would get the fastest horses. Logan tried to explain that he was misunderstanding everything, but Philip kept mumbling without listening. A week later, at Logan and Philip's shop, a sign on the door said Impul Rick was sold out, asking customers to come back later. Inside, Logan appeared with a victorious look, announcing that the total profit from Impul Rick's sales had reached the impressive figure of 1 million gold pieces. Impressed, Philip replied that if sales kept up at this pace, surpassing 500,000 gold pieces in a month wouldn't be hard either. They exchanged confident looks and let out a cheer that echoed outside the shop, but the celebration was short-lived, since Logan, always serious, asked Philip if he was so happy that he didn't need a bonus this month. Philip, snapping back to reality, begged him not to ruin his daydreams. Then, the young man mentioned he had made sure the monster meat he bought at the market was handled smoothly, and Logan congratulated him on a job well done. Then, Philip suggested Logan think about buying a house in the capital to offset lodging costs, but he dismissed the idea, explaining they'd only be in the capital for another year and a half, so it didn't make sense to commit that much. He advised Philip to focus on Impul Rick for now, adding that eventually they'd have to move. When Philip asked what he meant, Logan just replied it was something he didn't need to worry about. Finally, Philip asked Logan to take care of his health, since he was shocked to see him coughing up blood, to which Logan responded that's why he had locked himself in his room for a whole week. Hearing this, Philip asked if Logan was really focusing on his recovery, since every time he entered the room he saw Logan at his desk doing something, but once again Logan interrupted him, saying it was none of his business. Philip complained that he kept too many secrets, but Logan was glad that even while grumbling, the young man didn't insist on the topic. If Rick were here, he'd definitely be investigating to find out everything. Philip then asked if he was already going home and Logan confirmed, asking him to find a way to calm the customers until he sent more Impul Rick. And besides that, Logan still had one more thing to tell Philip. He instructed him to send food rations worth 100,000 gold pieces per month to the Tesheron and McLain estates. Hearing this, Philip was stunned and asked if he intended to feed the entire region with that much food. The young man replied that there was already enough whispering and that they needed to do this for a whole year, so Philip should start looking for a supplier. Philip realized Logan was serious and commented that he never imagined he valued his people so much, but that didn't seem to be the case. As he prepared to leave, he thought Logan didn't value his people, but that was exactly what he needed to do. It would take at least a year to solve the food shortage in McLain. The young man said the people's work was a big part of his plan, so he couldn't let them starve. Logan got ready to leave and casually told Philip he had work to do, so he was off. However, Philip didn't bother asking for details, knowing it was just another one of his secrets. Elsewhere, a group of poor people huddled on the cold floor of what looked like a warehouse, using any scrap of cloth they could find to keep warm. A guy bleeding from his face looked sadly at the ground. Meanwhile, Logan was in a magic shop handing a paper to a sorcerer. The mage, glancing at the paper, asked if the young man really intended to find the people on the list. He hesitated, explaining that with just names and some features, the task would require searching all over the continent. The warrior, unfazed, asked the sorcerer if he could do the job or not, adding that he would compensate him generously. The sorcerer, sounding unsure, he looked at the paper once more and, after a pause, reluctantly agreed. As he left, Logan thought that, as expected, it would probably be hard to find them. After all, even the names he had could be fake. Still, the young guy knew he had no other choice. He needed to gather all the independent superhumans no matter the cost, those who reached that level in their past lives but never joined any organization. Each of them would be a crucial ally in the upcoming war against the Empire, especially a certain mercenary who once fought for the Empire. While walking, Logan suddenly stops, exhales sharply, and realizes he's been rushing things way too much. With everything going well in the capital, he was moving too fast. The young man looks up at the sky and remembers he's got plenty of time. He can afford to take it slow. However, this belief that he has plenty of time might not be true. In a dark room that looks like a dungeon, a man tries to calm down a furious old boss. The old man is possessed, complaining that someone is mistreating his disciples and wanting to know if the man has other henchmen, mentioning some tower master. The man explains he's only there to deliver information, but the old man doesn't care. His rage remains uncontrollable. Then the old man asks why his disciple was called this time. The man replies that the young guy was sent to the far southwest field, to the Makal region, for a 6-month business trip. Hearing this, the old man places a heavy hand on the man's shoulder and declares he won't let the magic tower master get away with it. This time, he insists, the matter must be settled once and for all. Next, we're shown the grand location of the Earth Magic Tower in the Grandia Kingdom. Inside, a man approaches a desk where another man is deeply asleep. He greets him, and the sleepy assistant blinks, looking up to see who it is. As soon as he recognizes the visitor, he cheerfully stands and offers a welcome. Curious about the young man in front of him, the employee wonders what his deal is. At first, he thought he was a noble, but seeing him now in cheap clothes, he starts doubting it. The man in question is Logan, who came to the tower to investigate magic scrolls. The assistant figures there's no way he's there to meet a high-ranking mage, hoping Logan will just buy some basic scrolls. With a smile, the assistant listens as the young man requests 150 destruction magic scrolls, which surprises him. Still, his expression stays cold. Then the young man presents his Cooper bank account certificate and asks the assistant to take a look. Starting to count the money, the man can't believe what he sees. The total amounts to the incredible sum of 4 million gold, leaving him completely stunned. He looks down, visibly shocked, but finally stammers and offers to personally escort him upstairs. Logan listens calmly. Destruction magic, a fourth circle area of effect spell, has the potential to bring down stone walls. However, due to its downsides like slow activation time and obvious usage signals, it was rarely used in combat. Despite this, the young man sees potential in the build, believing it could speed up development a lot. The fighter now talks with an older man who asks if he really wants to buy 150 scrolls. Logan says yes. The guy named Radius Great is the Earth Magic Tower Master and doesn't hide that he's a bit nervous, since it's been a long time since they had such a generous customer. Logan recalls how, minutes earlier, the Master had come running upon hearing he wanted to buy 155 scrolls, a pretty weird reaction for someone of his level. It turns out Radius has been the Tower Master for 5 generations, but only has 1,500,000 gold, showing the Tower's dire financial situation. Logan thinks this vulnerability of the Master works in his favor, so he tells Radius that his own house, McLain, is nothing but a bunch of insignificant thieves from the southwest and understands if the Master has never heard of them. Hearing this, the Master apologizes to Logan, acknowledging his young apprentice made a mistake and assures him he'll give a severe reprimand. However, Logan brushes off the apology, saying it's not necessary. The Master then responds, saying he's very generous. All this time, the guy at the counter thinks he's lost. The Master, however, looks pretty pissed off, since he almost lost an easy target like Logan. Despite the young guy's insistence, the Master thought quietly. In these peaceful times, earth magic was more useful for farming or construction, so he wondered what noble would spend so much on expensive scrolls for something so trivial. Frustrated, he thought about the idiots gossiping that the magic tower had weakened since he became its master. Plus, it seemed like he'd blown through the tower's budget way faster than he should have. Looking at the situation, he figured he was lucky. Logan seemed like an easy mark. He decided he had to handle the kid carefully and try to squeeze a big pile of cash out of him. With that in mind, the Master tells Logan that honestly, there might be a problem fulfilling his request. The Master asks Logan to cut down the number of scrolls. Logan thinks about the offer, figuring it could be a solid deal. The Master explains that creating a fourth circle scroll requires the leadership of at least one fifth circle mage, and unfortunately, the tower currently lacks experienced people. But the warrior doesn't even flinch at the explanation. He just stares at the Master and asks straight up what he plans to do about it. The Master meets his gaze, surprised. This wasn't the answer he expected, but he decides to keep explaining that the cost per scroll is super high. Hearing this, the young guy calmly stands up and says it's a shame nothing can be done. Logan heads for the door, telling the Master his plan was to buy 150 scrolls every month, but if the tower can't produce that much, he'll take his business to the royal family's magic tower. Hearing this, the Master gets nervous and jumps in front of the young guy, blocking his way. Desperate, he asks if he really plans to buy 150 scrolls every month. The young guy confirms, adding that over the next 6 months, he'll need a total of 900 scrolls. The Master looks like he's hit the jackpot, staring at Logan like he's seen an angel. Then the young guy comments that if producing 150 scrolls at once is too much for them, fulfilling a 6-month order would be an even bigger challenge. Just as Logan is about to leave, the Master makes a dramatic move, throwing himself on the floor and grabbing his boot. He screams desperately that they'll handle the order. The young guy asks if he really thinks that's possible, to which he replies it's totally doable while wiping Logan's shoes with his robe. The master goes on to say that each scroll costs 10,000 gold pieces, so 150 scrolls would add up to 1,500,000 gold. The master's eyes gleam with greed as he quickly realizes that with Logan's planned purchases, he could make over 9 million gold pieces in the next 6 months. After finishing his pitch, he stands up and offers Logan an alternative. He suggests hiring a mage might be a better option. Confused, the young guy asks which mage the master means. He thinks a mediocre mage is usually preferred to avoid dirty work, so he wonders why the master would suggest lending him a mage, which would be even more expensive. He figures with a fourth circle mage, he could get the effect of 300 scrolls a month and asks the master if they have a fourth circle mage willing to work on a construction site. The master replies, clarifying there might have been a misunderstanding. He explains that not even he has the authority to order a fourth circle mage around at will. Instead, the master offers to send 2 to 9 N circle mages and 1 to 3 RD circle mages. He explains these mages are disciples with tons of teamwork experience. In exchange, the master asks Logan to reduce the number of scrolls. Logan thinks over the offer, considering it might be a good deal. The master asks Logan to cut down the number of scrolls. Logan thinks over the offer, figuring it might be a good deal. Sending a team of mages might be more advantageous. However, the young guy hesitates to hire mages specialized in construction, wondering what kind of people they'd be. Suddenly, a group of exhausted, ragged men appears before him, led by the mage Gree. The guys look like they just came back from war, and he's shocked by their condition. The warrior struggles to find the right words. That's when the master cuts in, telling the group they can head back to their rooms. The men take off running, clearly scared, leaving Logan a bit lost. Annoyed, he turns to the master and comments that they look like they're about to collapse. The master agrees, but assures him these are the youngest, most experienced builders in the magic tower, experts in the field. The young guy thinks about it and figures that despite their looks, the mages seem pretty capable. With the master of the 3 arts circle and several experts among them, all in their 20s, they represent promising talent. Despite the success, Logan still suspects something. He doesn't trust that the master will actually send his disciples out to the field, so he calls him out, saying swapping second circle mages for scrolls doesn't seem like a fair deal. The master replies, assuring Logan that the team of 10 mages will be enough. Hearing that, the young guy flashes that killer smile again. Still smiling, he starts negotiating with the master. He proposes that the 120 magic scrolls and the dispatch of the 10 mages go for the price of 1,200,000 gold per month. The master tries to stay calm but is visibly shocked by what he just heard. The young guy thinks it's almost a robbery, considering the talent of those mages and that he himself wouldn't send out ordinary mages for that price, yet he's still surprised to see the master accept it. The master then pulls out a contract and insists the young guy sign it immediately. Logan looks at the paper wondering how anyone could agree to those terms, and in the rush, the ink isn't even dry yet. Logan feels like something's off. Suddenly, the big boss of Clayton bursts through the door behind him with 2 disciples trying to hold him back. The elder boss tells the master he heard everything he's been doing with the disciples and that they're going to have a little chat right there. The elder, a 5th circle mage, is furious and confronts the master, wanting to know if he's going to send his disciple on another mission. The master replies that everything he does is for the good of the tower. The elder then questions why only his disciples seem to be assigned the hardest tasks, pointing out that the master isn't sending just anyone, but the young ones who just came back from other missions. The master responds that the young are capable of enduring hardships. The elder accuses him of mistreating the disciples ever since Clayton became elder last year. The master, however, dismisses the complaint, saying Clayton has lost his mind. While Logan watches the scene, he starts to understand the dynamics. Clayton, having reached the 5th circle so young, seems to be a threat to the tower master, who vents his frustrations on the younger disciples. Despite the tension, Logan stays calm, pleased that the internal conflict is playing in his favor. The tower master then turns to Clayton and coldly declares that if he's not willing to follow orders, he doesn't care about his fate. He tells Clayton and his disciples that if they want, they can leave right now, and the elder asks if he's serious. Hearing the ultimatum, Clayton starts channeling his magical powers, clearly ready to fight. Even with the impending conflict, the master stays unmoved and asks Clayton if he really wants to go through with it while already charging his magic. The ground around the two begins to tremble. One of the disciples notices the danger and says they need to stop those two. Clayton then yells at the tower master, telling him to get ready. The master just watches Clayton get into a fighting stance when, out of nowhere, Logan slams the table hard. Everyone's attention snaps to the young guy who looks totally unfazed by the chaos. The two are speechless at what Logan just did, and the young disciples are also stunned by what just happened. The young guy shows the other man the paper he just sealed. It was the contract he was about to sign with the tower master, now finalized. Then he just told the 10 people waiting in the room to follow him. He also addressed Clayton and the Tower Master. He told them to handle it and warned that the contract would remain valid even if the Magic Tower Master changed, so there wouldn't be any problem with the deal. The Tower Master admitted how pathetic they both looked in front of the guest and told Logan he'd send the scrolls as soon as they were ready. But Clayton interrupted him, saying he wasn't done talking yet. The Master asked if he was trying to force the official Earth Magic Tower contract right then and scolded him to know his place. Clayton replied, saying if that was the case, then his decision was final. He would also follow his disciples. Logan and the Tower Master were stunned by Clayton's attitude. The Master then exclaimed he must be crazy. An old man following his disciples to a construction site was unheard of, and Logan shouted he never hired a fifth circle mage. Clayton answered he didn't want separate pay. He just planned to cooperate to help his disciples and finish the job faster. Hearing this, Logan bowed to the old man and promised to serve him loyally. Clayton only asked Logan to delay his disciples' departure by 1 day so they could recover before leaving again. Logan accepted the request and told the Master to meet him tomorrow at noon at the West Gate. The next day, a carriage was seen leaving through the Tower Gate. Logan was outside, leaning against the wall with a backpack on his shoulder, waiting for Clayton and the others. While waiting, he thought about how yesterday's contract turned into an unexpected win. Hiring a fifth circle mage through a standard contract would cost at least 1 million gold pieces, and he got way more for way less. The young man thought about how he wanted to get back to his territory as soon as possible. He needed to send more impulry to the capital and handle other business, but his thoughts were interrupted when someone shouted his name. Someone was calling him. It turned out to be Rania Wolf, who admitted it had been a long time since they last saw each other. Logan casually greeted her by name, and Rania Wolf interrupted, saying they weren't close enough for that kind of familiarity. Finding the situation a bit awkward, the young man caught the hint and immediately corrected himself, treating her more formally as the Wolf Princess, acknowledging it really had been a long time since they last met. He even added she was as rude as ever. Rania Wolf looked down from her luxurious carriage, hiding half her face behind a fan. She said there were rumors circulating in the capital and heard Logan was getting involved in some pretty shady stuff. Then she asked about the McKinful family. Deep down, what she really wanted to know was if his family had finally gone bankrupt. Logan, staying calm, replied with utmost courtesy that as Rania Wolf, she should know. He was super ambitious about making money and that his family's situation was none of her business. Once again, Rania Wolf threw shade at Logan and said she knew the amount he gave her when they broke the engagement wasn't small, but it was probably normal for a thief like him. She swore she'd slap him just for fun. Eager to get rid of Rania Wolf as soon as possible, the young man agreed with the comment and tried to head the other way, throwing a diss back at her, saying she was so dirty he'd rather avoid her. But just as he was about to leave, Rania Wolf stopped him, mentioning she'd heard about his feats in the feudal war when he used a special weapon. Rania Wolf then asked what he'd think about selling it to her. Trying to be polite but wanting to escape the convo, Logan downplayed the weapon's importance, saying it wasn't a big deal, and though he was embarrassed, he'd have to decline the offer. The young man basically ran away from Rania Wolf's carriage, which seemed like the best move he could make. She watched him leave with disgust from the window. She thought about how even after getting famous in the capital selling impure medicine, no noble had shown any interest in the feudal war out in the field, not even Queen Wolf. Even better, the wolves were way too caught up in this. He thought the crossbow design he'd built was super simple, so he only planned to use it a few more times before the plans fell into the wrong hands and everyone started making them. Just then, a voice cut into Logan's thoughts. It was Clayton with his disciples, saying he'd hoped to find him at the West Gate and asked what he was doing coming over here. The young guy started pushing Clayton and the others toward the direction he wanted to go and told them he'd run into someone annoying earlier. Suddenly, 3 carriages sped through the forest. Logan, of course, was with Clayton in one of them, along with one of his disciples. Clayton sounded like a grumpy parrot. He turned his head to look at Logan and commented that the carriage was spacious, that 5 or 6 people could fit easily, and the coachman looked super experienced. Then he concluded that Logan had spent a ton of cash to make them feel comfy. Then Clayton's mood soured, saying he didn't need to bother with all that pomp and that it was a total waste of money. Meanwhile, the disciple tried to calm him down but failed. Hearing this, Logan looked at Khan and thought it wouldn't be the first time a mage showed off way too much pride, so he told Clayton he was honored to serve such powerful mages, claiming everything he did was just the bare minimum. After all, he thought, he'd hired a 5th circle mage for free, so flattering him wasn't a big deal at all. However, Clayton didn't answer. Instead, he stared out the window, keeping his grumpy vibe. After night fell, Logan and the others seemed to have set up camp. The young guy said it was too late to travel, so they'd rest there and continue their journey tomorrow. After that, Logan lit a fire and started meditating when suddenly a man appeared with a knife ready to attack. He threw the knife at Logan, who sensed the danger and ducked to dodge it. Then, without breaking his meditation, he asked who was there. One of the men stepped out of the shadows and praised his dodge. Logan stood up, and the man went on to say he heard all the rumors about him in the capital and asked Logan if he was the one who made a fortune selling some weird drug. Logan was surrounded by 5 guys and wondered if they were thieves. He snorted, annoyed, and said he just wanted to practice what he learned meditating, but this was the perfect chance. Since they interrupted him, he grabbed his sword and warned the bandits they'd have to be his training partners. One of the bandits laughed and mocked the young guy. Logan, stone-faced, stayed silent and without hesitation quickly slit the bandit's throat, silencing his laughter instantly. 2 others looked at their fallen buddy, confused about how he moved so fast, and called him a bastard. One of them jumped to attack him. Seeing this, the young guy took an aggressive stance. The moment the bandit came close, ready to stab him with a knife, the fighter dodged and sliced his belly in one swift move, sending him flying through the air. Seeing this, the other bandits lost their cool, impressed by the young guy's strength. The guy fell backward, hitting a tree and seemed knocked out. 2 men were already down, leaving only 3 left. One of the bandits realized there was no way to beat Logan and yelled for the others to run, but that's when he got hit. He couldn't move his legs. At that moment, the young guy started charging his aura, and the way he held his sword looked familiar. He was copying Felix's moves. Logan managed to put enough mana into his sword to replicate the attack Felix had taught him. The aura blade was ready. Logan planted his foot on the ground and slashed the air with insane force. He hit 2 of his opponents dead on, knocking them down instantly. Suddenly, something weird happened. He lost the aura he managed to summon, leaving him a bit confused. The young guy thought this skill must be hard to keep up for long while staring at the last bandit who'd fallen to the ground terrified. Logan smiled. He had managed to use the move at the highest level thanks to Felix. While he was distracted, the last bandit crawled to a safe spot, trying to escape the danger. Then, the young man thought that focusing and compressing strength through the new authority gave rise to the pressure blade. That day, along with the pressure blade he learned from the Duke, he also showed the force blade, which was a weaker level attack. However, he thought it was impossible to imitate that at his current level. His cheeks flushed, and he said he couldn't believe he had managed to use the force blade, even if just for a brief moment. Then he noticed the last bandit trying to escape and turned his head in that direction. Logan looked at him while the man cried, wondering what kind of mess he had gotten into. The young man prepared to attack again, which seemed to terrify the poor guy. Walking toward him, he explained to himself that using the force emanating from the sword to dominate the enemy creates the skill known as the pressure blade. And just as he was about to stab the last bandit, Logan flashed that predatory smile again. He said this skill should be enough to use in a fight. Then he looked at the bodies around and wondered if he had gone a bit too far. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him, catching Logan completely off guard, saying they had witnessed everything. The speaker was Clayton, and he looked furious. Logan looked at Clayton, a bit confused about why he was angry, and wondered if Clayton thought he had crossed the line even though the guys were thieves. If Clayton decided not to work with him anymore, Logan would be in trouble. But that wasn't what happened. Clayton looked at the young man and, to his surprise, praised his skills, saying he was incredible. Logan was stunned, speechless for a moment. As grumpy as always, Clayton added that although he didn't understand much about Force users, what he had just witnessed wasn't normal for someone Logan's age. The young man thanked him for the compliment, admitting he was being too generous, and realized Clayton wasn't really angry, just had a stern face. Clayton and Logan walked together through the forest, and an awkward silence filled the air. Logan glanced sideways, thinking about how he had intentionally moved away from the camp to avoid exposing his powers. He wondered if Clayton had come all the way here just to find him. Breaking the silence, Clayton commented that his disciples were struggling because they didn't have the best teacher, so he was trying to teach them as much as he could. The young man replied, assuring him he was already doing a good job, and asked why Clayton felt the need to share this with him. Upon hearing this, Clayton stopped dead, turned his head toward Logan, and warned that even after coming into the young man's territory, he wanted his disciples to take breaks and have the chance to train with him. Then, Clayton told Logan he would work as hard as needed to make sure they had this opportunity, and asked if they could reach an agreement, to which Logan immediately agreed. The young man looked down and noticed something strange. He looked behind Clayton and saw mana flowing from the ground, wondering where it was going. It turned out the mana was flowing toward the tent where the mages slept. Once again, Clayton was looking at Logan, asking if they had a deal. While Logan kept wondering why he would go to such lengths to share his mana with his disciples, Logan recognized that Clayton cared a lot about them. The master then replied that as a teacher, he had to do the bare minimum. Logan wondered if fighting the Tower Master for them wasn't more than the bare minimum, but Clayton answered that the Tower Master was the one provoking the fight. The next day, the McLain estate flags waved proudly in the wind. In his father's office, Logan was talking to Patrick McLain, who seemed to have heard about his son's travels and asked if he had gained a lot of experience during his time in the capital. Logan replied, informing his father that everything he learned was very helpful. Patrick McLain said that in that case, it was fine and asked if his son had anything else to report. Hearing this, Logan thought he might have approached the topic in a better way. He casually mentioned to Patrick McLain that his business in the capital was booming. This left Patrick McLain speechless. Rising from his desk, Patrick McLain asked Logan what business he was talking about. Logan explained that he had been selling the medicine he was given earlier. Patrick McLain looked like he was about to faint and asked if he really went all the way to the capital to sell a stimulant. Putting a hand on his forehead, the father reminded the young man that, despite his promise not to interfere, this was still a huge surprise. Then, Patrick McLain asked him to be more careful with the family's reputation next time. Logan quickly promised his father he would, feeling relieved that Patrick McLain handled the situation better than expected. Patrick McLain, however, raising an eyebrow, asked if Logan had answered without thinking much. Once again, the young man gave the same affirmative answer. Then he told his father that he had also made friends with Felix. Hearing this, Patrick McLain was stunned and immediately asked if he meant Felix. Patrick McLain, furious, then asked if he had also sold the medicine to Felix. With a smile, the young man replied that he had done exactly that. Enraged, the father shouted, demanding to know how far he planned to drag the family's reputation through the mud. Unfazed, Logan calmly pulled out a book Felix had given him and said that in exchange he had received a valuable intermediate-level sword technique. Patrick McLain, now calmer, took the book from the young man's hands and read the title aloud, The Iron Blood Sword. He commented that it was a genuine intermediate sword technique guaranteed by Felix himself. However, the young man knew this wasn't entirely true, since he was the one who wrote that comment. Logan then reflected on how the Imperial merchant had unearthed the Iron Blood Sword from ancient ruins. It was considered one of the best intermediate sword techniques of the time. Initially, the merchant had copied and sold the book only to a select few, but eventually it leaked. Copies of the entire technique started circulating in the market. Over time, it became so common that even ordinary people managed to learn it, but he thinks that will only happen in about 10 years. So having the family knights learn this skill now will be a huge help. Logan continued thinking that if they also added the sword's QI and divine sword secrets, his father Ronian could use it as a trump card. That said, the Iron Blood sword technique pushed strength to the extreme. To prevent it from causing internal damage, Patrick McLain would never allow something like that to happen, but adding Felix's name to the book would surely make him accept it. The young man read the book's content and commented that this was on a whole different level from the records the family had passed down. While his hands trembled over the book, he thought that actually acquiring intermediate sword skills was tough and figured this was why he'd been stuck at one level for 10 years. Patrick McLain then explained to Logan that properly mastering this technique would increase the cavalry order's total strength by at least 30% and wondered how they could ever repay the Duke's kindness. Hearing this, Logan thought it was cool that he thought that way, since he had a proposal for his father. He should also master the technique to show it to Felix. Suddenly, Patrick McLain rushed out of the room, interrupting him. He threw a seal to Logan and said mastering the technique was now his top priority, leaving the young man in charge of everything until he succeeded. That was when Logan realized how serious this was. Patrick McLain had just thrown him the family shield, a symbol of his temporary authority. Patrick McLain stormed through the door yelling for help with the family responsibilities. He promised to return as soon as he mastered the technique perfectly. He thanked him hurriedly and disappeared, not giving the young man time to discuss the matters he wanted. There he was standing in his father's office, holding the family shield completely lost. Logan looked at the seal, not knowing where to start, realizing that having it meant he could now act freely. Dwayne burst into the room. The idea had barely sunk in, and he was already barging in, yelling that he heard about all of Logan's exploits in the capital. Now determined, the young guy silently swore he'd get everything he wanted before Patrick McLain came back. Dene soon started suspiciously begging for money. He asked if the other guy hadn't already gotten funds from the battle with Tesseron. D yelled in frustration, explaining that those funds were nowhere near enough to maintain both fortresses. The battle had caused a huge labor shortage, and production was going to drop hard this year. To make things worse, the Kiros had cut off all aid. Desperate, Den dropped to his knees and begged Logan for money, saying he heard about the fortune Logan made in the capital. But Logan just smiled and said sorry, he'd already spent all the money. Hearing that, Day couldn't believe it, and asked where the hell he'd managed to blow all that cash so fast. Logan just looked at him, grinning, without saying a word. Dwayne looked up and told the kid to stop messing around, but the kid kept his cool, staring him down. Seeing that, Dwayne started sweating. Then he asked if the warrior was serious, and Logan nodded. Dwayne bowed again, desperate, asking where he'd spent so much money. The fighter said he dropped 1,200,000 gold on scrolls and magical images, and also bought building materials and food. In other words, nothing was left. Din looked at Logan, repeating what he'd said, and mentioned that buying a little food and handing it out wouldn't make a difference. But then Logan dropped the bomb that he'd spent 1 million gold just on food. Dwayne wasn't sure he heard right and asked Logan to repeat it, and he did, saying he'd be distributing food worth 1 million gold every month for a year to the people. Hearing this, Dwayne started yelling, asking if the kid had eaten something that made him go crazy. Logan thought this was a normal reaction. After all, him becoming a war hero wasn't going to change Day's opinion of him. Then Logan told Dwayne he was completely sane and asked if the food he bought was enough. D&E confirmed it was and asked what he planned to do with the building materials and scrolls, and if he was going to start some construction. The kids said they were going to build a dam. 2 weeks later, a notice started circulating around the city with the following message. The feudal lords summoned everyone for mandatory labor, for those at McLain Fortress and the West City Gate, and for those at Storm Fortress and the East Gate. Seeing the situation, a man from Tezeron Fortress declared they'd finally hit their limit, that the nobles were exploiting them without mercy. A guy from McLean Fortress added that forcing them to work during peak harvest was insane. Another voice joined in, lamenting that they barely survived the battle only to see the feudal lord trying to crush them. Now furious, they questioned if the message left them any choice: die running, wither away working, or just starve. In the end, they realized all roads led to the same dead end. Determined, they grabbed pitchforks and any tools they could find, ready to face the feudal lord in a rebellion. The whole crowd gathered in front of the McLain estate, and Logan asked if everyone was present. A young guy turned to an older man and asked if they were really going through with this. The older man firmly replied that the lords were treating them like dogs while they barely survived eating grass. He looked at the crowd and declared this time it was worth fighting. A drop of sweat slid down the young guy's forehead as he agreed, saying he'd rather take the chance to fight. At that moment, the castle gates opened, and the people, driven by determination, took their positions. When the gates fully opened, the silhouettes of several knights became visible. One of the knights shouted to his comrades to prepare for distribution. The crowd, the guy who had been leaning toward a fight, calmed down and started wondering what the noble meant by distribution. The old man stepped forward, warning everyone that this was all a scam. At that moment, a man placed a sack in front of him, and the noble explained that, by order of young Master Logan, those who participated in the forced labor would receive a month's worth of grain. He told everyone to line up at the gate so the distribution could begin. Hearing this, the crowd dropped their weapons and hurried to form a line. The old man gripped the sack tightly, staring at the ground silently. He trembled for a moment, then lifted his head and shouted so everyone could hear, "Long live Logan McLain." People turned to him, and he repeated the shout. Smiles appeared on their faces, matching the old man's, and soon everyone was cheering for Logan. Meanwhile, up on the estate walls, Dwayne and Logan were talking. Dwayne asked if it was really necessary to enforce a mandatory order to gather people, since they could have just made a request. The young man replied that if he had done it that way, not even a quarter of them would have shown up. After all, no one there trusted nobles. He explained that nobles see their people as property, but life as a mercenary taught him that for common folks, the only difference between good and bad nobles is who takes more. Logan told Dwayne that even his father cared more about the knights than the people, because he believed knights were the nation's strength. That's why, even without money, he still maintained an order of 50 knights. So, the young man forced them to gather there so they'd actually believe it. Logan then turned his head toward Dwayne and asked why he was staring at him. Dwayne said he was surprised and that Logan had been surprising him a lot lately. Logan told Dwayne he was being dumb and that since Dwayne listened to him and trusted him so much anyway, he might as well go ahead and start the construction. Dwayne got annoyed hearing that again and asked Logan to think it over once more, since spending 2 million gold on that construction made no sense. Then he asked Logan if it was even possible to build it. At that moment, Logan said Dwayne sounded just like Amar and Clayton. He had already revealed his plan to them, and they were speechless at the idea of building a dam. During dinner, they asked if the intention was to divert the water and build a gate. The young man confirmed, insisting the project be executed exactly as planned. He explained that the McLain territory was surrounded by mountains, which made the land unproductive. He added that the mountains to the north prevented the Luther River from flowing south to transform the region. He instructed Amar and Clayton to make a big hole in those mountains so the river water could pass through. Amar, a bit annoyed, replied it would be easier to believe if the young man had just asked them to blow up the whole mountain. Logan explained that instead, they would build a tunnel directly connected to the Luther River, about 30 meters in diameter at the mouth, which would function as a gate. He added that this method was used in the western part of the continent, where they called it a dam. Actually, the warrior knew this explanation wasn't entirely true. It was a flood control method that would become popular in the Empire in about 20 years. He didn't fully understand the principles either, but with a dwarf master and a fifth circle mage at his disposal, Logan believed the project could take off. If those two led the project, he could transform the western McLain wastelands into fertile plains. Clayton was about to comment on the plan, but Amar interrupted, insisting that choosing the right location was crucial. He explained that soil composition was fundamental and they needed to consider water levels to prevent the tunnel from collapsing. They'd have to build an arch structure and ask the mages for help. After hearing all this, Clayton turned to Almar and asked if Logan's idea was really feasible. Almar, surprised he'd said all that out loud, barely believed it himself. Hearing everything, Logan, holding his wine glass, confidently acknowledged that the plan was possible. This made both Clayton and Amar start sweating. Amar, trying to explain himself, began saying he was already busy with other tasks, including the new mining operation. But before he could finish, Logan interrupted him, explaining that's exactly why he had prepared magical scrolls and mages. Logan then told Amar that he'd leave him the job of finding the right mountain. Hearing this, Amar reluctantly replied that he had suspected something when Logan suddenly decided to invite him to a big feast. Seeing all this, Clayton wondered if everything going on was really legit. At the construction site, Clayton took his position, focusing his magic. From a safe distance, two workers nervously watched. One of them brushed off the worry, assuring the other that with Logan around, they'd be safe. Amar then shouted at Clayton, telling him he could start whenever he was ready. Clayton pressed his magic-infused hand against the mountain, and with a sudden surge of power, the surface shattered into millions of pieces. People scattered immediately to avoid the debris. Seeing the chaos, Amar pushed Clayton aside, reminding him to take it easy. Logan, watching the scene, began explaining that besides physical strength, there was another power humans could use: mana. In his past life, Logan barely felt mana, but now he saw it all clearly. He was impressed by the Earth's power emanating from the mana circle at Clayton's core, weaving patterns to stimulate and break the stone wall. Impressed, Logan realized that developing his core strength had boosted his senses to an absurd level. Clayton turned to him with a small smile and told the young man to pay attention to the next trick, assuring him this was just the beginning. At first, Logan wasn't impressed, but he watched closely as Clayton raised his hand and then suddenly clenched his fist. In the blink of an eye, all the stones from the previous explosion gathered and started floating in front of him. Immediately, Logan understood what was happening. The debris was coming together to form a gigantic structure. The thing's size was so massive that the young warrior could only stare up with his mouth open, while a completely terrified Amar hid behind Logan's leg. Clayton transformed the scattered stones into a colossal rock golem. Logan, amazed by Clayton's ability to create such a massive figure without any tools, began pondering the possibilities. He muttered to himself that if they could make a few more of these golems, construction would finish way faster, and they could even be used in war. Overwhelmed by Clayton's power, Logan grabbed his hands excitedly and asked how many golems he could create. Excited, Clayton asked if his students could also make golems. He confirmed, explaining that since they were from the Earth Magic Tower's golem school, they definitely could. Logan was beaming, but Clayton quickly cooled his enthusiasm by pointing out a big limitation. He explained that the magical formula needed to create a golem's core could only be performed by fifth circle mages. His students, though skilled, weren't strong enough and needed mana stones. Even then, the golems they made would be much smaller and weaker than the one Clayton had just summoned. Hearing this, Logan's expression changed drastically. He explained that mana stones are as rare a mineral as calcium or mithril, making them a rare mineral that can't be artificially produced. And since they're used for magical assistance, they're also super expensive. This made Logan think that mana stones really weren't worth it for this job. But could the young guy be thinking about cost effectiveness in a war? After all, what if he could win by investing a little cash? Well, then that's enough. He asked Clayton if his golem would also get stronger with mana stones. Clayton confirmed, explaining that its strength and speed would increase and it would last way longer. However, since he was a fifth circle mage, he'd need the highest quality mana stone. Still, for a second circle mage, a low-quality mana stone would be enough. It would last about 24 hours and be way stronger than an adult man. Hearing that, the young guy figured a low-quality mana stone must cost about the same as a gold coin. Its effectiveness didn't really justify that much cash, but for a short war like the last one, it could deliver way bigger results. Dwayne showed up at the construction site and freaked out when he saw the giant golem pounding the mountain. Logan tried to calm him down, explaining the golem was finishing a tunnel as part of the plan, but fear took over and Dwayne couldn't listen. Ignoring Logan, he panicked and ran off, screaming he had to warn Patrick McLain. Logan turned to Amar and told him to take the workers and start on the water channel, saying there was no need to leave anyone behind for the tunnel since the golem could handle it. Amar nodded and started barking orders at the workers. Meanwhile, the young guy was thinking about having 3 construction projects going on, feeling a mix of hype and determination. First, the tunnel and the dam. Second, the water channel. And third, the mine, for which Logan already had the drilling results. So, he sent workers to Jan before anywhere else. The young guy thought that after coming back from the capital, he'd been busy with the dam, so he hadn't been able to keep an eye on the mine. That's why he planned to visit tomorrow. The next day, he saw people coming and going from the mine with Amar in the middle, looking especially pissed. Logan walked up to Amar and said it had been a while since they'd seen each other. Amar snapped back, asking what Logan was talking about and accused him of running him ragged. In a fit of rage, he yelled he couldn't handle the pace anymore and suggested it'd be better just to kill him. He lamented not even being able to take a break and demanded to know why he had to carry all the weight alone. Through the whole outburst, Logan stayed silent. Meanwhile, one of the other workers noticed Amor's frustration and told the others they needed to step in. Amor collapsed to the ground with tears in his eyes. Logan gently put a hand on his shoulder, trying to comfort him. The young guy recognized the hard work Amar had been putting in and told him that from now on, he'd let Amar manage and run everything on his own. The young guy's face twisted in disbelief, and he asked Logan if he was serious, wondering if he really meant to dump all the tasks on him. Logan felt a pang of sadness realizing Amar had caught on to his plan. With a somewhat playful gesture, Logan hooked his pinky finger, promising Amor that as soon as construction was done, he could rest as much as he wanted. Amor, overwhelmed, tried to pull his hand away, but Logan held his finger tight, almost making the poor dwarf scream in pain as he threatened to break it. Amor, standing on the ground and pissed off, watched Logan just turn his back and brush his hair, saying he was only trying to be funny. Then he looked at the mine thinking it would be exploited way faster than last time. Even without being sure about the dam, he hoped it would work. It was the only way his plans could succeed. Then, Logan activated a communication channel to talk with Philip. His friend told him the construction materials would be delivered without a hitch, and also mentioned he'd closed a deal for the wood that would bring in 100,000 gold coins extra per month. The news lit up the young guy's face. Philip didn't hide his excitement either and told Logan that as soon as they finished building the mine and clearing the land, the territory would be completely transformed and he'd like to see it in person someday. Logan stared at the orb for a moment, thoughtful, before replying that Philip should visit next year. Curious, Philip asked why, but quickly added he probably wouldn't get an answer. Then he changed the subject, revealing rumors were going around the capital about a problem with the royal family. Philip asked what that problem could be, and Logan said he heard it at Felix's house but didn't know the details. But it seemed serious. He advised Philip to try to find out more. In his head, the young guy dived into memories of his past life, remembering that next winter the king would suddenly die, which would lead to a civil war. However, he knew the info he had might not be totally accurate. If the king's death was really sudden, it would follow the same pattern as his previous life. Otherwise, the exact timing could be different. Logan understood he couldn't start prepping until he confirmed the situation. His priority was to get the McLain family ready. So the young guy told Philip to set aside the leftover budget into an emergency fund and buy as many weapons and armor as possible, specifically enough to gear up 500 men. Hearing this, Philip started sweating and said that wasn't an easy task. He wondered why Logan needed so much gear if the McLains only had about 100 knights. Logan explained the gear wasn't for the knights, but for the soldiers. This revelation pissed Philip off, who asked in disbelief if Logan had completely lost his mind. He argued that nobody fully armed their soldiers. It was just a waste of money. But Logan refused to listen to the complaints. In his thoughts, the young guy figured that even if his actions seemed weird, they were driven by necessity. The last war had caused tons of deaths, cutting down production. To avoid that, he needed to dodge recruitment as much as possible, while at the same time beefing up the strength of his knights and soldiers. Arming the soldiers was key to this strategy. Logan then asked Philip if his judgment had ever failed, to which Philip reluctantly said no. Then he smiled and told Philip that in that case, they should proceed as planned. Philip said he got it and would quietly dig deeper into the rumor. With that, Logan declared the next step was securing funds through the mine, food supply via the dam, and upgrading the soldiers' weapons. The basic prep for a breakthrough was going well. A huge stack of papers was on Logan's desk, overwhelming him. Dwayne was by his side, directing his attention to specific papers. "Read this, sign that, and so on," he said before adding he'd bring the next batch of documents. While reading one of the papers, Dwayne told Logan he once again signed a document without properly checking it, asking if he planned to keep up this negligence. Then, Logan really had to get a grip on the territory's affairs, and just then the door slammed open and he immediately started yelling at Dwayne. Dwayne, insisting he wasn't the heir, just asked if anyone else agreed with that at the moment. That's when Castellon ran in looking worried and said Amar was trapped in a mine that had just collapsed. Hearing that the damage was over 50 meters wide, the young guy ran out shouting they couldn't waste time and needed to head straight to the mine. Castellon explained that one of the tunnels had caved in and over 50 meters had sunk. There was no way to know where Amar was. Worried, Logan immediately asked if they'd found Amar yet. Dwayne jumped in asking since when their territory even had a mine, but Logan totally ignored him. Hearing that the damage was over 50 meters wide, the young guy ran out shouting they couldn't waste time and needed to head straight to the mine. Dwayne stayed behind, completely baffled, yelling where this whole mine story even came from. Logan arrived at the mine on horseback and immediately asked the workers which tunnel had collapsed. One of them pointed to the middle tunnel, explaining it was the deepest and darkest, but Logan didn't listen for a second and went straight in. Inside, He used his aura to see in the dark, and what he saw really disturbed him. Huge rocks blocked the way and some people were desperately trying to move them. The old supervisor of the mine noticed Logan's presence. Logan just ordered the workers to back off. He touched one of the stones and filled it with mana. He could sense the presence of 10 people trapped. One of them had the same energy as Hammer. He told the foreman they had escaped the worst, but there were still plenty of victims. The foreman, totally baffled, asked, "How would you know that?" The kid just ignored the question and wanted to know how long it would take to clear the stones. The foreman estimated at least 3 days, and that seriously worried Logan. He knew the longer it took, the lower the chances of survival for the trapped people. Outside, Logan begged Clayton and his apprentices for help. He pleaded with them to rescue Hammer and the trapped workers, promising they'd be rewarded handsomely. Clayton realized Logan was talking about the place where Hammer had been working. He decided to help but made it clear it wasn't about the money. It was because people were hurt. Logan thanked him and promised to return the favor. Clayton thought it was weird, that Logan, who was always so secretive about the mine, was suddenly revealing its location just to save his slave and some workers. He used his magic to hold up the tunnel, and his disciples used mana stones to summon golems. The disciples holding their crystals threw the stones at the rubble, and the rocks transformed into stone golems that immediately started clearing the debris. The miners were terrified. They just weren't used to seeing magic that powerful. Logan was amazed at their efficiency, watching them clear several meters of rubble in just seconds. Clayton urged them on, and Logan didn't just stand there watching. Oh, no. He joined the workers and mages, hauling rocks and helping with the cleanup. Clayton, surprised to see Logan, a noble, working so hard to save plevolos and a dwarf, thought that scene was something he'd never witnessed before. Then, the mine master shouted that he'd found the injured. Hammer was there, partially buried. Seeing that, Logan was terrified, but then he realized that despite the scare, the injuries were minor and everyone was okay. Feeling a huge wave of relief, he thanked the gods that everyone had escaped with just scratches. Later in the infirmary, Logan asked Hammer what had happened. Hammer admitted he had fallen asleep. Lately, he'd been overworking himself. Logan was upset, but Hammer tried to calm him down by saying he'd be back to work in no time. Logan interrupted him, telling him to rest as long as he needed. Hammer was surprised by Logan's concern and shouted he'd rest even if the world was burning or aliens showed up. Leaving the infirmary, Logan was impressed that the rescue had only taken 2 hours. His thoughts were interrupted by Clayton, who suddenly appeared saying Logan's mind was something marvelous. Logan wondered if the mage had discovered his mine was full of gold and if he'd keep it a secret. He explained to Clayton that the mine was crucial to his plans and that he had no one else to replace Demar. Plus, if he couldn't protect his people, he'd be left with no one. Clayton was interested in his answer and asked if Logan wanted a magic tower on his land. The young man was stunned. Clayton explained it was time to get rid of the old tower master and that Logan's lands were perfect for a small magic tower. Logan was ecstatic and said it would be an honor. He wanted to know if Clayton's apprentices would come and how much it would cost. Clayton replied that his disciples would definitely come and that he didn't need much money. He trusted Logan's character and skills. Logan was amazed. Hammer, who had overheard the conversation, asked Clayton if he hit his head, but Logan just told his friend to get back to bed. A week later, Hammer reported to Logan that he was fully recovered and was returning to the mine to make up for lost time. Logan wished him luck. As soon as Hammer left, Dwayne appeared, looking terrifying. He demanded to know why Logan had kept the mine a secret and how long he'd been developing it. Logan just apologized, saying he forgot. Frustrated, Dwayne asked how he could forget something so important to answer Dwayne. Logan flashed a huge grin and revealed, "It's a gold mine." Dwayne couldn't believe it and told the guy to stop acting so clever. "No way people like us could have a gold mine." "What are you talking about?" he said. Logan asked what was so unbelievable about it and called him a rascal. Getting serious again, he informed him that the mine was expected to generate about 100 million in gold per year. "You really think I'd joke about something like that?" he asked. Hearing this, Dwayne was speechless. He asked if he was serious and just stood frozen in place. Logan touched Dwayne worriedly and almost fell backward. It looked like the info he just got was making Dwayne pass out because he just couldn't process the amount of money that mine would bring. Logan was sweating buckets trying to snap him out of it while thinking about how the plan had moved faster than he imagined, except for the little problem with Hammer's injury. Elsewhere, a group of people walked together in the forest, a bit puzzled about why they'd been called back again. The dam construction was finished in just 3 months, not the 6 they expected. They were the managers Dine had gathered for a final inspection. Logan greeted them warmly, saying how glad he was to have them there and recognizing their tight schedules. He asked them to stay and witness the dam's inauguration. One of the managers looked skeptical, thinking it was a waste of time because bringing water from the Luda River to spray over the desert wouldn't make any difference. He thought Logan should have invested the money more wisely, maybe fixing the south wall. The other managers also wondered why Logan had put in so much effort. They turned to Dwayne, who once again was there with his mouth wide open. Dwayne looked at the dam, realizing it wasn't built just to water a desert. It was actually connected directly to the underground channels of the Luda River. If they could supply water continuously through those channels, the vast desert could turn into fertile land. Logan looked around and saw everyone gathered: the workers, the mages, and the managers. He turned to Clayton and gave the signal. Clayton, without hesitating for a second, got ready to start the process. He never grumbled or complained that they had worked hard so the workers themselves could open and close the gates. But Logan explained that the first time had to be something huge. He wanted to show everyone on the M. Klein estate what they had built with their own hands. An image of the dam appeared, showing some golems positioned in front of the gates ready to lift them. The managers were speechless but quickly got used to it. Then, Clayton shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, giving the order to the golems to open the gates. They stretched their hands toward the gates and started lifting. Logan smiled, satisfied, but something weird happened. The golems were struggling to lift the gates. With a killer grin, Clayton looked at Hamar, murmuring and asking what the hell he was doing. But it seemed like Hamar had no clue either, since he had given orders to the workers to open the gates. Seeing the situation, Logan started sweating and had a flashback of a conversation with Clayton, where he warned him that lifting the gates would be too much for the golems. Apparently, the golem's strength was just for show, and it would take about 100 workers turning the pulleys to open the gates. Thinking fast, Logan told Clayton to order the golems to break down the gates. Hamar and Clayton were stunned, and Clayton asked if he was serious. Logan just told him to do what he said, since they could rebuild the gates later. Hesitating for a few seconds, Clayton did what Logan asked, and the golems started smashing the gates. The construction team wondered if this was for real, since their hard work had just finished. Suddenly, the gate gave way, and the water started rushing down with incredible force, dragging the golems with it. Everyone was confused, but Logan was grinning ear to ear, totally hyped. The villagers who had worked so hard on the construction couldn't hold back their tears when they saw the water, finally understanding what it truly meant. At that moment, Logan thought this would solve their food problem during the Civil War. They could start planting next spring. Even Dwayne was happy and jumped on Logan's back, scaring him a lot, saying how wrong he was about the dam and apologizing. Logan said it was all good and started teasing him, asking why a big guy like him was crying so much. But not everyone was that happy. Hamar was in the corner crying and asking how long it would take to rebuild the gates. Clayton came over and said he'd help rebuild them once again. Logan then said they didn't urgently need the gate, that they could take a week off and finish building the mine. Later, he told Hamar that after this project was done, they'd have a long vacation again. That lit up Hamar's eyes, and he asked if he was serious. Logan reassured him, but what Hamar didn't know was that they'd soon be busy again. Many farmers would want the fertile land, and they'd need to build a new town for people to live in. Logan turned to Hamar, about to praise him, but realized that wasn't the right way to do it. He called him out. Hamar got curious. Logan commented that construction must be hard, even for someone like him, since he'd never heard dwarves were good builders. That drove Hamar nuts. He asked what Logan was trying to say and explained that after making weapons, construction is the dwarves' specialty. Logan realized Hamar was right where he wanted him and said it was great to hear that. Hamar replied a bit suspiciously that Logan could praise him all he wanted, but he wouldn't give him anything, and asked why he suddenly cared so much about construction. Logan played it off, saying it was just curiosity, but as soon as Hamar turned his back, he thought to himself that after their week off, the exciting experience of building a house would begin, and then Hamar wouldn't be laughing. Actually, he was scared to run into him at night. As soon as the chat with Hamar ended, Logan addressed the crowd at the inauguration. He repeated the promise he had made. First, everyone could farm on the McLain Plains. Second, they'd receive lease rights equivalent to their work and taxes would only be 30%. Then he looked at the vassals, thinking that if he announced it like that, not even they could oppose it. In fact, they looked radiant, realizing that the territory might finally be changing. 4 weeks later, Logan was in his office with Rick, reviewing a plan sent by Hamar, who had already finished the village design and model house. Logan said he knew he'd chosen the right person for the job, and Rick replied that Hamar is amazing. Logan thought he never imagined Hamar would accept the task when he proposed it a few weeks ago, since at first he was a bit doubtful. In the background, events from 4 weeks ago show Hamar asking Logan if he's crazy for wanting to build a village, and Logan teases him, saying dwarves are supposed to be construction experts. Hamar planned the streets in a cross pattern and placed houses of the same size with wells, communal bathrooms, and sewers. Logan thinks he tried to replicate the city plan he saw in his past life. Suddenly, a strong smell hits Logan. He turns to Rick and asks, "Why does it smell so bad?" Rick says it's all Logan's fault. He asks why that drug sells so well too, and says if it weren't for that, he wouldn't be suffering like this. Just then, Dane bursts into the room yelling for Logan. The young man asks Dane if he's ever going to knock again. Dane doesn't care and starts telling him something about Hamar. Suddenly, Dane's expression turns pure joy. He tells Logan that Hamar sent word they can start mining gold already and shows him nuggets, explaining they found the treasure, just like that. Logan tells Hamar he did a great job and Dane hugs him. asking how they got so lucky to have him around. But Hamar just wants to rest and his eyes show he's been awake for a very, very long time. Then, Logan asks Hamar how soon they can start mining. Hamar replies that everything is on track, a ton of gold a month, which should last at least 10 years. He insists again that the kid should go rest. Logan hesitates, arguing there's still so much to do, like building the city, more beasts, and new weapons. He asks Hamar if that's even possible. Logan's request hits Hamar like an axe blow, making him sweat and clutch his head. Then, Hamar just flops down on the ground to rest. Dwayne leans over him, calling him the treasure of the territory. Logan thinks he'll be the only one pushing forward since there's still a ton of work left. He tells Hamar he'll keep his promise and that he can take his time off. Hamar starts screaming with joy and bolts like lightning. Logan wonders if some kind of power awakened because the kid was way too fast. Behind him, Dwayne starts crying tears of joy. Logan asks what happened, and Dwayne explains the mine will generate 100 million in gold a year. Dwayne tells Logan that with the chaos and all, their territory is saved because they won't have to worry about anything anymore. Logan mocks him, saying he's crying more than when the dam was finished. Then the kid calmly looks at Dwayne and drops a crucial fact. The only one you should fear is me. Stay alert because that mine is mine too, Logan warns. Dwayne is terrified. Logan explains that of course, he'll pay 30% in taxes to the family. But that's it. Dwayne gets up confused and kneels before Logan, saying he trusts his judgment. Logan warns Dwayne they have to keep the mine a secret because if word gets out, the Buffrocks, Kalea, and the Margrave will cause trouble. Dwayne says he'll handle it, which makes Logan a bit uneasy. He thinks his dad is going to be a problem. Since he made a bunch of changes before his return, a week later, Logan and his dad are walking by the river, admiring the beauty of the place. Logan notices Patrick McLain has become an advanced knight. Patrick McLain admits that while he was away, Logan achieved a lot. Logan tries to defend himself and explain his plans, but Patrick McLain interrupts. He says having water flowing through that desert is incredible, and that Logan is way better at managing the estate than he ever was. Logan tries to be humble, but Patrick McLain says he managed to do more in 3 months than he did in the last 10 years and thanks him. Logan wants to say he's grateful too, but gets interrupted again. Patrick McLain announces that from now on, Logan will handle all the duties of a lord because he wants to focus on training the Order of Knights. Hearing this, the kid is shocked. Patrick McLain interrupts again and asks if he knows what he realized during his training. I got old, says Patrick McLain. He explains he couldn't master the secret techniques and now depends on young guys like Logan and Ragnar to try. He says Logan helped him overcome a barrier that blocked him for years and that he wants to step back and be a guide. Logan nods and accepts the offer. Patrick McLain then turns and calls Marion, asking her to help Logan fulfill his role. Marion agrees. Patrick McLain gives Logan a little push, encouraging him to talk to his mom. The kid approaches Marion, who's wearing a beautiful dress and holding a parasol. She starts by saying Logan's achievements are enough proof of his ability to be the successor. She calls him young master and says now she only wishes for Ronan's success. Logan apologizes, but she interrupts, saying she's the one who should apologize. She admits her vision was limited and hopes Logan will be generous. Marion continues, saying Logan is teaching Ronan to fight and that she's never been happier. She asks him to keep taking care of his brother. Logan doesn't like where this convo is going and yells that parents shouldn't use respectful titles with their kids. He calls her mom, which stops her. Emotional, she turns and says goodbye, walking toward Patrick McLain. Patrick McLain signals Logan, showing his approval of his son's action. Logan watches his parents walk away, and, in what seems to be the state of Tesserana, he and Patrick McLain are talking. Logan says as soon as the city is ready, they'll start clearing the bushes for farming. Patrick McLain worries if the residents will move easily. Logan says yes because they'll give priority and rights to those who move to the new city, and the new houses will be better. Logan tells him he asked Day to recruit soldiers and Patrick McLain agrees to train those who become knights. Patrick McLain praises Logan's work but points out there's still a problem. He turns around, stops in front of the Order's knights, and calls them lost causes. He asks, since when they have 2 knight orders and says just their faces give him chills. Logan recognizes them as the McLain knights who deserted Thezerin. They act like they're on opposite sides. Logan tells them to chill out. Patrick McLain comments on how he and Logan have been killing each other training while the knights are fighting like kids. Logan says it's his fault for being careless. The knights shout that it's not true and ask Captain Heel to get him out of there. Heinkel turns his head toward Patrick McLain and asks if he's become an advanced level knight. Patrick McLain says he's going to put them in their place with so much aura that the wooden sword breaks. He yells at them to sit down and learn the art of the sword firsthand. In the office, Dwayne was signing documents, happier than ever, not having to worry about the budget. 2 vassals were talking about the budget Logan was monopolizing. Dwayne interrupts and asks if the extra money has blinded them and where they think it came from, telling them to just obey. He reads a paper and starts sweating. A few minutes later, he's in Logan's office asking what he's going to do with 10 million in gold. Logan replies he's going to buy 100 kilograms of Elril. Dwayne's jaw drops and Logan pushes him against the wall, telling him to sign. Day argues he can't because Elril is 1,000 times more expensive than gold. The scene shifts to a conversation between Logan and Philip. Logan wanted to buy mithril for the knight's war gear, and Philip says it's impossible. Logan is stunned. Philip explains that mail isn't something you buy just because you have money, but with power. This gives Logan an idea. Inside a castle, a messenger is disturbed by a message from McLain. Duke Felix, who is busy, arrives in 30 minutes to check the message. Felix greets Logan and says he misses hearing from him. Logan says he would never dare send a personal message. Felix smiles and reveals his wife is pregnant, and it's all thanks to Logan. The young man congratulates him and Felix thanks him. Felix says when the baby is born, he wants Logan to come back to the capital because his wife wants to thank him and will teach him his next technique. Logan thanks him. Felix asks the reason for the contact. Logan gets straight to the point, wanting to know if he can get the 100 kilos of mithril he needs. Felix's jaw drops and he asks if he said 100 kilograms. No, 100 grams. Felix says he doesn't even invest that much in his own parties and that he underestimated Logan's generosity, which makes the young man think the misunderstanding is growing. Felix says he'll take care of everything, but he has to attend the baby's party and call him master. Logan looks at the empty orb, then trembles and lets out a scream of happiness. Being the disciple of the Duke of the Sword was the most amazing thing that had happened to him. The idea was just to ask for a little help, but Felix gave him a golden rope. Logan thinks Hamar will be more productive after a short break. He brags about how benevolent he is as an employer. In reality, Hamar had nightmares about Logan for weeks after his vacation. Outside McLain's castle, a group of men, all under 20 years old, showed up for recruitment. Dwayne asks Logan if he really needs to recruit so many people. Logan says he'll handle everything himself. He thinks expanding his forces is crucial and that he'll personally select the new members, even with some downsides. He thinks about the Empire's new theory that what really counts are the senses, not physical skill, and that they use 50,000 knights to crush neighboring countries. 9 years later, Logan thinks they gather all existing soldiers and reselect them to form a knight unit. He thinks the grandiose civil war could be tough, but they'll have a formidable force against the Empire's invasion. He mentions he'd like to recruit people over 20 years old, but then there wouldn't be enough labor for city construction. One of the vassals yells at the guys to shut up. Logan asks how they used to select soldiers. The vassal says they made everyone run and pick them based on who arrived first. Logan realizes their selection method was pretty basic. He orders them to only choose those with good eyesight, hearing, and quick reflexes. The first test he comes up with is having the candidates walk toward a picture until they can see it clearly. Some stop pretty fast, and one of them says the picture is of a chicken. Logan tells the knights to deal with the kid who called him handsome. A kid from the back raises his hand and says that seeing the comb, it must be a rooster. Logan is impressed. For the second test, Dwayne yells the same word over and over, and the participants have to walk until they understand the word. One of the boys yells at Dwayne that the answer is the sparrow of the world and says Dwayne also called him a son of A, asking if that's part of the test too. Den gets scared, thinking he was talking to himself. Logan tells Dwayne to pick the boy who just spoke and says he needs a beating. Going over the documents, Logan can barely believe that 250 people passed with flying colors. He thinks about selecting around 500 without hesitation to form a force of 1,000. At the training ground, Victor is training with his sword. He swings the blade hard, catching the attention of some knights. Victor can only think about what Logan told him. If he can perform the sword technique once without messing up, he can become a knight and awaken his inner strength. He grabs the sword's hilt and tells himself he needs to become a knight as soon as possible. Victoria, his sister, watches him with worry. Victor thinks Logan won't wait for him forever. Just then, Victoria spots Logan. He signals her to be quiet because he wants to check on Victor. Logan thinks Victor has a lot of talent, and even while swinging wildly, he keeps a proper basic stance. He yells at Victor and informs him that the next day he'll leave the McLain castle estate to train soldiers in the Thessalia territory, which will last until winter. But Victor shouts that he is ready. Logan sighs and tells Victor that Ria can come along and points a finger, warning that if there's any trouble, it'll be his responsibility. But Victor shouts that he is ready. Logan sighs and tells Victor that Ria can come along and points a finger, warning that if there's any trouble, it'll be his responsibility. Victor replies that he'll take good care of his sister. Logan asks if Victoria is really that important to him, and Victor hesitates, but then lets it all out. He tells Logan that their parents died because of him and that Ria has no parents because of him, so he has to protect her. Logan looks at him without saying a word, then puts a hand on Victor's shoulder and tells him it's okay and to keep up the good work. A few days later, at Tesseron Castle, Alan is scolding the kids Logan picked, making them run 5 laps around the wall, and as punishment, the last 100 have to do 2 more. The kids are terrified, but Kessel yells at them to stop playing and start running. Logan tells Kessel he has potential to be a sergeant. The warrior replies that since they're treating him like a knight, he agreed to renew his contract. He whispers in Logan's ear, asking if he plans to start some kind of war in the next 2 years. Logan just smiles without answering, but Lan knows war is inevitable. They get distracted when one of the recruits shouts something about someone being a monster. They're talking about Victor, who's in the lead in the race. The others are shocked. One asks what he's made of, and another replies that Victor is Logan's slave. Hearing this, the first guy feels motivated and starts running again, shouting he won't lose to Victor. Salin notices the effect of the winner Logan talks about so much. Logan comments that he doesn't expect them to have exceptional physical skills, but the will not give up is enough. He believes Victor will absorb strength and that his power will awaken soon, becoming the biggest motivator for the soldiers. Then the kids are taken to the barracks where tables full of food await them. They eat eagerly, thanking Logan. Rhea is also in the lodging serving meals. The guys are totally mesmerized by her, and one of them calls her an angel. Victor notices their admiration and throws off a threatening vibe. He points his finger at the guys and warns them to look away before he rips their eyes out. They fall silent. Another guy behind Victor's table eyes Rhea with a sleazy look. Outside the barracks, Victor runs off with a piece of bread in his hand. He'd asked an older woman where Rhea went, and she said she used the back door to take out the trash. Worry hits the young guy hard since Rhea shouldn't be alone at night. He hears a noise coming from an alley and goes to check it out. What he sees leaves him speechless. The sleazy apprentice is trying to take advantage of Rhea. Tears stream down Victor's face and the bread falls from his hand to the ground. The rookie stammers, but Victor's already moving. With a powerful knee, he breaks the dude's nose and sends him crashing down. He stands in front of Rhea, ready to strike again. The apprentice spits, calling him a bastard and demanding to know how a lowly slave dares to touch him. But Victor lands another blow, nearly knocking him out. Rhea lets out a shocked scream, frozen in place. Victor grabs the guy by his hair and starts beating him mercilessly, growling for him to die. Around the corner, another apprentice witnesses the scene and runs off to get help. Victor sees nothing but red. Every hit flashes memories of his past, memories of the night he and Rhea lost their parents. Suddenly, a voice yells from behind, snapping Victor out of his rage. He turns and sees Logan. Logan tells him to calm down and look around. An employee enters, gently guiding Rhea outside. Kay-Salin tries to process the chaos. Logan points to the lifeless body and tells Kay-Salin to handle it. Victor keeps his head down, waiting for punishment, and apologizes. Logan asks if he regrets it, and Victor says no, but he regrets killing one of Logan's soldiers without permission. Logan admits he's not entirely wrong, but points out that he should regret bringing his sister to the camp. Logan explains that Victor's stubbornness almost got Rhea hurt. He goes on to say it's better to leave Rhea in a safe place than drag her into danger. Logan let Victor bring her so he could learn the consequences of his actions. He asks Victor if he got the lesson. Victor nods silently. Logan tells Victor that while killing is a crime, Rhea was a victim and he did right protecting her, but warns him that next time he should ask for permission before taking such drastic action, since he doesn't want his future nights delayed because of some pervert. Inside the castle, Castellan and Logan are deep in conversation. Castellan asks if Logan should really be deciding this matter alone. Logan replies that Victor is his property and he used him to get rid of a nasty criminal. He puts it another way, saying he used his property to dispose of a criminal and asks what Kay-Salin thinks of that version of the story. Kay-Salin asks if Victor killed the recruit under his orders. Logan nods and starts explaining his plan. The apprentice's crimes will be exposed and his body hung at the castle gates as a warning. He instructs Kay-Salin to inform the soldiers. Kay-Salin changes the subject, noticing Logan marking something on a map. He asks, "What's the young man doing?" Logan replies, "It's a surprise." The marks on the map highlight areas where monsters have been spotted recently. News of Victor's actions spreads, and when they find out what the dead recruit tried to do to Rhea, shock turns into rage. The crowd wants to dig up the body and finish him off again. Logan overhears the conversation and thinks the situation was handled pretty well. Time passes. 3 months later, snow blankets the trees, signaling winter. Logan and Castellan chat while watching the scenery. Logan comments that the new year is near and Castellan talks about how time has flown. In 90 days of training, the group of 1,000 apprentices has shrunk to 987 with 1 death and 12 dropouts. Kay-Salin is satisfied, noting no one else is quitting. Logan thinks the basic training is finally over. He's already asked Hamwar to make 400 more crossbows. He asks if the apprentices are ready for combat training. Patrick McLain confirms and suggests the forest at the base of the mountain range as a suitable spot. He says it's time to step up the training since the knights will need real combat experience. Logan asks if they've already mastered the Iron Blood sword technique. Patrick McLain replies that true mastery only comes through fighting. Logan's smile widens with a psychotic edge, and he agrees. Salin turns pale and a bead of sweat runs down his face, realizing where Logan got his intense, slightly crazy tendencies. A few days later, deep in the southern McLain mountain range, Patrick McLain shows up fully armored. He orders the knights to draw their swords and control their breathing. They focus their aura and, at Patrick McLain's command, strike the massive trees with their blades. Even the knights are stunned by the power they just unleashed. Logan, standing beside his father, watches with satisfaction, but Patrick McLain stays calm. The apprentices, however, are ecstatic, whispering among themselves, wondering if they'll ever reach that level. Logan yells at the apprentices to stay alert, reminding everyone this isn't just any forest, but one crawling with monsters. Like magic, goblins start emerging from the shadows, and the knights, eager to fight, waste no time. They charge at the goblins, attacking with precision and ferocity. They cut them down like a storm. The goblins, overwhelmed by the knights' power, try to flee in panic, but Logan had already anticipated this. He ordered the troops to ready their crossbows. At his signal, a rain of arrows fell over the battlefield, wiping out any goblin trying to escape. The cavalry laughed, mocking the fear they once felt for these creatures. Their joy was short-lived. A huge, terrifying paw appeared before them, and the knights braced for the attack. A pack of wolves lunged forward, but these weren't ordinary wolves, they had horns. The knights formed a defensive line. In an instant, one wolf bit down on a knight's sword. Things got tough for the knights. Suddenly, Quesalin ordered the cavalry to use their crossbows. Arrows sliced through the sky, hitting the wolves who let out terrible screams of pain. But the arrows seemed useless and shattered on impact. A trembling soldier shouted that the arrows had no effect. Logan yelled at the knights to hold their formation. The mission was clear. No wolf was getting through. The stand winner stepped forward, determined to test his strength against one of the wolves. The blow was so strong it sent the wolf flying several meters back, but a chilling scream cut through the air behind him. When he turned, he saw a wolf sinking its teeth into a recruit's leg, while another recruit froze in terror. A fiery strike cut through the air, and Logan unleashed his fury on the wolf, finishing it with a single blow. He ordered the terrified apprentice to pull himself together and take the wounded to safety. The recruit immediately obeyed and ran off. Logan thought, as he suspected, most apprentices weren't ready for chaotic skirmishes, but those who ranked in the top 100 in the census test stood out. One cornered apprentice noticed another wolf sneaking up behind him. Victor appeared out of nowhere and slit the second wolf's throat. Victor looked at his bloody sword and a faint smile formed on his face. The other apprentices looked at him, confused. Logan saw the scene and realized Victor had finally broken free from his limits. The battle was ending, and Patrick McLain took down the last wolf. Logan asked the captain if that was it. The captain confirmed. Patrick McLain commented that it had been a month and a half since combat training began, and clearing all these places took way longer than expected. The captain agreed, explaining that discovering 3 cities infested with thousands of monsters was monumental. The young man shuddered thinking about all those monsters invading the castle at once. He thanked God they found the threats in time. Logan was coordinating the knights and soldiers, insisting they hold on a bit longer and instructing them to finish chopping down a huge log and haul it to the construction site. However, the knights were whining about how they kept killing monsters and chopping trees nonstop without a single break. Logan ignored the complaints and remarked on how ridiculous it was to leave such valuable trees unused just because monsters were nearby. With his signature killer grin, he thought the situation was perfect, since he was managing to train the soldiers and gather wood for the city at the same time. Patrick McLain watched everything and thought Logan seemed more interested in getting wood than training the troops. Logan kept wondering if awakening one's own strength required a sixth sense, a survival instinct. If everything went according to plan during Grandia's civil war, they could quickly reinforce their forces for the inevitable clash with the Empire. Hammer noticed a smile on the young man's face and asked what was so amusing. Logan ignored him and changed the subject, saying that with enough wood, they could push forward with building Mackle Town. Logan asked if Hammer could finish the project on time, and Hammer nodded confidently. He explained that with the support of the mages and the workers' motivation, the task would be manageable. Logan wondered if Hammer had always been this reliable and chalked it up to his vacation, but just as Hammer's confidence was at its peak, Logan reminded him of another task, the Magic Tower. Clayton cast a spell, conjuring a wall of earth, and the workers stared in awe. Logan urged them to stop gawking and start gathering the earth as planned. Logan approached Clayton, thanking him for fulfilling his requests. Clayton downplayed the concern and said that with the promise of an annual support fund of 10 million gold, it barely mattered if the place was a small town. He said that if everything went as planned, the city would become the region's center. Logan cut him off, stating his only goal was to make the city a nice place for people to live in peace. Clayton was stunned and exclaimed that McCain was truly a land for the people. He shouted dramatically that Logan had his vote. Logan ignored the comment and told Clayton that the earth walls were good enough, since this place would never become a battlefield because he would never let that happen. After all, I plan to invade someone else before that happens, he said. In the silence of the night, Logan was in the forest holding his sword in an unusual stance. Suddenly, with an explosion of energy, he lunged forward. A single radiant beam of light shot from the sword, piercing the darkness. The beam exploded, and when the light faded, it was clear the young man's target was a massive rock. Logan inspected the result and noticed the beam hadn't just pierced the rock, but continued through the trees behind it. He thought the technique he just used was the second form of the divine sword's secrets. He needed to get stronger. 2 months later, the town's construction was finished. Families began moving in, and the start of summer brought a sense of life to the new settlement. In the office, Logan and Dwayne discussed the city's progress. Dwayne reported that the area's recovery was going well, but pointed out a labor shortage. Logan reassured him that refugees kept arriving and instructed Dwayne to accept all newcomers. Dwayne asked about Hamar and was told he was still on vacation. Logan wondered if he'd given him too much time off, but quickly dismissed the idea. Dwayne asked about a rumor that Hamar had taken a large amount of mithril before leaving. Logan confirmed this and explained he'd given the mithril to Hamar so he could craft new weapons for the knights. Dwayne raised an eyebrow and commented that didn't sound much like a vacation. Logan replied that working with rare metals was a dream for dwarves and that Hamar must be thrilled. Far away, Viscount Max Pareda was boiling with rage, pounding his fist on the table. The McLeans had managed to claim the wasteland. He mocked that such land could never be farmed. The vassal explained rumors were spreading about the source of their wealth. Some said Logan had made a fortune in business, others who discovered a gold mine. The Viscount ignores the gossip and asks about the harvest from the reclaimed lands. The vassal estimates the production will be at least double theirs. The news only fuels the Viscount's rage as he realizes they can't just sit back and do nothing. He asks if they can come up with an excuse to invade. The vassal suggests using the people who fled to McLain as a pretext to infiltrate and claim the reclaimed lands as compensation. The Viscount spots the problem. Acting alone would be risky. He has a plan. He'll reach out to the Viscounty of Sylvan, since their people must have fled too, and together they can take down the McLains. In Logan's office, the vibe is tense. Patrick McLain, Logan, Dwayne, and Hinkle are arguing about training and military expansion. Logan tells them he's picked about 300 talented recruits, and Patrick McLain asks if he really thinks they're worthy of becoming knights. Logan nods, and Dwayne comments that it sounds like way too many. Hinkle calls that number ridiculous, arguing that even with intense training for 10 years, only 1 in 100 awakens their power. Logan stays calm and says they'll stick to the training system. Dwayne yells that it's a waste of money, but Logan fires back that the neighboring territories will provoke them anyway. Patrick McLain asks him to explain. Logan clarifies that with McLain City fully operational and the fertile land, there's no way the Viscounties of Sylvan or Perio will stay quiet. Hinkle interrupts, saying they have no excuse. Dwayne shouts over Hinkle, insisting the real problem is the flood of refugees. Logan asks his dad to consider how many refugees they've been taking in and wonder how many might have come from Perida or Sylvan. Furious, Dwayne yells at Logan, demanding to know why he didn't prevent the situation. It looks like Patrick McLain is piecing it together and asks Logan straight up if his goal was to start a war. Logan's answer is blunt. They're enemies, and they'll have to face them eventually, so why wait? Silence fills the room, and everyone, from Hinkle to Dwayne, looks disappointed. Patrick McLain wonders if Logan was given authority too fast. Rick bursts into the room looking for Logan and says Sylvan and Perida have sent a voice message. Logan says things have already started and they need to talk about how to handle it. Outside, 2 flags wave in the breeze. They belong to the envoys from Sylvan and Perida. The silent envoys admire the city's beauty. They watch how the houses are arranged around a big crossroads and how clean and happy the people look. They conclude the city's worth taking. One of them tries to start a conversation with a soldier who says all credit goes to the young master, Logan. The soldier praises Logan's skills, saying he's way ahead of any other prince his age and that Logan puts the land and people's well-being first. The soldier keeps telling a story about Logan, but the envoys don't want to hear it. In the meeting room, the envoys face Logan and Patrick McLain. They demand the return of the refugees and control over the Tesran plains. Logan and Patrick McLain just lower their heads. Logan thinks they're asking for war, and Patrick McLain agrees. Hinkle decides to take charge and asks if Sylvan and Peria really want to go to war. Chaos erupts in the hall, and everyone starts yelling. One envoy, terrified, points at Logan and Patrick McLain, saying they can't intimidate envoys like that. Patrick McLain is furious but keeps his cool and warns they're the only ones declaring war and that the McLains aren't scared. The envoy says if war breaks out, nothing but ashes of the McLains will remain. Logan feels a knot in his stomach and jumps into the conversation, questioning how refugees can be used as bargaining chips. He tells his dad the envoys forgot their duties as nobles and there's no need to negotiate. The knights surround the envoys, pointing their swords at them. The envoys ask if Logan and Patrick McLain are trying to start a war. Logan walks down the stairs and replies, "It's total war." He says they have the nerve to storm his castle and drops some serious curse words on them. Logan draws his sword and one of the envoys tries to say he's crazy, but can't finish the sentence. Logan kills the guards in seconds and moves toward the envoys. One of them, terrified, begs him not to come closer. Logan ignores him, grips his sword, and kills him on the spot. The other envoy drops to his knees, saying he'll serve McLain's will and report every detail to his lord. Logan turns to his father, who nods. Logan then orders the knights to prepare for war, and everyone cheers. That very day, the McLains send a magical message to the Viscounts demanding compensation for the envoy's insolence. Viscount Soto Sylvan is furious. Sylvan mocks the demands, saying the McLains have the strength to fight. Logan and Patrick McLain watch the magical broadcast orbs summarizing Sylvan's demands. Return the servants, pay 10 million in gold, and hand over the Tesser Plains. Patrick McLain asks why the rush, since the McLains have the power to crush the 6 counties. Logan warns they need to occupy Sylvan as fast as possible. Kesselin enters the room and reports the count is finished. 389 regular soldiers, 100 from the main fortress, and 313 mercenaries. All ready. Logan praises Kesselin's work and asks about the armaments. Kesselin assures him that armor, spears, and crossbows have been provided and they won't be outmatched. Logan thinks they wouldn't lose to Sylvan and Perida, even if they attack together, but he can't get the fighting faction's attention for the throne. He wants the third prince to become king, since he's the only sensible option. Logan asks Kesselin if he has good news. Kesselin says yes. Victor has awakened his power and was waiting to report directly. Logan gets excited and tells Kesselin to bring him in. Victor enters and Logan interrupts him, telling him to show what happened. Victor focuses his power and gray smoke starts to surround him. His power explodes, leaving Logan and Patrick McLain speechless. Logan tells Victor he did a great job and promotes him to knight by tearing up his slave document. Victor is happy, but gets annoyed when Logan says the promotion will be postponed until after the war. Logan burns the slave document thinking Victor just wants to fight. He believes Victor has already prepared an opponent for him, Ryan. Logan tells his father they should send a response to Sylvan. Patrick McLain tells his son to skip the formalities and get straight to the point. Logan smiles and urges the soldiers to march towards Sylvan County. Logan yells for Soto Sylvan to come face him. Soto Sylvan is furious and Captain Kellen asks permission to lead the charge with 120 knights and 2,512 soldiers. Sylvan feels relieved because, although the McLain soldiers' number was higher than expected, they still had the advantage and Kellen was a high-ranking knight. Sylvan fears Perida will betray him and concludes McLain and Perida have allied against him. He yells furiously and orders Kellen to contact the barony of Bifrost to stop Perida from making any decisions. Kellen confirms the orders. In front of the castle, Heinkel, Logan, and Patrick McLain discuss strategy. Heinkel asks if it wouldn't be better to provide covering fire, but Patrick McLain replies they can't risk letting Viscount Sylvan escape. Logan agrees and explains that Sylvan thinks his forces are superior and will come out soon. Heinkel is suspicious since Logan seems to know Soto Sylvan. The gates of Sylvan White County open and Sylvan's knights advance. Patrick McLain assesses the situation and comments, Sylvan has 3,000 regular soldiers. Heinkel says that's 1.5 times more than the McLains. Callian tries to say something, but Patrick McLain orders his soldiers to advance. Callian calls him insolent and says the McLain soldiers are a bunch of trash. Kesselin orders the mercenaries to ready their crossbows. Kanan wonders what Patrick McLain is thinking and tells his men to raise their shields. Kesselin gives the order for the soldiers to shoot and a rain of arrows falls. Kanan smiles, thinking they won't have any effect, but the arrows pierce through the shields. Callian is furious and yells at his men to charge with full force. Salin orders everyone to scatter, which confuses Callian. The crossbow cavalry split and aimed at the soldiers, pissing themselves with fear. He thinks about retreating, but it's too late. Patrick McLain shows up and challenges the Sylvan Knights to face him. Kian is stunned by Patrick McLain's power, who takes down 4 knights with a single blow. Callian realizes Patrick McLain has reached the advanced level. Patrick McLain orders the McLain soldiers to annihilate the opponent. The McLain Knights charge with everything they've got and slaughter the Sylvan enemies. Heinkel admits that 2 months ago, the Sylvan Knights were a real threat to them. Heinkel smiles, happy to see his knights getting stronger. Then he looks at Logan and Patrick McLain and comments that their lord's training wasn't wasted. On the battlefield, Reiko is in a duel and Zamora arrives to help him. They didn't expect Reiko's strength, who disarmed 2 of them. The knights realize Reiko is a high-ranking knight thanks to his mastery of the Iron Blood sword. Logan charges at Kian, who knows he's in trouble. Logan remembers his training, having completed the 2nd form of the Divine Sword's secrets and his barrier. Logan and Kian grip their swords. Callian backs off with every attack, annoyed, and calls Logan stubborn. Callian attacks with all his might, but Logan dodges and the sword only cuts his ear. Logan claps at the move and admits he didn't think all of Callion's swords were real. Kian conjures another sword, but Logan doesn't seem worried. Callion realizes the closer he gets, the more his swords fail. Logan tries to taunt him by calling him weak. Kian is visibly irritated and prepares to attack Logan once more. Logan closes his eyes and his course seems to change, turning into a 2-star core. Logan dodges Callion's attack and ends up behind him. The battle swings in Logan's favor, who manages to seriously wound Kian. Kian realizes Logan has become a high-ranking knight. Logan raises his sword and focuses his aura, ready to take him down. Logan uses brute strength and jumps high into the air, deciding to defeat Callion in the most dazzling way possible. He concentrates his aura and prepares his secret technique, the Divine Wave, unleashing a massive wave of aura. Kian tries to block, but it's useless. Logan defeats Callion and the Sylvan troops realize the fight is over. Logan stands tall and shouts that he has taken down the enemy leader. Seconds later, Patrick McLain announces the capture of Soto Sylvan and orders everyone to surrender. Logan smiles and thinks to himself. After the war, the Sylvan fief lost 42 knights and 1,223 soldiers. The McLains, on the other hand, lost only 5 knights and no soldiers. A man is informed by his vassal that Sylvan lost to the McLains and concludes it's time to act. Back in the Sylvan county, Soto Sylvan kneels before Patrick McLain, who gives him one last chance. He must apologize, take only the bare minimum of his belongings, and leave the lands with his family. Soto Sylvan, looking up, says that the takeover won't be tolerated by the royalty. Logan, behind him, thinks that's the worst thing he could have said to Patrick McLain. The fall of the McLains can be blamed on the Count's mismanagement at the time, but the one who caused a rebellion to exploit the chaos was Bifrost. Logan thinks that thanks to royal intervention, Bifrost had no authority to order the McLain house to serve, but just hearing the name ruins Patrick McLain's mood. Patrick McLain asks Sylvan if he wants to die. Soto tries to say something, but Logan cuts his throat and lets him bleed out. Logan explains to Patrick McLain that he respected him by giving him an honorable death. Patrick McLain nods and says he did a good job. Logan thinks he hopes other nobles don't use this to attack them, especially Bifrost, who is an enemy they still can't face. Weeks pass and at Sylvan Castle, Logan and his father, Patrick McLain, are chatting. Logan comments that despite being on guard, Perida hasn't shown any signs of attacking. Patrick McLain then asks if there's any reason she would. The young man replies with another question. What if Perida attacked Tessarian Castle? Patrick McLain downplays the worry, telling Logan to relax since Clayton is there. The young man agrees that brute strength wasn't the only thing that helped them defeat the Sylvan Bastion. The truth is they won because Sylvan underestimated them. While the McLains gave it their all using everything they had, not to mention their ace up the sleeve, Clayton himself and his stone golems hidden in Tessarian Castle. Even with all this help, Logan knew managing 3 castles like that wouldn't work. They needed a way to optimize things. The young guy suggested to his dad that they move the center of their lands to the cities, which would make managing the 3 castles way easier. 2 nearby vassals agreed, since they had cleared the monster-infested forests and leaving few forces in McLain wouldn't be a problem. They could keep knights in the cities ready to march to Tessarion or Sylvan anytime. Patrick McLain thought the idea was awesome. Logan, happy, said he wouldn't have to handle everything alone anymore. His dad congratulated him and asked how many knights they had captured. Logan answered 75, all locked up in cells, with 8 of them being mid-level knights. The young guy asked if he could try convincing them to serve the McLains. Logan thought one battle producing that many knights was more efficient than scouting young talents, but he also figured if Sylvan had been more cautious, they'd have had way more casualties and captured only a quarter of the knights. He thought it was unlikely to happen again and they shouldn't cling to that win. Patrick McLain, on the other hand, was glowing, telling Logan that with these forces, not even Percival seemed intimidating. He praised him, saying it was all thanks to his son and smiled like the proudest dad in the world. Seeing his dad's reaction, Logan blushed and stayed quiet. Patrick McLain then told him to enjoy it, at least for that day. The father and son's joy was short-lived. A vassal arrived with news from Bifrost, leaving Logan and Patrick McLain stunned. The vassal read the letter out loud. Bifrost called himself the Lord of the Southwest and expressed his discomfort with the McLain family's yearly wars. Patrick McLain nearly had a heart attack just hearing Bifrost call himself Lord of the Southwest. The vassal kept reading. The letter said that at Viscount Sylvan's request, Percival and the McLains should cease conflict immediately. With every word, Patrick McLain got angrier and angrier, ranting that they were the ones who started the war and now they were asking for intervention. Logan thought they should finish listening to the letter. Bifrost admitted the conflict was constant because he himself had failed in his duties as Lord and hadn't promoted coexistence in the region. So, Roger Bifrost, on his 50th birthday next month, was inviting the heirs of every family in the Southwest to discuss the region's future. Patrick McLain lost his cool, saying it was all nonsense and ripping the clothes off the vassal reading the letter, continuing to shout that there would be no trip. since the McLains didn't serve Bifrost. The letter ended saying that not attending would be seen as a refusal to dialogue, and Patrick McLain declared they wouldn't bow to threats, but Logan disagreed with his dad, thinking the invitation sounded interesting. Patrick McLain looked at his son with an expression Logan had never seen before, and despite saying he respected his wishes, he started yelling again, tearing the last piece of paper covering the vassal. He swore the McLains wouldn't kneel to Bifrost even if he died. That's when Logan picked up a plant and asked his dad if he wanted a burial right then, but one of the knights with him stopped the fight, saying there'd be no patricide here. Patrick McLain calmed down, took a deep breath, and asked Logan what he was thinking. Logan explained there was no way to beat Bifrost. Now the young guy recognized the truth. They had around 200 elite knights, over 500 high-ranking, and a total of more than 300 knights, and that was just a fraction of Bifrost's forces. Things looked good for the McLains, but they were walking on eggshells. They needed time to unite Civ's knights and make Percival serve them. Also, Logan needed time to learn the third style of the Divine Sword's secrets, and for the other knights to train. Patrick McLain understood everything but warned that the Southwest was different because unlike other lords, Bifrost couldn't demand loyalty from other nobles. Logan disagreed, saying that in the capital he found out Purple and Rodman had sworn loyalty to Bifrost a long time ago, which left Patrick McLain shocked. Logan smiled, happy to have permission to go. He told his father not to worry, that he knew his own skills, and that they'd see the trip as a chance to check out how their ancestors' lands had changed. The next morning, back in McLain City, Hammer approached Logan. Hammer asked if it was true they were selling him out to the enemies, but Logan had no clue what he was talking about. Realizing the situation, Warrior Logan got pissed, punched Hammer in the face, and told him to stop buying into dumb rumors. Hammer then fired back that most rumors about Logan were true, and it wasn't his fault. Logan was speechless. Hammer pulled something from his back, unwrapped it, and asked Logan to take it. It was a pure mare sword, leaving Logan stunned. At the Bifrost estate, Percival, heir to the Percival estate, arrived by carriage and noticed something weird. A man traveling alone wearing a cloak. He soon realized it was Logan McLain and was surprised that he had managed to take over Barony Sylvan. He figured the McLain family must have suffered heavy losses for Logan to be traveling solo. Plone stepped out of the carriage and asked why he was being treated like some nobody. A guard tried to step in, but Plone ignored him. He introduced himself to Logan and said he heard about him, especially how he killed 6 knights in the blink of an eye. Plone noticed Logan's sword was clean and shaking the young man's hand, commented that he looked way younger and the stories about him must be exaggerated. Logan smiled and shook Plone's hand with a grip so strong it almost broke it. That's when Plone realized Logan was way stronger than he thought. They released hands with Plone trembling, and Logan apologized, saying he'd mistaken his intentions for a strength contest. Plone held back tears and, calling him an idiot, drew his sword, ready to teach McLain a lesson. The guard tried to warn him that personal fights were forbidden, but Logan shrugged off his cloak and told Plone he talked too much. Plone was furious and ordered his knights to attack Logan. The young man prepared himself, focused his aura, and passed through each guard in an instant, ending up behind them with his sword at Plone's neck. Plone didn't feel any force coming from Logan and realized the strike came solely from the power of the sword. A guard approached asking where he bought the weapon, and Logan snapped back that it was rude to ask. Plone thought Logan was just some lucky dude who found a good sword somewhere. At that moment, a man in full armor appeared at the door. It was Sir From, the Moonlight Knight, a knight so high-ranking that Bifrost could only have sent him to greet them for a serious reason. Sir From looked at Logan, asked if he was a McLain, and expressed surprise at seeing such a young intermediate knight. Plone and his knights were speechless. Plone realized that must be the source of Logan's strength, not just his sword skills. Coming from a high-ranking knight, there was a unique energy that couldn't be hidden, and Logan thought it best to only show the strength he had to keep attention off him. Logan placed his hand on his chest in respect and said he aimed to be as powerful as Sir From one day, who advised him not to settle and to aspire to become a superhuman. Then, Sir From led them inside, informing them that the heirs of Percival and Rodman had already arrived and they should wait until tomorrow night's feast. Plone tried to mock Logan again, saying he didn't have party clothes and offering to lend him pajamas, but Logan ignored him and asked a servant where his room was. Logan thought Plone really didn't get his situation and that taking over Percival wouldn't be hard. Logan looked toward the building, recalling what Plone said. He figured he had no intention of taking off his armor anyway, since he was on the land his ancestors lost and couldn't let his guard down. Logan stood in front of Lord Bifrost, who ordered him to draw his sword. The young man bowed his head, greeted the Lord, and wished him a happy birthday. The people around thought Logan's attitude was dumb and called him a peasant. Logan looked at the castles and cities and was surprised to see that the people were pretty kind and said Bifrost was a good man. Bifrost welcomed Logan with open arms and said that since he had come all this way, he assumed the McLains would follow his wishes. Logan replied that if Bifrost's wishes were for peace, they would always be ready to march by his side. Bifrost praised him, called him enlightened, and invited him to enjoy the party. The young man realized that Bifrost was impressive too. He was a fifth circle mage, which made him as formidable as an advanced knight in a war. Logan's thoughts were interrupted by an announcement. Count Bifrost would give a speech. Bifrost began by thanking everyone who attended his birthday, and also the second prince for granting him the Terror of the Sunday. People were shocked by how close Bifrost was to the prince himself. Bifrost continued, saying it was time for the Southwest to leave traditions behind and unite as the second prince, the main contender for the throne, wished. Logan thought this was just a fancy way for Bifrost to tell everyone to get under the prince's command. Bifrost ended by saying Logan was a great young man, the standout who led the McLains to victory in 2 wars and a genius who became a mid-level knight at 21. Bifrost extended his hand, saying he didn't intend to force such a talented man, but simply to make an offer. He revealed that the Count of Baltraman, the second prince's grandfather, was looking for talented guys like Logan to be his pupils. The young man was speechless, but replied he felt honored, although he already had a master. Bifrost asked if it was his father, but Logan said he was trained by a great man and regretted having to decline. Bifrost commented that youth really acts fast and said that the fiery sword himself would appear soon, and asked Logan to receive some instruction from him. He warned he would make the same offer to all the heirs present and that Logan could even call his own master for the lesson. The young man stopped worrying about the teaching and focused more on the fact that Bifrost was trying everything to lure the McLains. Logan thought it would be hard to refuse again, and luckily he had already taken precautions. He thanked him for the compliments and said he couldn't reject the request since Bifrost was so persistent. Bifrost thanked Logan for accepting and said his choice would be the first step to unite the Southwest. He added that Percival and Rodman had already agreed to join and that in gratitude he would personally gift those heirs. Basil's brought a table into the room with 2 artifacts, a sword and a hammer. Logan thought of course the Count would give a gift worth at least 12 million gold. He wondered if Bifrost would really give something like that as a gift, and as if reading his thoughts, Bifrost called Ramon, Percival, and Rodman from the crowd. He asked if they would swear loyalty, and the 2 knelt. Bifrost then granted Ramon the Lambton sword and Eric the Jackson hammer. Bifrost promised that those who served him would receive their due reward. Looking at Logan, Perida, drunk, emerged from the crowd and asked if Logan's sword didn't look better. She insisted Logan's sword looked way better, insulting the Count even more. Logan thought Perida had just dug her own grave. The sword called Lux had a strength that matched most artifacts. Logan thought that in the worst case, he'd use the sword to negotiate or buy time, but Perida had ruined everything. Bifrost asked if Logan's sword was that extraordinary, and the young man replied he was lucky to get a weapon forged by dwarves. Bifrost asked if he could inspect the sword, but Logan knew if he handed it over he'd never see it again. He said that even though he was young, it was hard to give up a comrade. Bifrost proposed that instead of handing over the sword, Logan prove his strength in a demonstration fight against Ramon. The young man smiled. He said the situation had taken an unexpected turn, but there was no reason to refuse. Logan drew his sword and said he would follow the order. In the training hall, he and Ramon faced off. Ramon offered the first attack, but Logan refused, saying he didn't want to hear later that he had some kind of advantage. Ramon called him arrogant and started charging his aura. The women in the room commented on the beauty of Ramon's sword. Logan wondered if he was trying to draw too much attention, which would make him a perfect target to die. Instead, Hamar's weapon was very simple but perfectly balanced, with an impressive edge and durability. Ramon asked if Logan's pretty sword could stand up to an artifact. Logan thought Ramon was even dumber than Perida. Ramon jumped forward, ready to take Logan down. The young man looked at the audience, saw Mr. Fromm, and thought he needed to hide his strength and confidence. He needed to stumble, scratch himself, and occasionally make a good counterattack. He should show a little vigor and after defeating him, finish with a witty line. Logan held the sword at Ramon's neck and said he was lucky. Ramon shouted that it was all a mistake, that he wasn't used to the sword. Bifrost said Ramon had disappointed him. Logan was disappointed too. Bifrost apologized to Logan and told him he would open his treasure, allowing the young man to choose any artifact he wanted. Logan thought Bifrost was trying to keep him there at all costs, sure that no matter what Logan took, he could get it back. At that moment, a servant came in informing the Count that Felix had made contact for his birthday. The news left Bifrost stunned. Felix congratulated the Count, one of the kingdom's most reliable pillars, and regretted not being able to attend. Bifrost thanked him. Suddenly, Felix noticed Logan in the background and asked Bifrost if it really was him. Everyone in the room was stunned. Bifrost started sweating. Logan realized his request had been granted and stepped forward, calling Felix master. Everyone was amazed. Felix turned to Bifrost and asked if it was true. Bifrost changed his mind and said that if the sword itself desired Logan, he could put aside his own wishes. Logan thought he had made the right choice, asking Felix for help, who, being a neutral superhuman, couldn't have his orders denied. Felix winked at Logan, saying he couldn't wait to see him in the capital. Logan bowed his head and thanked him. Bifrost almost had a stroke. The next day, Logan was in Bifrost's artifact room. A guard informed him he had 1 hour and could only choose one treasure. Logan looked over about 30 artifacts, ignored the weapons, and noticed all the power converging in a pair of armored boots in a display case. He was skeptical because he didn't feel any magic emanating from them, but he realized they kept absorbing his energy. He wondered what would happen if he kept feeding them his strength, and, surprisingly, his energy started being absorbed like a wave. Logan shouted defiantly, "Let's see who wins." He kept pouring more and more energy into the boots. Suddenly, a wave of energy burst from the boots and Logan was thrown backward. His strength returned. At that moment, he realized something. That night, Bifrost asked if Logan McLain had already left. With 3 days left until the party, he concluded the young man really wanted to harm him. Furious, Bifrost ordered his knights to follow him and retrieve the artifact. Logan was relaxing by a campfire. Suddenly, he felt a murderous intent that made him jump. Looking at the trees, he realized it was one of Bifrost's pursuers. A hooded man emerged from the bushes and Logan quickly realized Bifrost had sent a group of 4. The man in front warned his accomplices they could do whatever they wanted as long as they didn't kill him. The 3 men jumped on Logan, but he didn't wait and went on the offensive. The guys panicked, not understanding how an intermediate knight could move so fast. Logan thought he had made a great choice with those boots. Besides a triple jump in the air, they also self-repaired and were adjustable in size. He concluded the boots were at least 1 artifact level above the 4th, and a fitting name would be the Boots of the Wind God. The men asked for permission to aim at the vital points, and the hooded figure let out a sound of disgust, saying it was shameful. The man leapt from behind with his silver aura, and Logan was shocked. He managed to block but was pushed back. Logan focused his aura, preparing for a brutal fight. He told the man he never imagined the title of Moonlight would be won through sneaky tactics. Soon after, he recognized the man's true identity, From. From revealed that Logan wasn't just hiding his true strength, he had surpassed it and knew about the artifact Logan possessed. From said he would take the artifact as payment for the lesson he was about to teach. Logan asked what lesson that was, since From should be ashamed of his title, the Knight of Moonlight. From replied that's exactly why he intended to give a harsh lesson. Logan wondered what was wrong with From's weird stance that looked like he was holding a whip. From started using his strength, attacking Logan with a force blade that moved like a whip. Logan blocked the attacks and commented they were relentless. He realized he couldn't last long and needed to use everything he had. He charged his aura and managed to strike From behind. However, he didn't feel a single scratch. Suddenly, he realized something. He flipped backward, dodging one of From's blows. From asked how he could dodge his attacks and if those were the secret arts of Felix. Logan didn't seem interested in what From was saying, thinking if From was still standing, his attack wasn't good enough. He thought if he didn't have the skills from the wind boots, From would have taken the attack head-on. Logan said he wasn't using any secret arts and asked From to wait a moment while he showed him a secret technique. From, arrogant, said he wait. Logan thought From's arrogance made things easier. He charged his aura, focusing on the sword, thinking if he lost, he wouldn't just lose and the boots, but From would make sure he never wielded a sword again. He opened his eyes, declaring the moment was now. From attacked, but the moment he was about to stab his sword into the young man's heart, everything around them exploded. From had underestimated the strength Logan really possessed. The warrior managed to summon an aura sword, the 3rd form of the divine sword's secrets, and was ready to defeat From. From fell to the ground, realizing he was in real danger. The impact of the attack was so huge that the knights accompanying him started searching for him. From coughed up blood. He managed to dodge but said it would have been better to die alongside Logan than return defeated. Logan rode off on his horse, thinking about how he had doubted himself. He remembered when From attacked him while he was charging the 3rd style in the coin-size hole in his chest. He thought the talk and excitement were just a facade, but at least one thing was certain. With his skills and the treasures he possessed, he could definitely defeat an advanced knight. Suddenly, he fell off his horse, which kept going. At the McLain mansion, Rick and Dwayne were wide-eyed, seeing him torn up, and asked what had happened. Logan said he had fallen off his horse. His return caused a commotion. The incident was set aside. Patrick McLain was embarrassed, saying Logan was enduring all these hardships because the family lacked power. Logan told his father they could soon return the favor, but for that, he needed to reorganize their forces. At the training ground, Rania remembered what Logan had told her, that the war would be easy and she wasn't needed, and that she should perfect her skills. Rania thought she couldn't let Logan treat her like just another kid. She was interrupted by Logan, who invited her to take a break and introduce the person she would be training with from now on, Victor. Rania was stunned. Victor wore new, shiny armor. Rania asked if the armor fit him well, but could only think that Victor looked about her age and wondered if he was also a Force user. Logan confirmed Victor had recently awakened his power and was the same age as Rania. What would be a good stimulus? Rania asked Logan what he meant by training together, and Logan replied, fighting. They looked at each other, ready to throw down. Logan gave the signal to start. Victor attacked Rania's neck, but she dodged and noticed Victor was using the iron blood sword. Rania decided to counterattack. She moved forward determined, ready to take Victor down. Victor realized he was in trouble. Rania unleashed a powerful wave of energy, but Victor dodged by leaping high into the air. He prepared his next move, trying to catch Rania off guard. Victor slammed his sword into the ground, creating a crater, but Rania moved at the last second and called him a monster. Victor didn't seem to care. Logan started laughing, asking Rania who was calling who a monster. Rania got back into position, thinking she had to give it her all. Victor smiled, looking super chill. Logan watched the fight from a safe distance and realized his gut feeling was right. They had synergy. Victor had perfected his mastery of the iron blood sword and was adapting it to his style. Rania, who already had experience, moved without sticking to any form. Rania yelled that Victor couldn't throw punches, and he replied that in a fight, anything goes, which made Logan laugh again. He told them not to push themselves too hard and thought there were 7 more years until the Empire's War started, and Rania and Victor would be ready in 5 or 6 years. He thought it would be awesome if Victor learned the secrets of the divine sword, but he'd need a catalyst to keep him there. In Logan's office, Clayton and his disciples were shocked by what he told them. Victor could see the mana band. Logan tried to get Victor to learn something he liked to keep him at the castle. When Victor said he wanted to learn how to move clay dolls with that yellow thread, Logan was stunned. Clayton interrupted, asking if he could see where Victor was sending his mana. Victor pointed at one of the disciples, calling him old, and said that's where he was sending his mana. They tried again, and Victor said Clayton was sending mana to the water bottle. Clayton grabbed Victor by the shoulders and told him he was special, that not even the great legendary mages could see mana with their own eyes. Logan wondered if seeing mana was really that impressive. He asked Victor if he was sure he wanted to learn magic. Victor said if that was how to control the giant doll, then yeah, he wanted to do it. Logan insisted, and Victor explained that if he could control it, he could do way more. Logan told Clayton he'd trust Victor to him, but the kid had already disappeared. Clayton shouted for someone to bring a measuring tape while measuring Victor. Logan thought Victor had the talent to become a great mage and that the two brothers were geniuses. He reflected that their powers were getting stronger and maybe it was time to go to Gran, since he had made a promise to his master. He thought he'd go alone, but things didn't go as planned. 7 knights surrounded Logan, ready to defend him. Captain Henderson of the 18th Squadron of the McLain Knights introduced himself, but Logan seemed annoyed and told them to leave. Patrick McLain had warned that he'd be rude to Felix and that Logan should at least bring the minimum number of attendants. Logan asked Rick what he was doing there, and Rick replied that it wouldn't be proper for the heir of a noble family to walk around without a personal servant. Logan didn't buy it and asked if Rick came because he wanted to visit the capital. Rick started sweating cold and said yes because no one in his fiefdom talked to him anymore and he needed to get married. Logan plugged his ears with his fingers and said they'd just slow him down. Logan had 2 goals for the trip. First, to identify possible future changes, and second, to find the 3rd prince to create a bond with the hill. He remembered the royal family's story. The current king, Samuel Bone, had no heir until he was 40, so he had 2 sons, concubines. 10 years later, Queen Wolf gave birth to the 3rd prince, who outshone his brothers and became the successor. Logan knew that in winter, shortly before the 3rd prince came of age, the civil war would start with the king's death. The 1st prince, John Doblas, a 6-circle mage, and the 2nd prince, Jordan Waltermine, would have the backing of their grandparents. Logan saw they were about to execute the 3rd prince, but Felix showed up claiming the king's will was for the 3rd prince to live. Even though they gained the upper hand, the 3rd prince ended up ruining the country over the next 5 years. So, Logan's goal was to never let that dude become king. He figured the 2nd prince was the same and needed to see with his own eyes if the 3rd prince was actually worthy of the throne. Inside the castle, Logan's servants were speechless. Rick came up and asked if Logan didn't think it'd be good for the family to make some connections and asked for a little help getting close to one of the maids. Annoyed, Logan smacked Rick on the head, knocking him to the floor. A man approached to greet Logan and took him to Felix's office. The man introduced himself as Louis, the Duke's supervisor, exactly the guy Logan had met in his past life. Louis had given him the secrets of the divine sword and told him to memorize them and pass them on to someone talented. Logan couldn't remember anything else Louis had given him. Louis led him to the office and said the Duke was waiting inside. Louis turned around and a scream was heard. Logan smiled and turned toward the voice. He greeted the Duchess, Felix's wife, congratulated her on the birth of their heir, and said he was ready to answer any questions. She placed her hands on her belly and asked him to choose the baby's name. Logan was stunned. Felix joined the conversation saying he and the Duchess had been debating it for a while. Thanks to Logan, they wanted him to pick the name. The young guy was still speechless. He thought about how a name decides and lights up a kid's path. They'd only met twice, and Logan knew it was a huge responsibility. He said it would be an honor. Felix and the Duchess were beaming. Felix asked the Duchess to go rest. He leaned against the door and commented he wasn't good with words. Then he told Logan they should talk about their bodies. Logan didn't get it. Felix looked at him and said he was surprised at how fast Logan had leveled up. He wanted to see how strong Logan was now. At the training field, Felix and Logan faced off. Logan leapt forward, but Felix dodged and appeared behind him, ready to counterattack. Logan huffed and redirected his strike, but Felix blocked it easily. The young guy thought that in a fight against his own master, he could test his limits, but Felix told him to stop. Felix asked what the hell he was doing.